Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Luffy Fanfics, back with the amazing fanfiction. This is the third part of What If Luffy's mythical sun fruit shaped the Grand Line. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Chichichi. I am Captain Nezumi of the Marine Branch number 16. The man in question stood there flanked by regular marine sailors. They all had their arms crossed behind their backs. Nezumi was of average height, wearing a gray-blue, button-up long coat. Clearly the man had been aptly named, for he was truly a rat in every sense of the word. He even had whiskers, and his coat had a cloak with mouse ears on it. I would like to speak to Genzo of Kakoashi. His voice had a sort of arrogant quality to it, and the previously hopeful villagers of Kakoashi all felt shivers run down their spines. Had it be me? Genzo stepped forward. He was a heavily scarred man wearing a maroon police uniform with short sleeves and a matching pair of shorts. His hat also matched, but it had a long pinwheel on a stick attached to it, for whatever reason. What do you want, Captain? Nezumi had a sleazy grin on his face. I would like to speak to a young woman named Nami. I believe she lives in this village. No. Immediately, the townsfolk stiffened up. Genzo's weathered and scarred face closed up and clouded. I'm afraid Nami isn't here. She's been gone for several months on a trip, with no due date to come home. Just as she's done for the past several years, actually. Chichichi ... that is not a problem. Nezumi had seen the effect his words had on the town, and it gave him such a fuzzy feeling. Her sister will do. Nojiko is her name, correct? That's right, Genzo said, trying very hard not to visibly clench his jaw and remain cordial. Then lead the way, Mr. Genzo. Nezumi watched as Genzo whirled around and started walking from the docks to the inner island. He followed at a leisurely pace, taking in the sights as well as the distressful looks from the people of Kakoashi. They came upon a small, nondescript house. The only things special about it were the tangerine groves. Genzo knocked on the door and a beautiful young lady opened it. She had icy blue hair and dark blue eyes, as well as a decently tattooed right arm. It was covered in swirling designs, which crossed over her chest making a stylized heart shape. She wore a simple white tank top and green pants. Genzo, what's going on? She eyed the Marines suspiciously. My name is Captain Nezumi. Nezumi stepped forward and introduced himself again, eyeing the woman appreciatively. His grin widened as she shivered under her gaze. I came to speak to your sister Nami, but as she is absent you'll have to do. What about, Captain? Nojiko said carefully. I'm afraid this will not be a pleasant conversation. Nezumi declared with an ever-widening smirk. We recently have received dozens of complaints and reports about your sister's thieving. Nojiko stiffened and became guarded. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, but I think you do. Your stiffness says more than your words. Nezumi said happily. You need not worry. No one here is to be harmed. After all, your sister's targets were all pirates, not anyone who didn't deserve to have everything they owned stripped from them. His grin widened in victory, so we will not be laying any charges on her. He shrugged in a mocking display of sheepishness. But a thief is still a thief and a crime is still a crime. Do you see what I'm getting at? He almost licked his lips at the look of desperate horror taking root in Nojiko's eyes. It's only natural for stolen goods to be taken by the government. That way, we can ensure that they return to their rightful owners. What did you say? She gasped, eyes wide in panic. I'm sure you heard me the first time. Chichichi, you will turn over your sister's stolen goods immediately. Nezumi swept his hand in front of him. Search the house, he commanded. One Marine charged forward, only to be met by a hard punch from Genzo. He fell to the floor groaning. What the hell do you think you're doing? He bellowed in rage. Don't you bastards have something more important to do? The Arlong pirates are going around destroying villages and murdering people. Why aren't you doing anything about that? The people here are slaves under his rule. Yet you ignore all that and focus on one petty thief. Chichichi, Nezumi cackled. A criminal should speak so high-handedly. You just assaulted a Marine. Be careful I don't start putting charges on you as well. He sneered at the man before jerking his head forward. What are you waiting for? Ignore them and continue with the search. The people of this island have been waiting for almost a decade for the Marines to help. The scarred man took a step forward, intending on beating all these bastards on his own if necessary. Genzo would have gone on, but a nameless Marine yelled, These Mikan trees look suspicious, Captain. Well, dig them up then. Nezumi yelled back, though he kept a careful eye on Genzo. Don't touch them. Genzo roared as he punched the man away from the trees. Nezumi really should have been eyeing the woman in the situation instead. Nojiko had scrambled inside and grabbed a pistol. Don't you touch my mother's Mikan trees with your filthy hands, she screamed, her hands trembling. If you have no intention of saving this village, then get the fuck out of here. Nezumi stiffened, breaking into a small sweat. A rat is a rat, after all. How he made Captain boggled the mind. But the rest of the Marines weren't nearly so cowardly. They all yanked out their rifles and pointed them at the two. Nezumi regained his confidence quickly. Chichichi, what's taking so long? We're not looking for a grain of rice here. How hard is it to find 80 million, Billy? Her pistol slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. She slid to her knees. How did you know ... how much money there was? Did Arlong send you here? Nezumi's face looked almost demented in his joy. Oh, I wouldn't go that far ... We're just doing our natural duty of persecuting criminals. Nojiko grabbed her pistol and fired, an expression of sheer rage on her face. Fuck. Nezumi screamed, falling to the ground and clutching his shoulder. You little bitch. He roared as a single Marine fired a bullet into Nojiko's thigh. She went down, screaming her lungs out as she clutched her bleeding leg, the ammo-less pistol falling from her grip. Nojiko, Genzo roared, scrambling to her and pulling her into his arms. Ignore them and find the money so we can get out of here. Nezumi roared angrily as they raced away. Damn, he really wished Arlong hadn't told him not to harm them. Why, even he didn't know. He clutched his bleeding arm as he got to his feet, glaring hatefully at their retreating forms. Get me to the ship. I'll leave this to the rest of you. He spat at his underlings. They'll get theirs in time. He forced a chuckle. I think I'll use some of this money to buy her from Arlong. I'm sure he wouldn't mind. Chichichi. Dr. Nako. Genzo roared as he practically kicked down the doctor's door. Nako wore a black bandana with a red cross on it as well as a white doctor's coat with red crosses on the shoulders. Nako jumped roughly a foot into the air. Genzo, what is the meaning of TH? He trailed off, looking at the bleeding woman in his arms. Nojiko-chan. Lay her down. Quick. Dr. Nako quickly set to work, giving the poor woman painkillers before digging out the round. He cleaned and dressed the wound as expertly as he could. What happened? Nako asked in disbelief. How did little Nojiko-chan get shot? Genzo was gritting his teeth and clenching his fists. That bastard Arlong. He hissed. He sent his fucking corrupt Marines here. They stole all of Nami's money. That can't be. Nako gasped on horror, his skin turning the color of milk. It's all gone. Genzo grit his teeth and didn't answer Nako. He turned and ran out of the doctor's home. Genzo, where are you going? Genzo, don't do anything foolish. 8 years ago, we swore not to throw our lives away. Genzo was surrounded by villagers with all sorts of melee weaponry. We swore that no matter how painful living under Arlong's rule was, that we would endure as long as Nami was okay, that we would play the long game. This is how they've answered US. The villagers looked burly and angry. Our only chance at liberation has been stolen from US. He bellowed in rage. We no longer have any hope, but we will never forgive those bastard fishmen. They dared toy with our Nami's kindness. He looked at all of them. Any objection? No way. As if we'd accept their rule after this. The angry people roared. Just as Genzo was about to lead the charge, a voice yelled, Stop. Nojiko was hobbling towards them, using Dr. Nako as a cane. She was visibly in agony, but she kept moving forward, limping closer to them. Stop this right now, everyone. We can't do this right now. What are you talking about, Nojiko? Genzo roared at her. They've betrayed us. There's no hope for salvation anymore. We may all die, but we'll take some of those sons of bitches with us. And what will Nami do when she gets home and finds us all dead? What will she do when she finds out and confronts Arlong? He'll chain her to that fucking cartography desk for the rest of her life. She screamed in his face. Genzo recoiled in shock. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and groaned, getting lowered to her knees by Nako. She turned tearful eyes to Genzo. We can't. She whispered brokenly. Not until Nami is home. We have to make sure she leaves as soon as she can. We may all die, but she doesn't have to. Maybe she could take some of the children with her. Genzo's sword clattered to the dirt as he crumbled to his knees. God damn it. He whispered brokenly. God. Damn I. He roared as he pounded his fists into the dirt. Utterly defeated, Sanji grunted as he was sent to the floor yet again. Like the rest of the crew, barring the captain himself, he was battered and bruised. He clenched his cigarette hard between his teeth as Luffy gave him a hand up. Shishishi, good job, Sanji. Sanji was sweating profusely and breathing harder than ever before. The moment that the Barady had been out of sight, the crew had started their training once again. And for Sanji, it had been a huge wake-up call. He had been terrified for Nami when she had faced Don Krieg, and rightfully so. The man's one lucky shot using that damnable surprise exploding spear had almost taken her out. But she had proven herself to be stronger than he had ever expected, and he had assumed that without his devil fruit, Luffy would be about the same. Even after seeing evidence to the contrary, he had never been more wrong. It was only when he was learning Zoro on the deck of the Going Merry that he realized Luffy had practically been playing around when he kicked Krieg through his ship. He took a drag from his smoke as he was finally given a break. Not sure I agree. You manhandled me. Sanji sighed. Everyone gets manhandled by Luffy. Usopp deadpanned. He was sweating profusely and visibly straining. Luffy is the strongest person here, by far. Don't slack off, Usopp, Zoro said lazily from his place on Usopp's back. Nami had told him quite firmly that he wouldn't be doing any training himself for at least a couple more days. and his attempts to ignore his doctor's orders were painful to say the least. So for now, he sat on Usopp's back and polished his sword while the young man did push-ups. My turn, Luffy. Nami was twirling a new staff. As her old one had cracked, Usopp had made a temporary one for her while she waited for his creation to be finished. This one was a light blue, like her last one, with silvery metal reinforcing both of the ends. Luffy grinned and pulled his pipe from his back. Yeah, let's go. He vanished, Nami following suit. Only when they reappeared, it wasn't due to a clash between them. Instead, Sanji was between the both of them, Luffy's pipe warping his face from the impact and Nami's staff smacking square into his shoulders as she swung up to block. Sanji crashed onto the deck as the two landed. Oh Sanji Kuon, Nami sang sweetly, her voice positively angelic. She had a bright, happy smile on her face as she walked towards the downed blonde. Sanji scrambled to look at her, hearts in his eyes. Yes, Nami Swan. Just as he finished turning around, her staff cracked him across the nose and sent him hurtling away. Damn it, Sanji. It's been a week of this. Stop interrupting us. She screamed at him, white-eyed and angry, shark teeth in her mouth. I can't help it. Sanji sat up, not looking contrite in the least. I can't bear to see a lady in danger, much less a goddess like you, he said solemnly. Nami grit her teeth. How am I supposed to get stronger if you keep interrupting our training? She yelled at him. Stop it. It's getting really annoying. Sanji just had a stubborn look on his face. If you don't cut it out, I'll remove what makes you a man and make you eat it. Sanji and the rest of the crew gasped, crossing their hands in front of their crotches. Not as Kintama. Luffy yelped in fear. Nami Swan, you wouldn't. Sanji looked rightfully terrified. Try me. I'll do to you what I did to Krieg, you idiot. She screamed, before straightening up and blowing her bangs out of the way. Now go rest, you idiot. Luffy, let's go. And finally, she and Luffy were able to train without having to do it in secret. Hours later, everyone except for Luffy, Johnny, and Yosaku were exhausted, and Yosaku took the opportunity to finally ask the question that had been burning inside his mind. Luffy Aniki, why are we going to the Konomi Islands? Isn't your dream to go to the Grand Line? This is in the opposite direction. The man who rules the Konomi Islands is terrifying. Luffy ignored him entirely. So, shall we eat? He asked Sanji cheerfully. Yosaku and Johnny practically went into hysterics. You're too naive. Listen, he yelled. There's something about the Grand Line that you have to know. The reason the Grand Line is called the Pirates' Graveyard is because of the three great powers. One of those powers is the Oka Shichibukai. Shichibukai? Luffy asked quizzically, finally paying attention to the duo. That's right. Simply put, there's 7 extremely powerful pirates who are sanctioned by the world government. Yosaku told them. Why the hell would the government permit pirates? Sanji asked him. The rest of the crew were listening in interest, except for Nami. She was leaning on the mast, stone-faced with her arms crossed. Johnny picked up where Yosaku left off. As long as the Shichibukai give up a portion of their plunder, the government will look the other way with their actions. Other pirates hate them and call them the government's dogs. But they're all extremely strong. Dracula Mihawk, who defeated Zoro Aniki, is one of them. Yosaku took over, but the problem is one of them specifically. His name is Jinbei, and he's the leader of the Fishman Pirates. Never met a fishman, Luffy said idly. Sanji had a goofy look on his face. Fishman, huh? Fishman Island is a very popular place in the Grand Line, isn't it? I've heard the most beautiful mermaids live there. Yosaku continued. In return for becoming one of the Shichibukai, Jinbei let loose a terrifying monster in East Blue. But the rest of the Straw Hats were no longer paying attention. Luffy had drawn a hideous fish with some weirdly drawn legs and feet and was showing it off, like this. Even Nami couldn't help herself. Her stone-faced facade broke and she started giggling helplessly. What an ugly fish. Is it physically impossible for you to pay attention? The 2 hunters roared. We're headed to Arlong Park. Why are you so eager to fight him? Yosaku yelled. Arlong once fought alongside the Shichibukai Jinbei. Don Krieg is a guppy compared to him. How about this? Luffy showed off another drawing, this time with less limbs. You just drew the last one standing up. Sanji chuckled. Be serious, you guys. Johnny pleaded with them. Luffy sighed. We're going there so I can feed Arlong his nose. He repeated what he had said, while turning his head slightly to Nami. He crossed his arms and his head dipped enough that his hat hit his eyes. But why? Johnny yelled hysterically. No matter what he had seen, he just couldn't comprehend someone being stronger than that monster. But he was thinking of Arlong's strength as being more on the higher side, like Jinbei. It couldn't have been more from the mark, but for someone in East Blue, he may as well have been correct. Nami finally had enough. You all know of the Konomi Islands as Arlong Park, she said, her eyes closed and her head down. She stopped leaning on the mast and walked forward. I know of it only as home. Some of them gasped, but Luffy just continued looking solemn. When I was 10, Arlong came to my home and took it over. He shot my mother between the eyes right in front of me. She uncrossed her arms and lifted her sleeve, revealing her tattoo, which now had 4 claw marks over it from when she had scratched down the mark. He forced me onto his crew as his cartographer and made me pretend to be his friend, while telling me that if I gave him 100 million billion won payment, he would free me and my town. Her face may as well have been carved from marble, but I always suspected that he would find some way out of our deal. So now I'm going to get him before he does. She smiled softly as she gripped Luffy's hand. They shared a small smile before looking out at the rest of the crew. Sanji was, predictably, steaming mad. Johnny, Yasaku, and Usopp had tears streaming down their faces. And Zoro got up and walked away. Usopp gasped, and Nami even looked a little distraught. Where are you going, Zoro? I'm sure we can get more wind out of these sails. He replied without stopping. The ship's too slow. Nami smiled in gratitude and joy. Thank you guys. A singed tear dropped from her eye. Everyone, we're close now, Nami yelled, pointing off into the horizon. So, that's it, huh? Luffy said, from his place beside her. The island was still quite small, but it was growing larger every minute that they sailed forward. He punched his fists together. I'm going to beat that fish so badly that he'll never come back. Not so fast, Nami told him. I purposely made sure that we came around the island's backside. Arlong Park is on the other side. Until the Mary is safe, we can't do anything. Fishmen will sink us before we can even react. They're 10 times as powerful in the water. Will they have a sentry? Usopp asked her, looking out with his binoculars. They will have one, Nami told him, so we'll have to do this a bit stealthily. Like ninja, Luffy gasped, before forming a weird hand signal. Nin. Nami face-palmed, but she giggled. Okay, Usopp, your eyes are the best, right? Usopp crossed his arms. Of course, he said proudly. All right, I need you to pretend that you're on the island right now. As soon as you feel that you would be able to start picking up on our ship without a binocular, you need to tell me, Nami told him seriously. Usopp gulped, realizing he had a big job this time. Got it. He dipped his goggles down and settled them over his eyes, and he began straining. Around 15 minutes passed before the island was close enough. Nami, we've got probably 5 minutes before people over there start noticing that a ship is approaching. Nami didn't respond verbally. Instead, she jumped straight off of the ship and dove into the water. Her idea worked beautifully. She may not have had a fisherman's skills or webbing, but she had something that was almost as good. Luffy, she stayed under the water and applied the leg-kicking lessons she learned from Zoro and Jeppo to speed her way towards the island. Every 10 kick applications sent her forward hundreds of meters. Thankfully, she had grabbed a spare set of goggles from Usopp, otherwise she would have been very uncomfortable to say the least. Every once in a while, she allowed herself to slow enough to lift her head out of the water and take a massive breath before diving back down. Soon, she was close enough that she saw him. He was a smaller size for a fishman and was clearly based off a seahorse. He was lazing about on the rocks she was headed to, occasionally taking a cursory scan of the ocean. He had a baby den mushy on his wrist. She swam carefully and rested until she was ready. She jumped up using Jeppo and combined it with Zoro to get on top of the fishman. She didn't even know his name. He tried to jump up in a panic, but she didn't let him. With a quick jab of her reinforced staff, she smashed his windpipe. He clutched his throat in agony as another 3 quick swings bloodied his face. A 4th whack to his temple had the fishman out cold. She sighed and smiled before turning and waving at the ship. Usopp, who had expertly tracked her direction from her head showing as she surfaced to breathe, sighed in relief. She did it. Shishishi, let's go, Luffy called out. As they came close enough, he tossed Nami the rope he had been holding, and they watched as Nami proceeded to hogtie the nameless fishman so thoroughly that he wouldn't be able to twitch so much as a finger. With a cheery little salute in his general direction, she backflipped back onto the Mary and continued guiding the ship to safety. She sighed in relief as they finally moored and disembarked. Perfect, she said happily. That was really the only thing I was worried about. Let's go to Kakoashi. She led them through the trees and rocks, but their good mood evaporated rapidly. She sighed as she took in the sight of the destroyed Gosa village. The village looked almost like a set, as if everything was fake. There were giant buildings and houses simply flipped over. They looked like giant models on a board game that had the table flipped and the pieces scattered. Nami knew better. This was very real, and the loss of life had been great. Dozens of her people had died, all over a single missed payment. Arlong deserved everything that was coming to him. What happened here? Luffy asked her, clearly not in very good mood. Arlong happened, she sighed. A single person did not have enough money to pay Arlong a couple months ago. He flipped out and flipped out. No one found the dark humor funny. A fishman did this. Usopp was trembling in horror. This is insane. Suddenly he keeled over and fell to the dirt, and began wheezing. Oh no, my icongonopherthoritis is acting up. Zoro didn't skip a step as he grabbed Usopp by the scruff of his neck and started hauling him forward. No. Zoro, what are you doing? He cried crocodile tears as they dragged him onward. Stop shouting, you idiot. I don't want the fishmen to know we're here yet. Nami grouched. They continued through Gosa before making it to Kakoashi, where people were milling about. Nami frowned as she took them in. They all looked even more defeated than usual, though some of them had turned looks of confused interest on them as they saw her crew. But most of them met eyes with her and then looked away in a strange mixture of rage and shame. It confused her. She was used to hateful glares whenever she came into town. This was new. Nami stopped one of them. "Hey, what's going on?" He looked at her for a moment, before looking away, tears in his eyes. "You should go to Dr. Nako's house, Nami." She stiffened. "Did something happen? Is my sister all right?" "She's alive." Tears started leaking from behind his closed eyelids. "She's not even badly injured, but just ... just go see them." Nami trembled for a moment, before taking off at a good clip. The rest of the Straw Hats followed, Luffy keeping an even pace right behind her. Nami got to Nako's house and slammed the doors open. "Nojiko," she yelled, making all three of the people in the house jump. She took in the sight of them, all looking completely defeated. Genzo in particular looked like he had been put through the ringer. There were bags under his eyes and his uniform looked unkempt, unlike the last time she had been in Nako's clinic. There were emptied bottles of booze strewn around the place, but at that moment, Nami only had eyes for her sister, who was looking pretty okay if it wasn't for the bandages wrapped around her left leg. There were a pair of crutches next to her on the sofa. "Nojiko," she cried out in relief, falling to her knees in front of her and grabbing her hands. "You're okay. I'm so glad." She looked up at her sister's distraught face. "What happened? Who did this to you?" Nojiko's eyes teared up at the utter relief she saw in her sister's gaze, and the floodworks opened up. Luffy had followed her in while the rest of the crew and the two hunters had waited outside. He stood there with his arms crossed, and his face like stone. I'm sorry, Nami." Nojiko sobbed as she wrapped her sister up in an embrace. It's gone. It's all gone." Nami looked shocked, her arms flailing a little before she wrapped them around her sister. "Gone? What do you mean? What's gone?" "Your money." Genzo's hoarse voice came from the side. "The money that was supposed to save us all." He was looking down at the floor and refused to meet her eyes as she pulled away from Nojiko. She stared at him, open-mouthed, jaw working up and down soundlessly. He looked up, tears in his gaze. "Are you surprised, Nami? Did you really think any person in the entire village thought you would willingly work for that murderer? We got the full story from Nojiko the second you went out on your first trip. We all knew all along. We never said anything to make sure it wouldn't pressure you, to make sure you had an out if it ever became too much." He started to sob. "And that son of a bitch broke your heart. He broke everyone's hearts. He sent his corrupt marine lackeys here 3 days ago. They tore up Belmere's Mikan Groves and took all the money you've spent the last 8 years gathering." Nami's head tilted down, her face shadowed. Her fists were clenched on her thighs. Nojiko sounded despondent. "When we tried to stop them, one of them shot me in the thigh." Her sobs hadn't let up in the slightest. "I'm so sorry, Nami. All your hard work ... and it was all for nothing. Everything is gone." The two of them sounded utterly defeated, and the looks of rage and shame they saw coming and now made sense. Everyone had known all along. She started to laugh. It bubbled out of her, quite against her will. The 3 villagers stared in abject disbelief as she threw her head back and cackled like a mad witch. They looked away, obviously thinking the poor girl was having a mental breakdown at the thought of 8 years of her life vanishing in a puff of smoke. Finally, Nami settled down and faced the ceiling, her eyes closed. She had a peaceful smile on her face before her eyes snapped open. She got to her feet and started walking away. "Let's go," she told Luffy, who opened the door and let her out. "Nami," Nojiko gasped. "Where are you going, Nami?" Genzo called out to her as he scrambled to follow. Nami stopped at the door. "Isn't it obvious?" She turned back, a confident smile on her face. "We're going to destroy Arlong Park." Genzo jerked and his jaw dropped, and without another word, she walked outside. She was a step behind Luffy, though she took the lead in order to show them where they were actually going. Zoro was sitting on some crates, with his katana standing up in front of him. He was wearing a Hawaiian shirt with all the buttons undone, showing off all of his bandages. Sanji was smoking one of his cigarettes and looking up at the beautiful sky. Usopp was sitting on the ground, his head down, and his arms crossed. On his back was Krieg's giant spear with a little handle sticking out of it near his head. All signs of it having belonged to the reality-challenged madman were gone, replaced with the Straw Hat Jolly Roger on one side and his own Jolly Roger on the other. Neither of them broke step as Luffy called out, "Let's go." The 3 Straw Hats all followed. Roger. Genzo rushed out from behind them, looking equal parts exhilarated, furious, and terrified. "Arm yourselves," he roared, and the villagers cheered, rushing for their makeshift hidden weapons in eagerness for the fight ahead. Nami was tempted to tell them not to bother, but instead she turned to Johnny and Yosaku, who met up with them a little further ahead. "You two, keep them out of it. She jerked her head towards the following villagers. Even Nojiko was among them, slowly following beside Nako on her crutches. If they were all going to die, then she was going to do it beside her sister. "You got it, sis," they told her, forcing her to stifle a growl. The massive procession went through the entire town and further out, close to the coastlines of the island. That's when they saw it. It was a massive, sprawling, gated compound. An equally massive pair of steel gates decorated with images of sea life stood closed in front of them. Luffy overtook Nami, and everyone who hadn't seen him in action before gasped as his right leg started glowing. Every step he took made a clear imprint of his sandal, burned into the very dirt itself. With a look of utter fury on his face, Luffy planted his left leg and swung his right in a roundhouse kick, and Ten no Kizu. A massive arc of plasma, bigger than any Rankyaku he had showed any of them so far, screamed through the air. The crescent-shaped arc of plasma raced forward and hit the wall. A massive plume of smoke and fire roared out, blasting burning wood and sizzling lumps of hot metal into the compound. Several fishmen were taken out immediately, before they could even scream. When the smoke cleared, the gate itself had vanished while most of the wall was utterly demolished. Nami passed him just after he launched the attack as she assembled her staff with one hand and jumped into the compound. "I'm home," she called cheerily. The people behind the crew all stared with dropped jaws and their eyes popping out. The biggest fishman looked pissed. He had vicious-looking teeth, a saw-like nose, and light blue skin. He was wearing a floral print shirt, dark green shorts, and a brown ashanka. He had a huge, dark red sun tattooed onto his left pec as well as a stylized saw-nosed shark on his left arm. Arlong, who had narrowly avoided getting smashed in the head with a piece of rubble, turned to her with feigned, angry eyes. "Nami... what are you doing? Do you mean to tell me that you've betrayed me?" Nami scoffed. "Betrayed? Don't be so full of yourself, Arlong. You have to be loyal to something to betray it." She smirked at his dark, furious look. "Oh, what's wrong? Did you actually think I was one of you? That I would be your friend if you showered me in clothes and food?" A vein was bulging dangerously on Arlong's forehead. "Well, sorry, you bastard. My mother's in a grave because of you, and I know your marine lackeys came to steal my money. Don't you worry," she sneered at her tormentor of 8 years. "Once we put your head on a pike, he'll be next." Luffy pushed past her, brushing against her shoulder. She shot his back an affectionate grin. "So, you're Arlong, huh?" Arlong turned his furious gaze to him. "That's right. Who the hell are you, filthy human?" "I'm Luffy, a pirate." Luffy stalked forward, his fists clenching by his side. "I'm Nami's captain." He blurred forward, slipping right through every single member of the Arlong pirates without them even noticing. He reappeared in front of Arlong, whose eyes widened in shock. "And you made my navigator cry." Wham! Arlong's face molded itself around Luffy's fist. His entire face distended, and he swore he felt a dozen tiny hairline fractures appear on his cheekbones. The blow lifted him clean off his throne and sent him flying through one of the marble pillars holding up their shade. He hit the ground and rolled, digging a trench into his perfectly maintained grass before coming to a stop by impacting into the wall on the other side of the compound. He crashed into it, spread eagle, and cratered it in the shape of his body, with cracks beginning to radiate out from his impact zone. A small bit of blood flew from his gaping gob. Luffy opened his fist before slowly closing it again as he stalked forward like a predator. Cracks rang through the air as his knuckles popped. He completely ignored the small fry, having eyes only for Arlong. Several of the fishmen grunts roared out in anger and drew weapons, charging at him. Nami appeared in front of Luffy's back, her staff already swinging into action. With a single swipe, teeth shattered and flew as one more fishman was taken out of the fight immediately. She vanished again and appeared above another, her right leg pointing to the air. She crashed down and smashed her heel right into his skull, sending him hurtling into the dirt and digging a hole from her picture-perfect axe kick. Without even landing, she vanished again, reappearing next to a fishman and clotheslining him in the throat with her staff. In the same motion, she swung low and did a spin kick, taking out an enemy's legs and sending him into the air. "Shit!" he roared in shock as Nami's staff practically folded him in half. Spittle flew from his unconscious form, the whites of his eyes the only things visible. The residents of Kakoashi village trembled in utter shock. Is that really Nami?" Nojiko gasped. She had gotten so strong. She was utterly manhandling the grunts of the Arlong pirates. Who were these people she had befriended? How had one of them sent Arlong's giant, hulking form flying with a single punch? A fishman who was bigger than most of the others was gritting his teeth in rage and could take it no more. He charged forward, howling his fury. "Nami, you traitorous bitch. I knew we should have drowned you when we had the chance." He was a gray-skinned, somewhat short but very bulky fishman named Kurobai. He had black hair and a red sun tattooed on his chest. His elbows had fins extending from them and he wore a dark blue karate gi. He was leaping at her, his fist extended and ready to take her goddamn head clean off. Sanji appeared in front of a smiling Nami and his dress shoes imprinted themselves on Kurobai's face. I'm sorry, who exactly were you calling a bitch? He looked quite pissed off. I won't stand idly if you plan to insult and hurt a lady. His hands were in his pockets as he lowered his foot, watching as Kurobai rolled back to his feet and dabbed at his bleeding nose. Go. Kurobai flinched momentarily from the stinging, before focusing on Sanji. So, you're stronger than the average human? Huh. Doesn't matter, he hissed. You inferior humans are all the same. You can't even breathe underwater. He charged forward and threw a punch out, looking to lay out Sanji in one hit. Sanji dodged and threw a kick which was blocked by Kurobai's fin. A damn fish shouldn't be yammering to a chef. While they were fighting, an octopus fishman with pink skin, 6 arms, and a massive, protruding mouthpiece named Hachai grabbed his lips. You idiots. Come out, my powerful monster. Come out, Momu. He began trumpeting using his own mouth. Nami winced. Damn it, Usopp. I really wish you had finished my new weapon instead of playing around with that stupid spear. She, along with everyone else, including the panicking villagers, watched as the massive sea cow that had laid waste to Gosa village rose from the deep pool connecting to the ocean. Gallons upon gallons of water dripped from its form. Moo. It looked just like a cow too, except its lower half was a fish tail and a flexible ridge ran up its spine and onto its head. It had flippers instead of hooves and its large, round nose had a golden ring in it. Its spots were also green, rather than black. El Momu, Nami called sweetly, waving at the giant pet. You may want to leave, you know. I'm sure you're smart enough to realize when a ship is sinking. Momu eyed her, and then cast its gaze around Arlong Park. It noticed Arlong crushed into one of the back walls with someone approaching him, as well as the down grunts. But to his eyes, Arlong looked pissed more than hurt, and it had seen the grunts go down before. Moo. It roared, opening up a gaping maw with giant, sharp teeth. It dove for Nami. TCH. Expected, but disappointing. She jumped forward, meeting the giant cow head-on with a blisteringly fast swing of her staff. The giant sea cow slammed into the grass, but it just looked even more angry than before now. Nami may have been getting a lot stronger, but her hits were nowhere near the level of even Sanji's. Catch me if you can, Momo. She called as she flipped over it and used her Jeppa water walk to run away from the land. She led the giant sea cow away, to the gobsmacked looks of the rest of her village. Hachai grabbed a massive, hulking piece of rubble, octopus black ... on the rocks. He roared, bringing the gigantic slab down, looking to crush Zoro. He simply slashed upwards. His sword never touched the concrete, but it split in two all the same. Gioror ... who the hell are you? Zoro held his katana in front of him with a confident grin. Roronoa Zoro. The octopus gasped. Zoro, the user of Santorio. He grinned. My name is Hachin, and I'm the worst opponent for any swordsman. It'll be an honor to kill you. You guys aren't going to be doing any killing. Zoro grinned back. That's our line. The last of Arlong's officers was a light blue fishman with thick, protruding red lips named Chu. He sucked in a lot of air, getting ready to unleash a water cannon at the traitorous woman who was rapidly vanishing from sight. He never got the chance. Something hit him and exploded, sending him crashing to his back. Why, your opponent is me, Usopp said through chattering teeth. How do you like my Kyaku Boshi? Chu sat up, basically uninjured. You're looking to die, aren't you? Allow me to make it quick. He got to his feet and began chasing after a terrified Usopp, who had his arms waving in the air. The two quickly vanished from sight, leaving puzzled villagers staring at their retreating forms blankly. Zoro and Hachai began fighting in earnest, with Zoro dodging out of the way of the sticky black ink fired from the octopus fishman's mouth. I'll end this quickly, takoyaki, Zoro yelled, swinging Wado at Hachai's head. Hachai gasped and ducked, but 2 of the 5 spikes that made up his hairstyle were cut off. My hair. He grabbed at his head. You bastard. I'll forgive you, he said cheerily. It's only hair. It'll grow back. The important thing is that I'm still alive. He charged forward. How kind of you, Zoro deadpanned, before he grimaced as his wound started to ache painfully. He bit back a groan as he could feel his stamina start to sap away. He would have to finish this quickly. Sanji twitched as he caught it out of the corner of his eye. That idiot. He dodged one of Kurobai's punches and retaliated with a kick. You know, Roronoa Zoro, I'm quite strong against swordsmen. Do you know why? Hachai asked Zoro. Like hell I do. Zoro charged and swung down. Hachai got into a horse stance with all 6 of his arms ready. Octopus 3 continuous naked sword catching technique. He clapped all 6 of his hands together and caught Zoro's katana. Or he would have, if Zoro was a weaker man. The sword slipped right through his palms and slashed his forehead, drawing first blood. OWWW. Stop playing around, idiot. Zoro yelled at him with shark teeth. Hachai used his 6 hands to display 9 digits. Taco Hachai number 9. Suction cup. He completely dodged Zoro's slash and stuck himself to one of the pillars, upside down. Zoro growled angrily. Get your ass down here this instant. He roared. When Hachai showed no signs of moving, he growled and swung his sword, Itoryu, Sanjiroku Pound Ho. An air blade flew towards the octopus man, who panicked and leapt back to the ground. The air blade sliced through the pillar in part of Arlong Park's main building. The cut section slid off and crashed to the floor. Hachai was about to say something when he noticed Zoro had fallen to his knees and was clutching his chest. That move had really been too much for Zoro. His injury started to open up again. He ground his teeth together and forced himself up. Damn it, why now of all times? What are you doing, Roronoa Zoro? Hachai eyed his bandages, which had slowly started to stain red. Do you really intend to fight with an injury as bad as that one? That must be. Sanji grit his teeth as the rest of the people there stared at him in surprise. That damn idiot. I knew he was faking. On the sidelines, Yasaku was gritting his teeth in panic. His wounds are just too deep. They haven't healed over yet. Johnny growled at him. Of course they haven't. He snapped. An injury like that would have taken 6 months for a normal man to heal. And that's if they didn't just die outright. He must have been enduring the pain this entire time. I knew something was up when that idiot just kept acting norm. Grrrhhh. Sanji groaned out as Kurobai took advantage of his distracted state to punch him in the chest. He flew out past the gathering from Kakoashi and landed on the dirt, much to their terror. You shouldn't take your eyes off of your opponent. Kurobai chided him. I'm a level 40 fishman karate practitioner. Damn cook. Zoro panted. Pay attention to your own fight. He gripped his katana with steady hands, which defied Hachai's sense of belief. How can you hold that blade so steadily? He eyed the deep red stain on Zoro's front. If you really intend to fight like that, then I won't disrespect your decision. You wait right there, Roronoa Zoro. With that, he jumped through one of Arlong Park's windows. Zoro fell to his knees, panting heavily. Elsewhere, Luffy stood in front of Arlong, who swung his arms out from their rebel prison and broke himself free. He growled angrily, showing off his sharp teeth. His muscles were bulging hideously. Your little crewmates don't seem to be doing so well. He taunted. Why don't you join them in hell? He roared, raising a fist and bringing it screaming down towards Luffy's head. Luffy met his punch head-on with one of his own. The impact sent out a shockwave that demolished the ground they were standing on and crumbled even more of the already broken wall behind Arlong. A sickening crack rang through the air and Arlong pulled back, howling. His right hand was trembling, bent downward at the wrist. His fingers weren't looking too good either, as they hung limply except for his thumb. Shishishi, why would I do that? You think a crappy little punch like that could take down Sanji? Luffy laughed. My brother hit harder than that when he was 12. Back near the center of the courtyard, Zoro grit his teeth as Hachai landed in front of them, showing off his 6 swords. Zoro's face was shadowed as he took his bandana off his arm and tied it onto his head. Let me tell you something, little octopus. There's a man I have to meet again. No matter what ... and until I do, not even the Grim Reaper will take me. He yelled back at his 2 old partners, Yasaku, Johnny. Lend me your swords. He grinned confidently at Hachai. Let me show you my Santoryu. Anaki's wounds are bad. He's in critical condition, Yasaku said. With those wounds and the fever he probably has, he shouldn't even be standing. If they reopen, he'll die for sure. Now's not the time to be worrying about that. Johnny retorted. He's the only one who can cut through this crisis. He held up his sword, mirrored by his partner. Behind them all, Sanji sat up. He was bleeding lightly, but didn't appear to be in any real pain. Level 40, huh? How weak. The geezer's kicks back at the Barady must have been level 400. You got it, Anaki. The both of them tossed their dadao forward. Zoro stood there, panting. Shit, I'm losing it. I thought moving around would help lower my temperature, but it's only gotten worse. Johnny and Yosaku panicked. Aniki. We already threw the swords. Catch them. Watch out. Hachai growled angrily. You look tired, Zoro. I'll show you the insurmountable gap in skill between us. Your 2 arms will only hinder you against this Rokuryu. Kakoashi Kaiken. His flexible arms looked like noodles as they danced in the air. He started a barrage of slices with his 6 swords. Zoro caught the flying swords at the very last moment. Santoryu. Toro Nagashi. He blocked all of the blades and flashed behind Hachai. The 2 stood still, back to back, before Hachai's front erupted in a geyser of blood. He got by, to be able to block all 6 blades coming from all directions. He's amazing. The 2 hunters yelled. New. Hachai yelled. Now you've really made me mad. He was gritting his teeth and veins were bulging on his forehead, around the large sun that was tattooed there. I swear I'll kill you. Just think about it logically. There's no way 3 blades can beat 6. Zoro chuckled, a flash of Mihawk's face appearing in his mind. Logic. I think you've made a miscalculation. He stared Hachai down without a waver in his posture, despite the fact that he probably should have already gone down long ago. You may have more blades, but my swords are heavier. Not even 3 of your swords matches the weight of one of mine. Hachai began to laugh. I'm being underestimated? You think your swords are heavier than mine? You're a fool. They may not look it, but these swords all weighed over 300 kilograms. They're far heavier than any human blade. Zoro almost cringed at the answer, HMPH. There's no use explaining it to a fool. I have nothing to say to an idiot who can't even understand that. Hachai held all swords directly in front of him, the tips touching and almost forming what looked like a barrel, octopus pot stance, New Year's. He charged forward, looking like he wanted to drill straight through Zoro with his technique. Zoro blocked with 2 of his blades. But there was only triumph in Hachai's gaze, octopus opener. He swung all his swords outwards and consequently opened a massive hole in Zoro's defenses as his arms were flung back, body slam. He head-butted Zoro square in the chest. Blood squirted from Zoro's mouth and nose as his friends and the townsfolk panicked. He got launched into the air and began falling. I won't give you a safe landing, Roronoa Zoro. Hachai yelled, 6 sword style, 6 swords waltz. The 6 blades began spinning above Hachai, like a soon-to-be macabre windmill. You'll be mincemeat when you touch them. Zoro was seconds away from death when his entire body started tumbling in midair. His own sword started slamming into the propeller of death, and when he landed, he was on his feet, one knee on the floor, and Hachai's hands were all bleeding. His swords were all clattering to the floor. New. He grabbed his swords again. You bastard. You slashed my hands. Now I really can't forgive you. I'm not a circus act. Octopus pod stance. I can't afford to die. Zoro panted. Even if this would kill an ordinary person, I cannot fall. Zoro lifted his swords, all of them pointing in the same direction to his side. A ghostly image of a dragon appeared behind him, in order to defeat the extraordinary. I cannot be ordinary. Hachai had charged forward with his swords, and the second before he reached him, Zoro began to spin. Every single one of Hachai's swords shattered into dozens of shards. Tatsumaki. Hachai's heavy body lifted straight into the air via a razor-sharp whirlwind. More and more tiny slices appeared on his body before the wind could no longer keep him afloat, and he crashed into the water, completely unconscious. He was quite lucky that he was a fishman, because if he hadn't been, he surely would have just drowned to death. Zoro panted and almost fell over, but he righted himself just in time. Now do you get it, Takoyaki? You see the difference between our blades now, don't you? Kurobai rushed towards Zoro, getting ready to break his skull with one hit, but he was forced to dodge a final Sanjiroku pound-ho from Zoro as he finally fell. How dare you defeat my brethren? He eyed the deep gouge in the ground with enraged eyes. He couldn't tell if the man had even been serious or not, despite that wound. A human like this could not be allowed to exist. He charged forward again, only to be met with a teeth-shattering strong kick from Sanji. Sanji's smoke was wafting from his mouth. Now, I know you weren't about to hurt this idiot, right? Kurobai rubbed his aching jaw in rage. I thought I killed you. Sanji scoffed. Please, as if a punch that weak could hurt me. You probably couldn't even kill Patty and Karn. Kurobai growled. I'm being underestimated. He got into a karate stance. Whether on land or in the sea, fishmen cannot be beat by you inferior humans. Evidence to the contrary notwithstanding, I'm sure. Sanji sneered at the fishman, who had veins bulge on his head at the comment. Once I kill you, I'll kill Zoro. And that long-nosed idiot, that brat who hit Arlong, and every single one of the villagers who dared rebel. He grinned, and of course, I'll kill that bitch Nami too for betraying our trust, if Momo hasn't already eaten her. You won't be able to save a single person with your fake chivalry. Sanji vanished with Soru, Collier. He yelled from above a suddenly wide-eyed Kurobai. His foot slammed straight into the fishman's gills, sending him to the floor screaming in pain. Kurobai quickly rolled out of the way of an axe kick, looking furious. I'll kill you with the essence of fishman karate. Earlier, it was my Hyaku Megawara Seiken that sent you flying. You'll never be able to withstand my Sen Megawara Seiken. I'll kill you in a single blow. He gathered power behind his fist, and then sent it screaming forwards. The air whistled from the speed and power as it hurtled towards Sanji, but it never hit home. Sanji appeared behind Kurobai in a burst of speed and dropped to a one-handed handstand position. He began spin, coatlet. So, a hit to the back of Kurobai's legs sent him into the air, howling in pain. A second hit to the back bent him backwards in quite the wrong direction. Kurobai's eyes were white and his mouth was gaping as he howled with what little air he had in his lungs. Poitrine. Sanji flipped above the floating fishman and slammed his heel into his breast, sending him crashing into the floor hard enough to shatter it. As his body flopped back up in a kneeling position from the impact, Sanji gave him a running kick to the chest. Jigget. Kurobai hurtled backwards and rolled, rising to his feet. You bastard. Take this, Sen Megawara Sei. Sanji blurred into existence in front of him at a blistering pace. Mutton shot. A hard kick to the face finished the fight, sending Kurobai hurtling through the wall and into dreamland. Who did you say you were going to kill again? He muttered darkly as he lit up a cigarette. Don't want any dessert. Chew ... That was more trouble than it was worth. You couldn't even stand a single shot of my water gun. Chew stood above the bloody, broken form of Usopp. He had chased the brat all the way to the farmlands. You ran pretty fast, but it still wasn't enough to save you. Too bad, so sad. Well, at least you got a quick death. He turned. Well, time to head back. I wonder if they're finished by now. Usopp lay there with his eyes open. Phew. My ketchup boshi worked like a charm. He thinks his stupid water gun hit me. He risked turning his head a little and saw Chu leisurely strolling away. What a terrifying race. They flipped an entire town. Sorry, Nami, I want to help, but I'd rather not die. He sat up. I already have this ketchup blood on me, but it could probably look more convincing. He started rubbing dirt on himself and scuffing up his skin to make it seem like the battle was a fight to the death. I wonder what I should say when I get back. He wondered, maybe something like, my bad, I ended up losing. I told you I wanted you as my sniper, didn't I? Luffy's face swam in his vision. Or maybe, damn it, that guy just barely got away from me. Would be better. His head dipped. Don't cry, Nami. We tried our hardest. I'd rather die. This time it was Zoro's face, clutching his sword through clenched teeth. We've all fought well. Tears started building up in Usopp's eyes behind his goggles. I won't stand idly if you plan to insult and hurt a lady. Sanji's confident face popped up, ready to take on the world for their navigator. No, my wounds are nothing to worry about. His entire body began to tremble. He shot my mother between the eyes right in front of me. Steam almost shot from his nose. I'm so pathetic. He jumped up to his feet. Stop right there, you half-fish freak. He roared. The moment I stepped onto that boat, I left peace and security behind. They risk their lives and give it their all, every damn day. Kaya would be ashamed of me. I'm ashamed of me. Chu halted and half-turned. Oh, so you were still alive. Chu, as if a little attack from a half-fish bastard could ever hit me. Usopp yelled back. They can all laugh from the bottom of their hearts. Isn't that what I always wanted as well? Isn't that why I set out? If I don't fight seriously, I can never sail with them again, nor can I laugh with them. Hisatsu, Keen Boshi, he yelled as he drew the rubber and let loose the star. Shu had been rushing towards him, aiming to take him out in one hit, but he had been surprised by how quickly and accurately Usopp was able to fire it, instead of knocking the human head over heels in a single hit as planned. He ate a full flame star right in the face and was horribly burned by it. He howled in agony as he clutched his aching face, but Usopp was caught by such surprise at actually damaging his opponent that he didn't capitalize on it. He would regret that dearly. An enraged Chu charged forward at a much faster speed than ever before and smashed his fist square into Usopp's nose, squishing it flat. Usopp literally flipped from the impact and landed on his stomach, blood spurting from his face. Chu turned with an enraged look in his eyes. Idiot. You should have just pretended to be dead. Now I'm going to tear you limb from limb. He roared as he stalked forward like an angry tiger. I'm done, Usopp muttered. That's right. Shu yelled and kicked him in the ribs. You're done all right. Done living. It's over. Usopp hammer. He yelled and smashed his decently heavy metal hammer into Chu's kneecap. Shu howled and clutched his leg as he hopped on one hand. Usopp rubber band of doom. Shu flinched and closed his eyes before his brain caught up. He opened his eyes and saw that Usopp was gone. God damn it. How could I fall for such a stupid trick? Come out, you son of a bitch. He heard a whirling sound and turned, catching a bottle. Rum. Is this a peace offering, you little shit? Hisatsu, Namori Boshi. Usopp's voice rang out as the bottle shattered and dumped alcohol all over him. The alcohol stung on his burns and it pissed him off even more. You're dead, you inferior little brat. He faced the trees before he dipped his protruding mouth into the water meant for irrigation. It doesn't matter where you're hiding. I'll flush you out. He started sucking up massive amounts of water, inflating almost like a balloon. In the trees, Usopp was glaring at the giant battle spear he had on his back. This thing is too big and clunky. I almost got caught. He shook his head. It doesn't matter. The man Usopp can't run away from this fight. I'm a real pirate now. If I lose, I'll die. Mizutio. Chu's voice rang out, and Usopp gasped as an entire section of the forest utterly vanished. Where's the forest? He yelped, staring agog at the destruction that had just missed him by about a meter or two. Chu stared at his exposed head with a twitchy eye. I feel as if I'm being mocked. He muttered. He showed himself on his own. Why do I have to fight an idiot like him? He spat out another ball of water. Mizuteho. Usopp grabbed the battle spear by its extending pole and swung it. He definitely didn't have the strength for extended use, but he just managed to connect. A massive explosion rang out from the impact of the water cannon and the spear. Usopp got flung into a tree while Chu slid back a couple feet. Ugh, Usopp groaned, allowing a puff of black smoke to escape his mouth. He looked a little crispy. Bad idea. The battle spear clattered to the dirt next to him. He raised a shaky hand and put it back onto his back, its pole retracting. Shu ran over and held a giant tree trunk over his head, ready to smash Usopp. Yeah, it really was. It's game over. Usopp grinned victoriously. You're right. Alcohol is flammable. Hisatsu, Keen Boshi. Shu ignited into brilliant flames, and this time they didn't extinguish. His clothes were bathed in alcohol and wouldn't go out. Shu began rolling around, screaming at the top of his lungs. He began running for water. Usopp hammer. Usopp jumped next to him and smashed him in the face with his hammer. Both of them landed in the water. Ugh! Shu groaned and tried to get up. Usopp panicked and dropped his hammer, reaching for the spear again. Usopp exploding pound. He swung it down as hard as he could. A massive explosion rang through the clearing once more, sending up a plume of smoke and mist. Usopp crashed into a tree and the battle spear landed in another tree around 100 feet away. He puffed out a lot of black smoke before raising his goggles with trembling fingers. He looked like a reverse panda, as his regular skin color was surrounded by black soot that covered his entire face. Maybe I should not use that thing anymore, he mumbled weakly. He staggered to his feet and went to go check on Chu. The mist cleared, revealing the fishman. His face was mangled beyond recognition and horrible burns marred his body. He was clearly not going to be getting up again for a good, long while. Usopp trembled before he collapsed backwards. I won, he said in wonder. A blinding grin split his face. I won. Even I could win. You see that, you bastard fishmen. Don't you dare underestimate me. Damn it, guys. Why do I have to fight the sea cow? You could knock it out in one hit. Nami screamed as Momu once again caught up to her and maw opened wide to swallow her whole. She used Sora to speed out of the way and started hopping on the water, having long since realized it was much easier to do than hopping on the air. She tracked the sea cow through the water and got ready to move again, jumping straight up into the air as Momu breached and sent whole pools worth of water exploding into the air. It reached its peak and fell back down long before Nami did. She rubbed her face in irritation. I don't mind fighting anymore, but I'd at least like a chance. This thing is way too big for me to hurt. She started to whine. Moo! Momu roared at her from down below and slapped the water with its tail, flinging water at her. It didn't even get close to her. Well, here goes nothing. She deadpanned before sending her rocketing down. Her staff caught it right between the eyes so hard that a shockwave spread through the ocean. It was so hard even her reinforced staff developed some cracks and her arms trembled. Her hands felt numb. And Momu just roared and started freaking out. Damn it, she cried as she dashed away from the wild beast. I'm going to kill Usopp. I can't hit this thing hard enough to take it out. Momu kept thrashing and churning up the ocean before Nami got an idea. It would suck ... She would hate every second of it ... But it might work. Hey MOHMOO. I quote him right here, she screamed, wagging her tongue at it. Moo! The sea cow charged. Nami waited, right up until its head was descending to eat her, before jumping back and then using Jeppo straight upwards. Her hands wrapped around Momu's nose ring and it was in for a really bad day. MOOO. Momu wailed in agony as Nami wrenched its nose ring this way and that way with Jeppo. Its thrashing didn't help it in that regard because it just allowed Nami to stop doing any work. Finally, her hands slipped from the ring and she was flung backwards at the water. She smacked into it with a cry of pain and sank, before righting herself and leaping back out. Well, that certainly were. Why are you crying? Her thoughts to herself changed into angry screaming as she looked at Momu with white eyes and shark teeth. Momu just sat there and stared at her, tears in its eyes and a little bit of blood coming from its nose. Moo. It mumbled sadly. She stared at it, completely deadpan, before she facepalmed and pointed out at the open ocean. Just ... Just get out of here, you stupid, adorable lug. Moo. It said mournfully. You're just as afraid of Arlong as I was. She realized with exasperation. You're huge, but you're really a softie deep down, aren't you? She shook her head. Just get out of here, Momu. Go be free. Arlong isn't going to be around anymore. Someone much scarier than him likes me much better. Moo. With one final cry, the massive sea cow turned and disappearing into the depths with a gigantic splash. She sighed. Well, that ended well. She deadpanned, before turning and kicking her way back to Arlong Park. She arrived back around the same time as Usopp did. Nami, did you win too? He called out in sheer excitement. He was covered in soot, but he seemed elated. She wanted to go over and smack him good. But it did look like he actually used that stupid battle spear, so she could forgive him. Every fishman sans Arlong was down, and he would follow soon after, of course. She smirked confidently, exchanging a high five. Nami, a familiar voice grabbed her attention. She turned and smiled happily at her sister, who was looking at her as if she had seen a ghost. Nami ... What happened to you? Nami grinned and turned back. He happened. She eyed Luffy, who was still facing off against Arlong. And the fishman did not look like he was enjoying himself. He gave me hope. Watch closely, sis ... He's the one who made this all possible. Arlong and Luffy were engaged in a furious fist fight at the moment. Arlong's muscles were bulging dangerously, and he looked more furious than anyone there had ever seen him. His eyes were blood red and he was covered in bruises. Why won't you die? The fishman roared, punching at Luffy so hard that it would have shattered concrete into thousands of tiny pieces. Luffy casually inclined his head to the left to dodge the fist and smashed his own into Arlong's gut so fast that his arm was a mere blur. The hit lifted Arlong clean off his feet and forced bloody spittle from his lips, but Luffy didn't give him any respite. A second punch to his side clearly broke ribs, judging from the sickening crack that rang through the air. A third punch to the face sent Arlong soaring across the courtyard into the pool. The people of the village stiffened, knowing that Arlong was now 10 times as strong as he had been. They saw Arlong's fin as the shark swam in the water, allowing it to reinvigorate him. He grinned, allowing some blood to escape into the ocean. Filthy human. Do you have any idea how angry you've made me? You won't die easily. He rose up with cupped hands. Owachimizu. 2 massive bullets of water shot forward at a blistering speed. Luffy's eyes narrowed, and before the bullets had reached him, they vaporized. Stop playing in your little pond, you stupid shark. Arlong snarled angrily. You hurt Nami, and I'm going to kick your ass. You inferior human. Arlong roared, visibly getting even more hulking and angry than before. Don't you know the difference between fishmen and humans? Do you not realize how angry? And you? A blast of plasma forced Arlong under the water with wide eyes. The water instantly began to vaporize where the beam touched and boil nearby. Arlong howled in agony as his flesh started to cook. Half of his body looked completely discolored now. He darted away from the hot water as fast as he could. Get up here, Arlong. Luffy roared angrily. If you don't, I'll boil you out of there. Oi, Luffy, Sanji called. You can't just boil shark. I haven't even seasoned him yet. Arlong, furious beyond reason at having not only been interrupted in his fishman's superiority rant but having been injured by a filthy human, swam like a torpedo straight out of the water, shark on darts. His entire body was horizontal, an arrow aimed straight for Luffy's heart. His nose gleamed in the sunlight as his body cut through the air, looking to spear this damn paramecia straight through Arlong Park. Luffy grinned and raised a hand. It closed in a vice grip around Arlong's nose, the impact pushing the two of them back roughly 3 meters. But their momentum cut, and all Arlong could see was Luffy's fist around his nose and that damnable, supremely confident grin of his. Wham! Luffy first smashed Arlong's knees into the ground hard enough to crater it. Then, he slammed his own knee into the massive shark fishman's sternum. Air and spittle were both forced from the fishman's mouth in a wheeze before another knee almost had his eyes pop out. His arms flopped uselessly to his sides. Luffy grinned as he remembered the conversation he had with Nami that first morning after she told him what Arlong had done to her. Arlong is very proud of that nose of his. I've personally seen him spear straight through a marine ship and sink it. His crew says it's unbreakable. I told Nami and my crew I would be feeding you your own nose, Luffy said, almost conversationally. That woke Arlong from his daze, but he couldn't get a word in edgewise. For the first time, a human's grin terrified him. I'd hate to be called a liar. Luffy's grip on his nose tightened and he started forcing it backwards. Arlong started to howl as his indestructible nose started to bend backwards towards his hair. Stop. His muscles bulged as he threw a hard right hand into Luffy's ribs. Get your filthy hands off me. Luffy didn't even wince. Stop. Stop, he roared, throwing devastating fists into his enemy's torso, but Luffy barely even felt them. When your childhood consisted of getting punched by Monkey D. Garp in order to build a stronger Tekai, a wimpy fishman like Arlong wouldn't be able to even budge him. With a final jerk of his wrist, Luffy ripped Arlong's saw-like nose clean off his face. Even Nami turned a little pale as Arlong jerked back and started rolling about, clutching at his face as he howled dementedly. I didn't think Luffy would actually rip his nose off, she mumbled, but the sight of her tormentor screaming in pain brought a grin to her face. She wasn't normally a vicious person like this, and she was actually pretty sure that Luffy wasn't either, usually, but Arlong had stolen her mother from her and hurt her. They could both make an exception in this case. Luffy calmly walked to the flailing Arlong as he stumbled about, blood pouring from between his fingers as he held his face, and rammed his fist into the fishman's gut. Arlong almost puked, his mouth opening wide. Luffy threw the nose into Arlong's gaping maw, and Arlong instinctively clamped down. A bone-shattering uppercut broke the shark's jaw and sent shards of his teeth flying around. Arlong collapsed backwards, barely able to move. His teeth were all either cracked or utterly shattered, and they weren't even growing back anymore. Luffy moved above him and punched down so hard that a 2-meter-wide crater broke into the dirt. Nami started to sob as they all felt the quake, sob in utter joy and relief. A second quake shook them as the crater widened again. For hurting. Each word was punctuated with another plume of concrete and dirt spraying out of the hole. Nami. The final word sounded out with one last quake. Seconds later, Luffy left Arlong's broken body lying in the hole. He hopped out of it and turned to stare at Arlong Park's main building. The night he learned about her past had not been the only night. They had slept together many more times since then, each time trading a few stories. Nami's stories about this damn place had not been any more pleasant than the stories about her past itself. He turned to his navigator, who was rushing towards him with a tearful, ecstatic grin. What do you want to do, Nami? She slowed and quirked her head, ransack and stripped the place. He clenched a fist, or see it on the ground. Two sides warred within the former thief. Half of her was salivating at the thought of seeing this place utterly obliterated. The other half was salivating at taking everything that wasn't nailed down. Just a start. She bit her lip for a moment as she stared. Everything from the 3rd floor and up. She finally whispered, and Luffy immediately turned and leapt into the air. In 10 and 10 no. Teho. Nami tried to keep her eyes on the tower as Luffy fired his attack. But it was just too bright. She was forced to look away. Finally, the light petered away and left her blinking away spots. Perhaps they would all need to get sunglasses. She looked and started to sob in joy. Just as she had demanded, the entirety of the top few floors had simply vanished, including her own room, her hated room, where Arlong and his men had tormented her for almost a decade, where she had been forced to hate her own dreams. It no longer existed. Luffy noticed parts of it were starting to burn, so before he landed he shot off a dull Rankyaku which blew all the flames out. When he landed, the delighted Nami physically leapt into his arms, wrapping her legs around his waist. "Thank you," she cried hoarsely. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." She was hugging him with all the strength she could muster, with him returning the favor. The both of them pulled back and smiled brightly at one another. Her smile turned into a more salacious smirk, her gaze smoldering. "Come here," she said sweetly as she grabbed the back of his neck and pulled him in for a kiss. Everyone there who knew her went wide-eyed and their jaws dropped. "N-O-O-O," Sanji cried, now witnessing the two being affectionate for the first time. He slumped to the ground in depression. "Nami swan ... why ... He pounded the ground with a fist. "It's not fair," he sobbed hysterically. Nami couldn't help herself. She started to giggle helplessly. "Shut up, Sanji. You're ruining the moment." Zoro, who was just lying there in agony, mumbled, "Stupid, perverted dartbrow." After that, the crew split up. Nami had immediately looked upon Zoro after she and Luffy had been able to relinquish one another and had almost gone into a panic at seeing his stained bandages. She had promptly ordered Sanji and Usopp to bring the swordsman to Nako's clinic, and practically begged the doctor to make sure he was all right. The rest of the town had immediately worked themselves into a frenzy, sending out victory messengers to every corner of the Konomi Islands in whatever dinks they managed to scrounge together. Jinzo led many of the stronger men in tying up and arresting the rest of the fishmen. Arlong and the rest of his officers were tied up with hundreds of pounds of rope, trussed up so tightly even they wouldn't be able to escape. And just to be sure, several of the villagers started taking revenge into their own hands when Jinzo wasn't looking. Arlong himself would go to jail far more grievously injured than even Luffy had left him. The rest of them started building up the town for the biggest party they would ever throw on that rock. Luffy, Nami, and Zoro's former partners had gone and grabbed the Going Merry, sailing her around the island and into Arlong Park and weighing anchor in the inlet. Nami felt utterly surreal walking into the place, remembering every time she had been dragged in there by her hair, mocked or derided or even punished when Arlong got into a mood. She remembered every time one of the people she had known growing up had been brought here, never to be seen again. She knew the fishmen never touched any of the women personally. They were far too xenophobic for that. But that didn't mean any of their fates would have been happy ones. Who knew what had become of them? Finally, she closed her eyes and let out a breath. Maybe coming in here was a bad idea. "I should have let you just destroy the place, Luffy." Luffy squeezed her hand in comfort. "They'll never hurt anyone again, Nami," he told her gently. "Now is just cleaning up, and I'm sure you'll be eager to see the rest of the place vanish after we're done." She smiled softly at him, giving him another kiss for his words. "Let's do this." The four of them proceeded to rip every single valuable thing out of that damned mansion. They'd gone room by room, taking anything that struck Nami's fancy as potentially being valuable and destroyed every single monument to the fishmen's cruelty they could find. She was fairly certain they destroyed millions of billion small and large statues. And Nami was utterly gleeful as she watched Luffy melt Arlong's sword Kiribachi into a pile of molten slag. When they reached Arlong's gigantic bedroom, even Nami's love for money wasn't enough to take anything Arlong might have used himself. About the only thing they dismantled to take or straight carried out was the furniture, with none of the beds or bedding following. She let out a snort once the idiot duo left the room with the bed frame. "Even as high quality as that thing was, I'm not sure I'd ever want to sleep in it." She chuckled depreciatively. "Then we won't," Luffy said simply, drawing a smile from the orange jet. Finally, they reached his safe, and Luffy had it open as quickly as he had opened that safe in Morgan's base. So long ago. Nami's eyes turned into BH. Luffy chuckled as his navigator practically went insensate at the warm light shining back onto them. Holy shit," she exclaimed, not believing her eyes. There was a massive amount of gold sitting quietly in the vault. Just in one pile probably sat more than enough to make up for all the gold those marine bastards had stolen from her grove. It took hours to empty the place out and dozens of trips, even after she sent Luffy racing into town to get Sanji and Usopp. They filled Mary's holds to capacity and the rest Nami had carted into town. As they sat outside, Nami eyed the going Marine nervously. She was definitely sitting lower in the water than Nami felt comfortable with. She doubted the ship would sink, but they'd be severely hampered if they ever got into a naval battle. Crocodile tears started leaking from her eyes. All that gold and we can't take it. Wahhhh. Luffy chuckled and shook his head in bemusement while he patted his distraught navigator on the back as she sobbed into his neck. After they cleared the place out, much to Nami's pleasure, she asked him to destroy the rest of the monument to her people's suffering. And destroy it Luffy did. He cupped his hands together and a massive ball of plasma formed in between them. In 10 and 10 no. Cone, he roared, throwing his hands forward and sending the massive blast straight through Arlong Park's doors. It burned a perfectly circular hole straight through and blasted through the stairwell before detonating in the middle of the building. The ball began expanding massively, engulfing everything in its path. The other three were forced to look away and shield their eyes as it appeared as if a second sun had formed right in front of them. The heat was immense, forcing all of them to start sweating heavily. The sea behind Luffy started to steam. Finally, the light vanished, and they were able to see what remained of Arlong Park. And the answer was nothing. The entire, massive structure and even some of the rock it stood on was just gone. All that was left was a melted bowl where it once stood. Nami took his hand and gave him another kiss. Luffy, thank you. Hours earlier, Zoro lay in bed, finally getting treatment for his duel with Mihawk. Much to the doctor's disgusted, horrified astonishment, "You goddamn idiot." Dr. Nako roared at the bedridden Zoro as he took off the bloody bandages for the first time. Zoro's torso was a mess, looking like it was held together with duct tape and superglue. How could you idiots possibly think patching this up on your own was a good idea? How could you even stand with wounds this bad? Do you not have a doctor on your ship? Dr. Huh. Luffy had that look in his eye later on once he heard the details of how badly his swordsman was injured. The doctor would not stop talking about how important it would be to find medical help for their crew. They had finally secured the Mary and had rushed into town to make sure Zoro was getting better. Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll find one after a musician. Nako promptly realized that Nami was utterly doomed. It's finally done, Mom. Nami was kneeling in front of Belmir's makeshift grave. After 8 long years ... It's finally over. Everyone is free again. She smiled. If Mom were alive, do you think she'd stop me from becoming a pirate? Of course, she would, Genzo was saying, but Nojiko grabbed his cheek and stretched it out. Of course not. Nojiko stated, that was Mom for you. She always told us to follow our dreams. And besides, even if she had, you wouldn't have listened. Nami laughed and stuck her tongue out. You know me too well, sis. It was already the second night of raucous partying in Kakoashi, and Luffy was staring at a sad-looking Sanji with a leg of meat in his mouth and 3 in each hand. Sanji, what was on that last melon you ate just now? What's with all the meat you're holding on to? Zoro asked in bemusement. Sanji glowered at his captain. Damn you, Luffy. Why do you have to be so lucky? He started shaking the man in the straw hat. You treat her right, you bastard. You got that. Luffy allowed himself to be shaken, chuckling at Sanji's continued reaction to him and Nami. Anyway, what was that melon? He would have reassured the man, but he had already done that 3 times, just that hour, and he'd been doing it for the past 2 days. Sanji sighed. It was something called raw ham melon. Now, I'm going to go flirt. He danced away. Usopp was off on some podium telling tall tales and singing songs with the villagers. Zoro was now dead asleep, and Luffy raced off, trying to find the awesome new food that had caught his eye. As he raced through the party, he ran into Nami. Shishishi, nice tattoo, Nami. He grinned. He embraced her as she wrapped her arms around his neck. The new tattoo was of a tangerine and a pinwheel. It's all thanks to you, she mumbled, placing a kiss on his neck. Luffy shivered, all thoughts of the ham melon momentarily chased out, for some reason. He kissed her neck back, and they distanced themselves momentarily so they could find the other's lips. Kissing was new to both of them, and they were a little clumsy, but it was much better than it had been on the ship weeks ago. She pulled back, an uncharacteristically shy blush on her cheeks. She grabbed his hand. Come on. The both blurred and vanished in a sorrow. The next day dawned bright and early, and the Straw Hats were gathered on their ship. Why are we on the ship, Luffy? Weren't we supposed to stay here for a few more days? Usopp asked him. Luffy smirked, thinking back to the previous night. Hey Luffy, I know you really want to go to the Grand Line now ... but do you think you could do one more favor for me? He laughed. We'll be back, he said. We have one last thing to do before we can start heading for the Grand Line. Sanji looked curiously at him. Oh, and what's that? You'll see soon enough. Nami grinned as she walked over. Thankfully, no one but Luffy noticed that she was walking a little gingerly, and she shot him a reassuring smile at his concern. Ready to go, Captain? Luffy grinned, then said sail. Has Arlong picked up that damn snail yet? Nezumi practically sprayed the hapless Marine underling he was speaking to with his spit. The Marine had his hands behind his back, trying to resist the urge to wipe his face. No, sir. he said. Ever since the last call 5 days ago, all communications have ceased. Nezumi ground his teeth together. Where is that damn fish when you need him? He rubbed his aching shoulder, which jostled the sling he had his arm in, causing him more pain. He grimaced. That blue-haired bitch has to pay for what she did to me. He ceased. That damn shark better pick up the damn snail soon. I want to buy her. I'll show her what happens when you even think of touching me. Whatever response the marine grunt was going to give was lost as the entire building began to shake. Massive explosions rang through the air, practically flinging Nezumi off his comfy chair and onto the ground. His wound almost ripped open, and instead his arm went numb. What's happening? We're going to attack what? Usopp cried hysterically. That marine base, Luffy repeated nonchalantly, pointing at the tall tower in the distance that was shaped like a mouse's head. That was essentially the only major building on the small island. It was connected to a couple smaller ones that were likely barracks or mess halls. There were 6 docks for medium-sized marine ships, with 4 currently occupied. This was Marine Base 3, designed to equip and supply Marine branches 12 through 18. As the most accomplished of the Marine captains of those 6 branches, the base was modeled after Nezumi's taste. But why? Usopp roared, shaking Luffy back and forth, much to his captain's amusement. That'll just put us on the Marine shit list. That'll happen regardless. Zoro was looking much better than he had a couple days ago. He looked far more recovered than he should have and had even started tugging at the bandages, claiming that they were too restrictive. Luffy will become the Pirate King. Might as well get the infamous part started. He was grinning confidently as he stared down the 4 ships, with one hand on Watto. Besides, they're corrupt. They got paid by Arlong to look the other way and even aid him when he wanted. They stole my money. They hurt my sister. Usopp cringed at the fire in Nami's tone and backed away hastily. She was smiling cheerfully. Take your pick, Usopp. She grinned at him, rubbing her newest staff happily. This one was wildly different than her previous 2. It was a gleaming red metal rather than blue wood, and it was hollowed out with a couple of buttons on it. Or better yet, get on the guns, sniper. Usopp gulped, before dropping his goggles down his face. All right. Luffy grinned as they got closer to the base. Usopp, say hello. And try not to hit the buildings. We don't know where they keep their loot, Nami added. Usopp mentally cringed at the order but followed it anyway without hesitation. Bang! The cannon fired. And he ran to the next one, firing it too. The cannonballs whistled through the air as the first one smashed straight through first the sail and then the cabin of one of the marine ships. The mast crumbled and fell to the side, ripping the sails of another vessel as it fell. The second one smashed into a second ship, igniting its powder keg and blowing it sky high. Most of the Straw Hats had to shield their eyes from the immensely bright light coming from the blaze that not only blew the ships to pieces, but also lit the closest vessel on fire. A second explosion from the shrapnel piercing through the other ship and igniting its powder cracked through the air. Then, the shockwave hit the Straw Hats and some of them winced as their ears popped. Usopp was almost tossed head over heels, but he somehow managed to right himself. In 2 shots, Usopp had annihilated 2 ships that were bigger than their ship, crippled another entirely, and damaged the last one. Marines everywhere on the island were panicking and running around like headless chicken. None of them had been manning any of the ships, so only an unlucky few were even injured. No one had even spotted the Going Merry because Nezumi's rule was that complacent. But some of them managed to rally together and rush for the last ship. It was damaged, but still seaworthy. The ship shot from port as soon as the anchors were pulled and fired right back at the Going Merry. AHHH. They fired. Usopp cried helplessly, waving his arms in the air. Zoro just barely managed to not roll his eyes. Are you a sniper or not? If they shoot at us, knock it out of the sky with our own shot. Usopp got right in Zoro's face, screaming at him, we only have 2 cannons and they're both empty. Fine, Zoro said carelessly. I suppose this will be a nice warm-up. He drew his cherished blade, having given the other 2 back to Johnny and Yasaku, and held it with 2 hands. Itoryu. Sanjiroku pound ho. He slashed the air in front of him and a couple dozen meters away. The cannonball was cut in twain before exploding. Nice aim. Nami cheered appreciatively. You've gotten much better at that. Zoro smirked as he started blasting cannonballs out of the air left and right. The 2 ships closed in on each other, with the enemy firing at an increasingly rapid, increasingly panicked pace in an attempt to sink them. Nothing worked. Zoro used his cannon to blast the cannonballs out of the air, as did Luffy with blunt Rankyaku. Sanji was very much new to the technique, so his attacks were fairly ineffectual, barely able to knock them off course. He had not yet managed to get a good cutting edge, and it was driving him mad. It also infuriated Nami, because she hadn't even managed to get a whisper of wind pressure from one of her kicks. Finally, the ships were forced to stop their game of chicken and peel off. The Marines turned their ships slightly so that they were a couple of meters apart, board to board. Zoro grinned viciously. Itoryu. Sanjiroku pound ho. He yelled one final time. This time he utilized the technique at full cutting power, rather than purposely dulling it. The air churned as the attack fired off, before hitting the marine vessel. Immediately, the ship began to split. It did not go all the way through, but it got far enough that water started gushing into the holds. Damn, Zoro cursed as the Marines began to panic as the ship tilted and began to list before the immense forces of the water started to rip it apart. Still not good enough, he groused. He had been hoping to cut the ship in two and hadn't even come close. What Zoro's attack started, the sea finished. The rest of the deck broke apart in jagged splinters of wood. The bow crashed into the waves and the rest of the split ship followed, sinking rapidly. The ocean churned and threw up spray as the helpless Marines dove off the doomed vessel. The Straw Hats continued onto the island, where some hidden cannons started popping out of the concrete encampments. Before they could get a shot off, Luffy had rocketed into the air, no. Bakua. His entire body started glowing golden and began expanding. Several Marines cringed as they stared at the bright attack. And when it exploded and expanded with an even brighter light, a good number of them went momentarily blind. And to the eyes of the Marines who weren't blinded because they weren't staring at the damn ball almost as bright as the sun, what they could only describe as liquid fire started raining from the skies. Every battlement they had on the island was annihilated. The falling spears of plasma cut straight through them in great showers of sparks. When they stopped raining, and the Marines were able to stop trembling under the onslaught, Luffy landed on the island in front of them. And then Nami appeared right next to him and whacked him in the head with her staff. Oh, what was that for Nami? He yelled crankily. She grabbed his lips and stretched them out. You almost hit Mary, you idiot. She yelled furiously. I'm so we nabai. Luffy said as best as he could, looking contrite. She let go with a smile. Just be more careful. One hit from your sun powers and Mary is doomed. She looked mischievous, before pulling him in for a quick kiss. The disembarking Sanji turned into glass and shattered. Stop. Luffy and Nami pulled apart and blinked owlishly at the trembling Marines. Why are you under arrest? They were all trembling like leaves in the wind, their rifles shaking so badly that they wouldn't have hit the broadside of a galleon, much less any of them. Nami smirked and split her staff into 3 pieces. All right, Usopp, time to test this climate act of yours out. She assembled it into a cross pattern, with one section in her hand and the 2 others forming an X at the other end. Hope you boys enjoy. The weather is stormy and windy. She swung the climate act like a bat and the cross detached, flying towards the rows of Marines. It appeared to be spewing some sort of red and blue bubbles. When it hit one of the panicking Marines, the bubbles popped. Cyclone tempo. She yelled as a massive wind started picking up the regiment and flinging them all over the base. Even she blinked owlishly at the result. Holy crap. She had stars in her eyes as the cross came back to her like a boomerang and she caught it. She immediately raced towards Usopp, who was gaping at the sight with snot coming out of his nose, and pushed his head into her chest for a tight hug. That was even better than I hoped for. She squealed in excitement. She pulled away, looking at him sheepishly. You know, I almost expected you to fill the thing with stupid, useless party tricks. Good job. Shishishi. That was awesome, Nami. Luffy's eyes were literally glowing like stars as he stared at the devastation. Usopp coughed uncomfortably, making plans to somehow steal away the instruction manual he had given her. And how the hell had she managed to create that attack? Even he thought it was no more than a party trick. And he made the damn thing. But he couldn't let her know that. Oh, of course. He crossed his arms. Did you really doubt the great Captain Usopp? She caught his stutter and stared at him blankly. You did fill it with party tricks, didn't you? Usopp gagged. You idiot. She face-bombed. Be glad that actually worked and I didn't find out in a real fight. She grabbed his nose with her fingertips and squeezed. But we're going to go over it closely together, got that? Sure. Usopp stammered. Nami could be surprisingly scary for such a petite girl. Nami Swan is so amazing. Sanji was dancing around her with hearts in his eyes. Stupid love cook. Zoro muttered as he passed by them. What was that? Sanji's heart shattered and his normal eyes replaced them. What did you call me, you damn national treasure? A vein bulged on Zoro's forehead. You want to go, love cook? Nami rolled her eyes as the two began arguing and calling each other names. She walked over to Luffy and grabbed his hand. Shall we? They walked over to the big set of metal doors leading into the ugly building and lifted their legs. They both kicked out, and the doors groaned. Nami's side slammed into the wall, while Luffy's side flew off its hinges and crashed into the stairwell a couple meters down the hall. Show off. She pouted, much to his amusement. They walked up the stairs to an ostentatious-looking set of doors that clearly must have led to Nezumi's office. They kicked this one down too, and the 2 men inside squeaked in fear. WH, who are you? Are you all insane? This is a marine base. You can't do THGRK. He couldn't finish his squawking as Nami's staff slammed into his mouth. Blood and teeth flew through the air as a sobbing Nezumi crashed through his desk. Oh hi, Radsan. I'm so sorry, did that hurt? Nami looked especially gorgeous when she was vengeful. She was being all pleasant and happy, even as she brutalized the Marine captain with her staff. But I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you. How can you ask me who I am when we've been through so much together? I've never seen you in my life. Nezumi sobbed through his busted teeth. Oh, but I do know you. Her sweet tone turned dark. Does the name Nojiko ring any bells? She smiled viciously as the man curdled to the color of spoiled milk. Oh, it does, she said happily. You see, I'm Nojiko's sister, she said, watching as he somehow paled even more. And you have something of mine. She grabbed his whiskers and hauled him up, forcing another scream of pain from him. Now I'm sure you're wondering why I'm here destroying your base instead of whimpering under Arlong's rule, she said conversationally, before dropping him. You see, that's because of this big lug here. She hugged Luffy happily and gave his jawline a quick peck. I'm a part of the Straw Hat Pirates now, and my captain here beat Arlong so badly his ancestors probably screamed in terror and swore to never have children. She smirked at the terror in his eyes. Now, this doesn't really have to end badly for you. Just tell me where your safe is. All traces of sweetness left her voice and she looked almost demonic. Nezumi squealed like a pig. There. It's there. Behind that portrait. Nami smirked as they went over and ripped the massive, hideous painting off the wall, revealing an equally giant safe behind it. Luffy made quick work of the locks, and they yanked it open. Nami's eyes turned into giant BH. Oh baby, come to mama. She dove into the massive stacks of gold and practically began swimming in them. He must have been extorting East Blue for years. Much longer than I thought, she said, as Luffy opened a window and yelled at the rest of the crew to come up. There's much more treasure here than just what he stole from me. She was almost going into a cash coma of happiness as she thought of all the gold they now had total. They could set up the entire Konomi Islands to be repaired and allow the citizens to live comfortably for years and still have more than enough to take with them on their journey. They all started working on stripping every single coin from the vault, all while Nezumi watched helplessly. Finally, Nami and Luffy were the last to leave after a third trip, carrying huge sacks of treasure. She dropped her bag just outside the door, just when Nezumi had begun to sigh in relief. Oh, Nezumi, she called, a smirk on her face as she stood outside the room. Why yes, remember how I said this didn't have to end badly for you? Her smirk widened as she started grabbing her climb attack. He stiffened. No. She whirled around and pressed the buttons on 2 of the 3 staff pieces. Cool ball. Dozens of little blue bubbles raced into the air above him. Heat ball. Yet more red bubbles raced through the air, sucking up moisture before rising and combining with the cool balls. A dark cloud started forming inside the building above Nezumi's head, much to his flabbergasted horror. Fender ball. From the final section of her staff, a single, dazzling, electric yellow bubble popped out. It joined with the black cloud and popped, just as Nami slammed the 3 pieces of staff together and combined them. You really shouldn't have hurt my sister, little rat. The weather is stormy. Thunderbolt tempo. Nezumi's screams echoed throughout the island. Any marine that dared to stop pretending to be insensate who looked up at his window would have only seen flashes of light. Techniques. In 10 and 10 no Kizu. In 10 and 10 no Kon. I'll admit, the name for this one was taken from Fairy Tale's Natsu. In 10 and 10 no Bakua. Mayday. Mayday. The excessively loud sound coming from such a tiny snail shocked the Marines tasked with monitoring communications in the Blues. The Marine taking care of East Blue frowned. There's no need to shout. I can hear you loud and clear. He took a look at his files. Is this Captain Nezumi of Unit 16? No, sir. The Marine on the other end said firmly. I actually don't think Captain Nezumi will be doing much speaking for a long time. There was a pause, or moving, come to think of it. The man frowned heavily. Explain yourself. Sir, at approximately 800 this morning, Marine Base 3 in East Blue was attacked by pirates. He couldn't help but lower his jaw in disbelief. A base. He mumbled back numbly. Pirates attacked a base. He shook himself. Explain. In detail, sir. The first attack came from the ship itself. 2 cannonballs were shot from it. Just 2. The first shot destroyed one of the forward ship's masts, which then ripped the sails of a second ship as it fell. The second shot hit the powder keg of ship 4 and destroyed it. The shrapnel from the explosion blew up the powder keg of the ship which was right next to it. In those 2 shots, they destroyed 2 ships, damaged a third, and crippled a fourth. Stunned silence was his response. The ship that only had minor damage sailed out to meet them head-on and was destroyed by a wind blade. Impossible. He whipped his marine hat off of his head as he stood up, revealing a full head of long, dark hair. There's no way there was a swordsman of that caliber in East Blue. Shock completely colored his tone. It's what happened, sir. His attack was not strong enough to cut the ship in half, but it did enough of the job that the ocean finished it. The Marine said somberly. The one we later learned was the captain then leapt from the ship and used some sort of devil fruit power to rain something extremely hot from the sky. It was too hot to just be regular fire, and it melted straight through our encampments and turrets like they weren't even defended. Many of our men on the ground were blinded by the light. Some said it was like a second sun erupted above them. They landed, and an orange-haired lady used some sort of sorcery to summon a small hurricane. The long-haired Marine choked. Could this get any better? How in the world did a crew like that suddenly just appear in East Goddamn Blue of all places? The Marine on the other end of the call continued. They then proceeded into the base itself, where they stripped the base clean of all captured treasure and as much of the armory as they could fit onto their ship. All attempts to get an explosive onto the vessel met with failure, and none could actually see its defenders, or if there was more than one. The girl then summoned a lightning storm inside the base and electrocuted Captain Nezumi so badly that we're having to feed him through a tube. We also have a machine pumping his lungs. I am the highest-ranking officer still active. The Commodore put his head in his hands, an expression of rage on his face. Did you at least get pictures? We did, sir. Not for all of them, but for some of them. We are sending them over now. From what we able to figure out in the aftermath of the attack, the captain is Monkey D. Luffy. The girl was named Nami, and the swordsman is none other than the famous East Blue pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro. They are the Straw Hat Pirates. He ground his teeth, so the bounty hunter joined his marks. His knuckles popped as he clenched his fists. I want any information you can find on those three, on the double. You have 3 days. We will be putting bounties on all 3 heads. Yes, sir. And with a final peru from the snail, the call dropped. A chute of bamboo was filled almost to the brim with water, and it dipped forward and clacked against a bucket, spilling its contents. This was the picturesque scenery of one of the Marine headquarters around the world, and they were currently hosting many mid-level Marines. The men and women were all lined up against both sides of the long hall. Each had a fancy suit, with an immaculate white officer's coat draped over their shoulders with the emblem of justice on their backs. All had hard faces and eyes as they sat in front of prepared meals and cups of sake. So, at the very least, they're now too much for our branches to handle. That's right. The man standing at the side of a board with his arms crossed behind his back was tall. He had tan skin and dark green curly hair. His eyes were obscured by sunglasses, despite being indoors. This was Lieutenant Commander Branu. Even before forming his pirate group, Mugiwara Luffy defeated Captain Axe-Hand Morgan of one of our Marine branches, and his crew has shown no sign of slowing down. Their latest atrocity was the sacking of Marine Base 3 of East Blue. We have since learned from some of our branches in East Blue that they even turned in multiple high-profile bounties before they raised their flag. That was how we came to acquire Kuro of 1,000 Plans, who was thought long dead. New information has shown that both Morgan and Nezumi would have been sent to Impel Down had we known of their activities. Another higher-up said gravely, this attack on Base 3 was likely prompted from the Arlong debacle. We've heard nothing but terrible things out of the people of Kakoashi. And even if we eliminate their testimony as being biased due to being this Nami's hometown, the other islands in that chain have said the same things. We've not heard anything of these Straw Hat Pirates that was actually pirate-like. They've sacked no cities and several islands considered them heroes. Another Marine growled. It is the job of the Marines to police the people in the name of absolute justice. The minute they put up that flag, they are pirates. Branu cut the discussion off. While these are fair points you have brought up, they are irrelevant to today's discussion. The higher-ups have already made their decisions. He slapped a hand to the board. Buggy the Clown, BH, 15 million. Pirate Admiral Don Krieg, BH, 17 million. Arlong the Saw, BH, 20 million. Even the surprise capture of a man thought long dead, Kuro of 1,000 Plans, BH, 16 million. All of them were pirates who had surpassed the big BH, 10 million mark, in a sea where the average is BH, 3 million. Not only did these Straw Hat Pirates take them all out, but Mugiwara himself took out Arlong without taking a single injury. From all accounts, he overpowered Arlong, a fishman, in a contest of strength. He didn't even bother fighting Krieg himself, and allowed this Nami to do so. Roronoa Zoro is a swordsman of such skill that he is capable of projecting wind blade. That is unheard of in East Blue. He slammed his hand hard onto the board, and it flipped over, revealing 3 new posters. It is unprecedented to put out such a high starting bounty, and even more extraordinary for a crew to start off with more than one bounty. But we feel this is absolutely necessary. We must nip the seeds of villainy in the bud early before they have the time to take root. There is no telling how powerful this crew could become if they are allowed the time to grow. You raised the prices again, Nami asked in irritation. The news crew looked pretty apologetic. You're charging too much for them. If you raise it again, I won't buy from you anymore. What's a newspaper or two? Usopp asked carelessly. He was hunched over a small table with various vials and hollowed out lead shot. They add up. Nami shot back. Reading is good for the brain, but when you get one a day, it adds up. You're being ridiculous. The long-nosed teen snorted. We have hundreds of millions down in the holds. Even after we left 50 million for every single town on the Konomi Islands, we still have more money than I thought I would ever see in my life. What's a couple bully to that? And weren't you done collecting money now that your town was saved? What are you, an idiot? She stomped over to him. Now that Arlong is gone, I can collect for me. I have no intention of being penniless. The thought of all the gold sitting beneath her feet almost had her swooning. She would have gone on, but he hurriedly waved her away. Stop squawking. I'm trying to develop a new killer star. I'm using hot chili peppers here. He held up one of the vials and went to carefully pour the red contents into the shot. Anyone who gets this in their eyes will, and that was when Luffy's head crashed into his hand. Oi, what's the big deal, Sanji? Luffy yelled. Behind him, fire alarm bells were ringing as Usopp screamed towards the sky and shot fire out of his eyes. The plume of flame rose above even the ship's mast. I just wanted to try one. This is Nami Swan's orchard. I will protect it with all the love in my heart. Luffy growled as Nami rolled her eyes as she began reading her paper. She was just about to tell Sanji that it was okay for Luffy to try one when she heard the telltale sound of Zoro. Sanji whirled around in panic and ate a kick right to the gut. He went flying forward and crashed into Usopp's workbench, flipping it. Another of the chili bottles had been lying on it, and it went flying. Usopp had now calmed down somewhat, and was laying almost spread eagle on the deck, rubbing at his eyes. He stopped rubbing them and moved his arm, blinking rapidly, and that was when the second dose hit him in the face. The fire alarm bells rang once more for poor Usopp. Shishishi, stupid Sanji. Luffy turned and went to go grab one of the tangerines, when Nami appeared beside him with her paper tucked underneath her arm. Not that one. She slapped his hand down gently. It's not ripe yet. She eyed them for a few seconds, before grabbing a ripe one and handing it to Luffy. Make sure to peel it first. She giggled. Shishishi, thanks Nami. He went to peck her quickly on the cheek, but she inclined her head, so their lips met for a kiss, before going back to her chair. Luffy sat next to her and began to eat the mikan slowly, as he always did when he was trying something new. He made sure to savor the taste before deciding whether or not he liked the item, and in this case, he definitely did. And that was when Nami flipped a page and a large sheet of newsprint fell out and floated to the deck. Luffy picked it up and unfurled it as Nami looked on, and their jaws dropped. What the fuck? Nami screamed in shock, a little bit of glue on her skin. That awoke Zoro and got the attention of Usopp and Sanji, who were rubbing his eyes and sulking respectively. Luffy slapped the paper down on the deck as they crowded around in glee, dead or alive. He yelled in joy and started laughing boisterously. Why are you so happy? Nami screamed at him with razor teeth. She fell back in her chair and moaned, why? She was fine with fighting now, but that didn't mean she wanted bounty hunters all over her. This is serious. Headquarters is probably involved now. We're going to have the strongest hunters sent after us. Why does the shitty Murimo have one? Sanji yelled in outrage, while the green-haired man in question smirked. Straw Hat Monkey D. Luffy, BH, 50 million. The picture was of Luffy smirking confidently. He had a wide grin on his face and parts of his body were glowing golden. They must have taken this picture right before his attack at the base. Demon of the Three Blades Roronoa Zoro, BH, 30 million. They clearly recognized the background as belonging to the Barady. Zoro was inclining on his chair with a confident smirk on his face while holding Wado in his right hand. Storm Empress Nami, BH, 20 million. This one was clearly taken inside the marine base. Nami was grinning madly with her new Climatact in her hand with little crackles of lightning around her body. She groaned out loud. I should have made sure that other marine in Nezumi's office was actually knocked out. He must have taken the picture. She started to sulk as she glared at the photo. This picture makes me look so mean. Nami whined as she looked at it. Can't imagine why, Zoro said blandly. She grabbed her Climatact with a growl. You want to be next, Zoro? She wasn't exactly dispelling his point. Bring it, Storm Empress. Zoro grinned. Nami got such a cool name. Luffy had stars in his eyes as he stared at the orangette. She blushed lightly, before shaking her head. Anyway, now that we're wanted, we really shouldn't be relaxing here in East Blue. Luffy grinned. Yosh. To the Grand Line then. Yeah, Usopp yelled cheerfully, along with Sanji surprisingly. They had their arms around each other's shoulders and a fist each in the air. Well, let's stop by that island first. Zoro pointed off in the distance. I need 2 new swords. Nami started as she realized just what island they were passing. That's right. She relaxed and smiled lightly. If we're seeing that island, then we're definitely close to the Grand Line. That's Loguetown. She turned slightly towards Luffy to watch his reaction. The town of the beginning and the end, where the Pirate King Gold Roger was born and where he died. Luffy had a look on his face, and her smile grew wider. She took a few steps towards him and wrapped her arms around him from behind. Want to go there? He laughed. You need to ask. Wow, this place is huge. Luffy had a look of awe on his face. He'd never seen such a huge city before. His fists were in the air and the look of glee was back. So this is where the age of pirates began. He punched his 2 fists together. I'm going to go find the execution platform. Sanji smiled. I can probably find really good ingredients around here, he said eagerly, and some fine women too. His grin turned a little perverted. I'll go find equipment then, Usopp declared, and some more supplies. Maybe I can find some ways to improve our weapons. He grinned over at Nami, who definitely had loved the Climatact he had created for her. Nami turned to Zoro with an eager grin on her face. I can lend you some money, Zoro. Only 300% interest. But much to her surprise, Luffy shot her down pretty quickly, leaving her stunned. Nami, he said, and she almost stiffened at having his captain voice directed at her. We both know exactly how much money we have down in the holds. Oh boy, did she know. She was also very happy that he spoke softly, not wanting anyone to overhear them. Everyone gets a personal cut of the treasure whenever we get a good haul. The rest of it is to the crew as a whole. Nami pouted outrageously at what her captain was saying, but that's so unfair. No, it isn't, the rest of the crew said with varying expressions. Sanji was trying not to upset her, so he kept a commiserating look on his face. Zoro was outright smirking, though he at least had the decency to look away from her. Luffy continued, think of it this way. Most of the time it won't really matter. I don't see us wanting much other than the necessary stuff most of the time anyway. He chuckled at her mulish expression, but she continued to protest with a crestfallen look on her cute face. Luffy's face didn't change, and she deflated. Fine. She groused, even as he pecked her on the cheek. She turned her head away with a harumph and crossed her arms. Don't be angry, Nami. Luffy wrapped his arms around her from behind and kissed her on the neck. She wavered at his actions. Fine, but I get to decide how much. She was still whining. He rolled his eyes. No, we all come to a fair agreement. For today, just give anyone who wants it 100,000 and we'll all come to an agreement later. And if you don't stop pouting, I'll tickle you. To emphasize his threat, his fingers ghosted on her sides and she already started to spasm. Oh, how he was glad to have found that weakness quickly. He wouldn't dare. Nami panicked and tried to escape, but he had a firm hold on her. Fine, fine. I get it already. Luffy chuckled and tilted her chin towards him, kissing her deeply. Again, Sanji turned to stone and shattered. Damn it. She cursed once they broke off, the Orangette panting slightly. Stop being so cute and sexy. Luffy laughed at her and went to run off. Luffy, the three of us especially need to be careful. She rapidly zoned back in. It's only been a short time since our posters came out, but we still might be recognized. Keep on guard. You too, Zoro. You got it, Zoro said as he grabbed a stack of 100,000 bully from her with a smirk. Luffy gave her a thumbs up and continued on his way. Zoro was walking around town looking from side to side, trying to find a sword shop. With the Grand Line so close, he would have thought the place would have been teeming with them. So far though, he hadn't had any luck. So, you're not with that monster today, huh? A loud voice rang out. Our boss is in jail thanks to you lot. Now you're finished. Another gruff voice sounded off. He turned to the side in interest and blanched. Who the hell are these guys calling monsters? One of them could only barely be described as human. He was hunched over and his head was the size of his torso. Well, I'll be happy to take you on. It appears you haven't learned your lesson. The girl they were yelling at replied calmly, not even slightly rankled. The fat one snorted. What's that? You want to take us on? He grinned and drew his sword, mirrored by the skinny monster. Your funeral. Die, and let that bastard monster know that because of him, our dreams of entering the Grand Line are ruined. The townspeople drew back in shock at the attempted murder, even as Zoro went to draw Wado. He needn't have bothered. The wrapped-up package the girl was holding fell apart, revealing a katana. She moved at a blistering speed and cut down both of the wannabe pirates in a single stroke, ending with her legs spread and the blade held over her head, and then promptly ruined it by tripping and falling flat on her face as the bleeding men crumpled behind her. Her glasses clattered to the dirt in front of her, as the crowd began whooping and hollering for her, both amazed and amused. Zoro smirked lightly. She wasn't half bad. He kneeled down and picked up the glasses by one of the arms. These yours? Sorry, she exclaimed as she got to her knees. Thank you very much. She turned her face up with a slightly embarrassed smile and Zoro sucked in a gasp. Something the matter? And nothing, Zoro stuttered uncharacteristically as he handed back the glasses. He had just barely managed to keep from crushing them. If he had been holding them near the lenses, he probably would have. Try to work on your footing. You overextended that swing. He forced a chuckle and walked past her. Once their backs were to each other, he started to sweat. What in the hell? She looks just like Kuina. She's even a swordswoman. He growled and hunched over slightly. I was weak. Captain Smoker. Terrible news. The room the marine grunt walked into was filled so thickly with smoke that it likely could have been cut with a knife. You could only see a slightly darker outline of a heavily muscular man sitting shirtless by a table. There was also a large stack of something that the man was playing with. There's been a message from HQ. Monkey D. Luffy as well as his crew are likely going to be landing here soon. He himself somehow earned a massive BH 50 million bounty, while two others on his crew earned BH 30 million and BH 20 million each. The smoke had slightly cleared because of the open door. Smoker was now slightly visible. His hair was white, and he had 2 cigars in his mouth. 50 million for the captain and another 50 for 2 crewmates. That's 100 total, he said. That's certainly worthy of congratulations. I'm legitimately impressed. His tone stayed even the entire time he spoke. He's an evil villain who not only took out Arlong, but the lowest bounty on his crew took out Don Creek. On top of that, they assaulted Marine Base 3 and crippled Captain Nezumi. The grunt said, who we now know was practically a pirate himself. He gets no sympathy from me. Smoker dismissed his words gruffly. Now be quiet, and the stack of rocks in front of him crumbled. Damn, your yelling made it fall apart. He stood with a huff, before walking over to the window and opening it. Gradually, the rest of the smoke in the room drifted out. Don't be tense. I have my own pace I do things at. He turned back. So what now? Sir, word is that they'll be landing today. I don't see what you're so flustered for. Has a single pirate ever escaped Loguetown since I took charge here? He walked over to a coat and put it on, revealing it to be a modified marine officer coat with fur at the lapels and cigars strapped all over the left side. No, then shut up and calm down, or you're going to screw up my pace. Then another grunt ran in and saluted. Sir, we just received word that pirates have landed. The other grunt straightened up. It must be the Straw Hats. Smoker grabbed a jit and strapped it to his back before walking forward. Mugiwara no Luffy, huh? I pray he actually puts up a fight. A few seconds after the second grunt ran out with Smoker, the first grunt gasped, Sir, you're not going to look at the poster. But it was too late, and the captain had already vanished. Outside, the two Marine were calmly walking. Captain, please give the units their orders. No need, he said calmly. But, the Marine blinked in shock. But sir, you need to consider how powerful they are. Smoker stopped and turned his head, revealing a deadly look in his eye. You're annoying. The Marine straightened in terror. Don't tell me what to do. Now where's Tashigi? My apologies, sir. He saluted in fear. She said she'd be out this morning, but that she would return for training. That dumb girl. Smoker sighed. Where the hell did she go? A little girl then crashed into his leg and spilled ice cream all over his pants. He stared at the sniffling girl and her terrified father expressionlessly, before leaning down and grabbing her head in what looked like a bear claw, making the father recoil in fear. But then he got to one knee and said softly, Looks like my pants ate your ice cream. Sorry about that. He pulled out 100 billy coin and put it in her hand. Here, buy yourself 5 scoops. He waved goodbye and continued toward the docks. A few minutes later, a pirate with gray hair, an extremely long, thin, curling mustache, and an equally funny beard was yelling at his crew, Take everything that isn't nailed down. These supplies will be vital for conquering the Grand Line. The Pirate King shall be me, Crescent Moon Galley. Boy, who's in charge here? Smoker had shown up while the pirates were raucously cheering. He eyed the man coolly. So you're Monkey D. Luffy, huh? You don't look like much. Smoke started coming out of his sleeves. I'll test you and see if you're worthy of stepping foot in my town. How's this? Nami opened the curtain with a smile. She was wearing a loosely tied corset with a fur skirt and long open coat. Oh my, madam, you look stunning. An effeminate man with his hair shaped like a coat hanger of all things had a cheesy grin on his face. And how about this? Now she wore a wine-colored dress that showed off her tattoo as well as some leg. She had some sort of animal pelt as a scarf. You look so elegant, miss, he said, drooling at the thought of the coming sale. This, elemental, and now this, electrical. This one is good too, right? Elegy. He stood next to a pile of the clothes as Nami got back out of the booth dressed in her regular clothes. You'll be purchasing all of these, correct? He was weak at the knees at the thought of this sale. Nah. And then Nami rained on his parade. I prefer more rugged clothes. They're much more comfortable. Thank you though. She walked out, leaving the furiously sobbing clerk behind. Next, she went to a much less fancy store to actually buy herself some clothes. As the clerk was stuffing her second sack full of clothes, Nami had a feeling of foreboding. Captain Smoker. Yeah, the woman said cheerfully. He's one of the strongest Marines from HQ. Before he showed up, this town used to be a pretty big pirate hangout, since it's so close to the Grand Line. Once he took over, not a single pirate has made it through. Every single one of them have ended up in the slammer. He's an extraordinarily strong monster. They say he has devil fruit powers too. Suddenly, Nami stiffened and cast her gaze outside. Sorry, but can you wrap it up in plastic as well? Plastic? But the weather is great, the shopkeeper exclaimed. Not for much longer, Nami replied, reading the wind caressing her skin. The pressure is starting to drop rapidly. It's definitely going to rain soon. Later on, the teller would be stunned as one of the worst storms in recent memory smashed straight into Loguetown. Excellent work, sir. You captured Mugiwara's crew in no time at all. Smoker snorted. Are your eyes for decoration? He asked derisively. You think this idiot was worth 50 million? He sighed. The world would be ending if this shabby fly was worth that much. Luffy will show up soon enough. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Oi aye. Smoker turned to the source of the noise, and saw a man wearing a straw hat and grinning happily. Perfect timing. Do you know how to get to the execution platform? Smoker blinked as the man turned around and waved his head around with his hand shielding his eyes. I got lost on my way there. This city is so huge. I've never seen you here before, Smoker told him coolly. Yeah, I landed today. This place is so different from Fuchsia, Luffy said sheepishly. Why are you looking for the execution platform? Smoker asked him, unable to tell whether or not he should be suspicious. Isn't it obvious? Luffy grinned, tilting his head slightly to look at him. I want to see where the Pirate King died. Smoker stared at him blankly, though his gaze got a little sharper. A few seconds passed before Luffy frowned and leaned over. Don't know where. Oh, he started walking away. Wait, Smoker sighed, as the smoke coming from his cigar started forming a trail. Just go ahead and follow the smoke. Oh really? Thanks, Smokey. Luffy ran off. Smoker turned to watch him go, a contemplative expression on his face. A few minutes later, Luffy had predictably lost the smoke trail. Man, now I'm lost. Again, Luffy grumbled. Oh well, I'll find it eventually. He picked a random direction and his eyes widened when he saw a bar named Bar Gold Roger. He walked inside and saw that it was a dark, gloomy building. The lighting was off or broken, and the entire place was dilapidated. Inside the bar itself, there was only a single old fart covered in age spots sitting by a human skull. What are you doing here, old guy? You work here, Scram, the crotchety old man said. This ain't a place for runts like you. He grabbed a bottle and started pouring himself a drink. Besides, we're closed for good as of today. Luffy blinked. You guys go under. It didn't go under. The man nearly spat. I'm shutting it down myself. Now get lost, brat. Relax, I was just curious about the name, Luffy said, ignoring the orders and sitting down. Man, I just wanted to go to the execution platform. How do you even get this lost? He looked over. Hey, what's that on the table? Luffy grinned. Is that a skull? How cool. The old man looked at it. The last remains of a man called Killer Giant, a villain who sent hundreds of pirates to the afterlife. He grinned, but Gold Roger sent him to his grave with a single blow. He threw his arms up, with absurd speed too. This guy was famous for the huge blade he used, but their fight ended in the blink of an eye. This wound was what did him in. Luffy grinned even wider. The skull had a deep crack in it, but the guy was a scoundrel. With his last breath, he muttered, Roger, my hat's off to you. May you have honor as the eternal pirate. So cool. Luffy was hanging on to every word. Eric Down, the man known as King. Silver, the world's greatest gunman. The Giant Gowns brothers, all of them tough as nails and feared as demons. But to Gold Roger, they may as well have been infants. Luffy was visibly trembling in excitement. Would you like to hear more? Very few believe this tale nowadays. It's fine. Just tell me. Hold your horses, kid. He swirled his drink around. Gold Roger. In those days ... and oh ... even now I suppose ... he was the only man who never feared the Grand Line. He reminisced nostalgically. Back in those days, the Grand Line was a mysterious sea that no ship ever returned from. They were all just swallowed up. It was a sea of evil that people feared and which few men dared approach. Old man, give me rum. 1 bottle will do. You're sure drinking happily, Roger. The dark-haired man chuckled and brought the whole bottle to his lips and took a deep drink. Some wine spilled out of the sides of his mouth. Of course I am. I'm about to take a little stroll into the Grand Line. The bartender's face fell in horror. You can't imagine how excited I am. Well, you're going there. His jaw was having trouble working. Into that sea of evil. What, is there something wrong with that? Roger grinned madly. Well, not exactly. He shrugged a bit, but no one has ever come back from there. You should just forget about it. Roger started to laugh. Why do you think I'm going? Now give me more rum. A barrel will do. The old man chuckled, and after saying that, he drank the place dry and set sail all too casually the next morning. He scratched his chin. When I heard later that he'd conquered that sea, I was more happy than surprised. Far more excited than I should have been at my age. He swirled his drink again, not even noticing Luffy fidgeting, and 22 years ago today, he died on the execution platform. He sighed. Ever since that day, every idiot thinking themselves strong has tried to do what he did. They all tossed their hats into the pirate ring and marked the beginning of the great pirate era. He slammed his glass down, and now look at all of them. An entire town full of nothing but cowards and scum. Men crazy enough to challenge that evil sea are all but gone now. That's why this bar is closing down for good today. Luffy grinned. I'm leaving for the Grand Line too. His grin widened to the point it was practically splitting his face. Gold Roger's so cool. He's how a pirate should be. That's why I set out. I'm going there, and I will find One Piece. The old man stared in shock as the ghostly image of Roger appeared over the boy. I'm going to be the Pirate King. Those are some mighty big words. And in this bar of all places. The old man laughed. I only said what I meant. Luffy replied easily. Kid, if there are still guys like you in this world, then maybe closing up shop is a little premature. He got up and walked behind the bar. I haven't been in such a good mood in ages. What'll it be? Luffy chuckled lightly. I don't usually drink alcohol. I save it for special occasions. How about this then? He put 2 cold glasses of milk on the counter, a toast to the eternal Pirate King. He slipped off his beanie and raised one of them. Luffy grinned and grabbed his glass before clinking it together with the other glass to the eternal Pirate King. "Oh, it's you." The old man scowled. The glasses were drained, and Luffy was long gone now. "What a warm hello," Smoker piped up in amusement. For a regular patron of yours. Cut the crap. You here to shut us down?" The old man growled. "Don't hold a grudge, old timer. It's not my fault pirates nowadays are all cowards and weaklings." The old man chuckled. "Not all of them." Smoker blinked. "But put that aside, I only come here as a loyal customer." He blinked again as the old man walked away, noticing the dregs of milk in the glasses. "Oh, you had a patron." His grin widened slightly. "How rare." He paused for a second or two. "Anyway, I'd like a glass of rum. There's no alcohol here for you. Don't be so iron-hearted." His smoke wafted away and grabbed a bottle off the shelf. "Today's a special day. Wouldn't you agree?" He popped the cork off and began chugging as the old man stopped messing with whatever he was messing with. He put the bottle down with a smirk. "Ah, that's the stuff." He looked down to one specific seat. "I remember it even now." How Roger looked at the end. It was a humid day, just like today. His hands were shackled as he was led down Main Street towards the town square, where the execution platform awaited. Yet he walked like a triumphant general. Smoker could still recall the feeling of absolute shock he had felt as a child, watching the Pirate King walking to his doom and smiling. Wealth fame power gold. Roger had attained everything the world had to offer, and even though he was walking to his death, he remained a king of great pride, inherited will, the tide of the times, people dreams. As long as people seek the answer of freedom, these things will never cease to be. "Any last words?" the soldier asked. Gold Roger's grin widened as he turned to the man, who involuntarily took a step back. He held up his hands. "Take these off for me. They itch beyond belief." "I cannot do that." "What, you think I'll run away?" He chuckled. "You sure know how to make a guy feel lonely." He walked forwards and turned, before sitting cross-legged. "Well, let's get this over with then." The guards crossed their long blades close to him. "Hey, Pirate King." Roger lifted his head slightly. "What did you do with all your treasure? Is it in the Grand Line? You got it, didn't you? That great treasure." He ignored the yells from the guards to shut up. Roger started chuckling lowly, before it turned into a great belly laugh. "My treasure. You can have it if you want it. Don't speak without permission." The soldiers yelled, starting to panic. "Find it. I left everything this world has to offer there. Everything is in one piece." And then the panicking guards pierced him with their blades, and there was silence. Everyone watched in shock, before a great, resounding cheer rang through the plaza. And the guards who had killed the man couldn't stop staring in shock, as even in death, the great king smiled. "That's how it all began." Smoker continued staring at that one seat, the one that had sat Roger so many times. "Hey, there's a few new wanted posters. Put them up somewhere visible." A Marine had walked in, and then a shiver went down his spine as he dropped the 3 sheets of paper. "Ah, Captain Smoker, I apologize for my rudeness." "Huh." Smoker walked over and picked up one of the posters. He stared at it, his voice a little gruffer. "That straw hat." He was Monkey D. Luffy. He ran out of the store, dropping the paper as he went for the old man to stare at in glee. Zoro was now firmly in the teeth-grinding portion of his day. Every single store he'd tried so far all had stupidly expensive swords, none of which he could even dream of affording at this point, even with Luffy claiming they'd all get a cut of the loot. He wasn't sure he would have time to find the others and convince Nami to part with the 7 million he would need just for one of the swords he saw. He walked into yet another store, and the owner greeted him with the standard salesman's pitch and smile. "Welcome, welcome. Old swords, newer swords, brand new swords. We have them all, and over 200 years of sterling reputation. Please come in and look around." Zoro sighed. "I have 100,000 billy. Sell me 2 swords. The owners, a balding man named Ipin Matsu. Excitement crashed and burned faster than a ship Luffy decided he didn't like. 100,000. 50,000 will get you a blunt blade." He scowled. "This guy's a bum. What an amateur." He scowled more. "The 50,000 billy blades are over there." He pointed carelessly. Zoro turned just slightly as he explained that he was low on cash at the moment. And Matsu's eye caught onto the blade at this waist. "No way. That can't be. Play it cool." "Sir, may I see that sword?" he asked, just barely able to keep his voice even. Zoro eyed him with a much sharper gaze. "Why are you shaking?" He reluctantly handed Watto over and watched with a sweat drop as the man's composure broke as he drew it. "This is it." He screamed in his head. "Keep cool. This is your big chance. Don't mess this up." This sucker walked in with a legendary sword. "Just talk calmly." He coughed. "This sword's no good." Zoro grabbed him by his collar with a growl. "Sorry, I lied." He coughed again. "Look, friend, maybe we can work around your lack of funds. This sword here is decent. It's nothing special, but it might be worth something," he said. "I'll give you 200,000 billy for it, and then you'll be able to purchase 3 100,000 billy swords." Zoro eyed him darkly. How about 500,000 then?" Do you think I'm an idiot? Zoro glared at the man, who suddenly realized he might have tried to cheat the wrong person. He started to tremble under Zoro's gaze. Zoro went to grab the blade back, but a body crashed into the counter and practically screamed, "No way. Could it be?" Zoro almost cringed. Hyuna's lookalike was next to him again. She lifted her glasses in excitement to stare at the magnificent blade. "This is Wado Ikemanji." Zoro finished the statement, finally taking his precious sword back. He knew. Matsu thought in panic. "Where did you find this, mister?" "This is one of the Owazamano grade swords. It's worth 10 million. Zoro tucked it back into his sash. "It belonged to my dearly departed friend." He glared at Matsu, whose face had turned pasty white. The girl had also paled, bowing her head in condolence. "Now where are your 50,000 Billy swords? I still need 2 more. 3 swords? You must really like them." The girl stated needlessly with a sheepish smile, "Just like that bounty hunter, Zoro. Though, where are my manners? I met you earlier and didn't introduce myself then either. My name is Tashigi." She bowed to him. "Runo is Zoro, huh?" Zoro smirked lightly. "I hear that name often." Tashigi nodded as she collected her own sword, Shiger, from Matsu. She walked over to Zoro, who was unsheathing a katana. "He's a famous bounty hunter." She sighed. "It makes me angry to think of a sword being used to make money. It's evil. Those blades must be crying." Zoro eyed her from the corner of his eye. "And what makes you so sure he was a bounty hunter because of greed?" Tashigi blinked. Well," Zoro snorted. "What if it was just a couple dumbass pirates who attacked him? Was he supposed to just let those bounties go to waste?" He shrugged. That was as close as he could get to the truth without coming out and saying he was Zoro. Matsu had finally calmed down and grinned. "I like bad guys. This shop used to be full of guys looking to sail the Grand Line." He growled, which distracted Tashigi. Then that monster took over and look what happened. No more customers. Captain Smoker is not a monster. She whirled around and yelled at him. He just ate a devil fruit. Zoro listened intently as he went through swords. "In any case, I'll use this Shiger to hone my skills. Then I'm going to collect all of the Mato that have fallen into evil hands. I'll collect all of the Seijo Owazamano, and Ryo Owazamano swords in evil hands even if it kills me." Zoro quirked a grin, unseen to the other two. She certainly had spunk. "This one too then." He had the handle clenched tightly. She gasped and whirled around, waving her hands rapidly. "It's not that I want the swords for myself. I just don't want evil men to have them." Zoro chuckled before his hands closed around a handle and he stopped cold. "Oh, that sword. I've seen it in my book." She opened it and rapidly flipped to a certain entry. "It's Sandai Kaitsu. You have to take this one." She turned to Matsu. "Why is this sword inside this barrel? This one is worth at least 1 million. It's a Ryo Owazamano." "No, I can't sell that sword." Matsu roared, a cold sweat dripping down his back. "What? Why not?" Tashigi asked after rearing back. "That sword. It's..." Matsu started, but Zoro interrupted him. "It's cursed," he said, not giving away how he was feeling, one way or the other. "You've heard of it?" Matsu asked him in surprise. "No, I can tell." Matsu shook his head rapidly. "Either way, the Kaitsu trio are all excellent blades, but all 3 are cursed. Famous swordsmen all over have lost their lives because they wielded those blades. These days, no sane swordsman would use one, and if they did they wouldn't be around for too much longer." He sighed and looked down. "I'd like to get rid of it myself, but I'm afraid I'll be cursed for it." Tashigi bowed deeply to Zoro. "I apologize. I was pushing so hard for you to get that one. I didn't know it was so dangerous. I could have killed you." Zoro was eyeing the sword with a faint grin. It was a katana with a very faint pattern on it that looked vaguely flame-like. "This sword. I like it." He broke into a full grin. "I'll take it." "What?" They both gasped. "Are you a fool? I can't sell you that blade. If you died it would be like I killed you myself." His wife showed up and punched him in the head. "You're the fool. Just get rid of the thing." Zoro grinned as wide as Luffy did sometimes. "How about this then? My luck against this blade's curse. Let's find out which is stronger." He threw it into the air and it spun like a buzzsaw. He held out his arm and closed his eyes. "If I lose, then I wasn't meant to go any farther." Everyone in eyesight panicked. Tashigi covered her mouth and looked on with wide eyes, while Matsu screamed in panic, holding his head. "Are you a fool? You'll lose your arm." The blade hit its apex and started falling. It danced around Zoro's arm and embedded itself into the floorboards to the hilt. Zoro grinned madly again. "I'll take it." Tashigi felt her legs give out underneath her and she slowly slid to her knees and watched in pure awe as Zoro effortlessly pulled the blade out of the floorboards and sheathed it. Wow, she couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. Wow. Zoro turned to her, still lightly smirking. "Hey. How about you pick out another one for me?" Tashigi shook herself. Sure. "No," Matsu said and ran off. Before coming back, he set a katana on a ceremonial stand and sank to his knees behind it. He bowed to Zoro. "Our shop is nothing fancy. This is the best blade we have. It is Yubashiri, a Ryo Owazamano. It has a black lacquered sheath and I will guarantee its sharpness. Please take it and kitesu as my apology for trying to trick you. He looked up and stared firmly into Zoro's eyes. It's been a long time since I've met eye to eye with a real swordsman. I pray for your good fortune. After Zoro left, Tashigi had a weak, sheepish grin on her face. I just can't get up. Luffy stood before the execution platform, having finally found the main plaza, so that's where the greatest pirate in history died. He grinned, the place where it all began. He started stepping forward, intending to make the climb without using Jeppo when a voice rang up behind him. Luffy turned and waved. Oh hey, it's you again. Hiya. Smoker eyed him without changing expressions. So, you're the man with the highest bounty in East Blue? Huh. Luffy blinked. Yeah, I'm Luffy. You need something smoky. A tiny tick mark popped up on Smoker's head. The name is Smoker. I'm a Navy captain, and I'm in charge of this town. You're under arrest. Luffy eyed him seriously. Nah. He grinned and put his hands behind his head. Don't feel like it. He smirked. I'm about to head for the Grand Line, so I can become the Pirate King. Smoker stiffened. Pirate King. He glared at the boy in front of him. Then I'm afraid you'll have to get past me. He cracked his knuckles. You don't get to the Grand Line unless you can beat me. Don't feel like it. Luffy whined. This is a nice town. I don't feel like messing it up. Go away, Smokey. Smoker blinked. What in the world? I'm afraid you don't have a choice. Luffy stared at him, before sighing and closing his eyes. Luffy vanished, and before Smoker could do a damn thing, a sandal crashed into his jaw with the force of a dozen cannonballs. He lifted off his feet and rocketed through the air. Gah! His eyes were unfocused as he crashed down on the other side of town and dug a trench through the street he landed on before crashing into a building. At that point, he finally managed to focus enough to activate his devil fruit and dispersed harmlessly into smoke rather than crashing through it. When he reformed, he was on one knee and panting hard as his vision swam. He got to his feet and stumbled momentarily before his vision finally cleared up after he shook his head. Damn, he rubbed his aching jaw. It's been years since I've been caught off guard. I underestimated the brat. He then looked around and deadpanned. And he knocked me across town. Damn it, he sighed. Idiot. I got cocky. He pulled out a baby den mushy. All units converge on the main plaza. I repeat, all units converge on the main plaza. And with that, he took off running. Back at the plaza, the townsfolk were watching in a mixture of shock and horror as Luffy lowered his foot from where Smoker's face had been. Tashishi. He laughed and turned back to the platform. He began climbing, and in no time at all, he was staring at the entire town from the top of the platform. He began laughing as he sat down. What a view. Hey you, get down from there. A policeman who had just shown up and not seen him kick Smoker across town roared through a megaphone. Several people backed away from him rapidly, clearing the area. Why? Luffy asked him seriously. That execution platform is under world government jurisdiction. Get down from there right now, RGHHRR. A heavy, spiked iron mace smashed right into the side of his face and sent him flying. It was held by a rather beautiful woman with long black hair and a very curvy body. She was wearing a coat with stylized hearts all over it and a cowgirl hat. Don't be so mean, Mr. Policeman. She smiled brightly up at Luffy. I've found you at last, Luffy. It's been a long time. Luffy blinked owlishly at the woman. Who are you? He tilted his head in confusion. Surely you haven't forgotten this face, she exclaimed. Luffy stared hard. Sorry, don't know you, lady. She pouted outrageously. And the watching crowd had hearts come out of their eyes. Well, even if you don't remember me, I'll never forget you. You were the first man to ever hit my lovely face. Luffy's eyes widened in shock. When the hell had he even met her, much less hit her? Yeah, and I really felt it. She put her hand to her cheek, and it was so hard. She grinned and spread her arms out. Now tell me ... who's the most beautiful woman on the entire sea? The entire massive crowd yelled. You are. That's right. She yelled joyously. There's not a man alive who wouldn't grovel at my feet, and I do love strong men. She grinned up at Luffy. So I'm going to make you mine, Luffy. Luffy chuckled lightly. You certainly look different, Alvida. He finally realized who this woman was. What devil fruit did you eat? Different? Alvida asked cluelessly. Well, I suppose my freckles are gone. Luffy's sweat dropped. I don't think that's it. He waved his hand back and forth. She grinned. But I'm surprised that you managed to tell I ate a fruit. I don't look that different, do I? But before Luffy could confirm that yes, she did look very much different, an explosion rang through the square. A massive chunk of one of the fountains hurtled right for Alvida as the crowd panicked. Oh no, Lady Alvida is doomed. The infatuated folk screamed in fear. But she was just standing there calmly, a light smile gracing her lips. The chunk of carved stone hit her ... and then slid right by her harmlessly and continued on to destroy a part of the town. Hey, watch it. She pouted. You don't have to worry. A new voice rang out. And this one Luffy recognized immediately. He bit back an irritated groan. Her silky smooth skin can never be marred, so you don't need to worry. Alvida threw her coat off while winking. revealing a bikini top and a rich purple captain's coat. That's right. I partook of the sub no my. My skin can no longer be marred by any attack. She grinned and crossed her arms. But if you're going to become my man, there's someone you have to beat first. We teamed up just to find you. Buggy threw his cloak off and stood there in all his glory. Nothing but thoughts of your death have filled my mind since you defeated me, Mugiwara. Those thoughts gave me the strength to return to my crew. It was an epic adventure, full of laughter, tears, and friendship and ... Why am I saying all of this to you? How should I know, buffoon? Luffy had his cheek resting in his palm, while that elbow rested on his knee. He picked his nose with his other hand. He was the very picture of boredom. It's Buggy. Buggy roared over Alvida's rather loud giggling. You won't be so insolent after I'm through with you. The rest of his crew surrounded them and pointed guns at the civilians. Freeze, landlubbers. You're about to see how ruthless I can be. He grinned madly as he saw Kakoashi in place on the tall building behind the scaffolding. This plan had been weeks in the making and had involved much risk and personal debasement. They had been forced to get rid of any identifying features such as his face paint and their clothes while they waited for Luffy to inevitably arrive. Buggy himself had to sneak to various places trying to find a specific item they needed for this to work. With Luffy having revealed himself as a devil fruit user like himself and a dangerous one at that, Buggy had searched high and low for a set of stocks lined with Kairoski. They would nullify the bastard's powers, which would especially be necessary if his worst fears came to pass and the brat ended up being a Loja. Buggy had managed to steal them from one of the Marines' bases on the island a mere couple days ago. Covering his trail had been absolute hell. Now it was all up to Kakoashi. The man in question jumped off the roof above the platform, aiming the stocks at Luffy's neck. They had been modified with blades, so they would pierce whatever ground Luffy was on and pin him to it, trapping him with no leverage to make an escape. Then they could execute the man to their leisure. Buggy eyed the descent in anticipation, practically shivering at the thought of having the man who humiliated him at his mercy. Luffy just looked bored. While Buggy and Alvida kept their cool, the rest of their crewmates and peons were clearly following something falling with their eyes. He casually threw himself forward with his hands, uncrossing his legs and letting them hang off the platform rather than sitting directly in the center. A thunk behind him and Buggy's horrified scream had him smirking. He turned his torso and reached behind him to grab his panicking attacker by the face, muffling the man's gasp. He hauled him up and smashed him once onto the platform head first, before holding him dangling over the side of the platform. That was dangerous. Luffy admonished in a whiny tone. You could have hurt someone. Kaba-chan. Buggy yelled in horror as Alvida looked on, awestruck. Kakoashi's arms shook as feebly trying to get Luffy to let go of his face, before Luffy squeezed hard. The man went slack, and he threw Kakoashi away from the scaffolding. Buggy caught his first mate and stared at his nemesis, rivulets of sweat running down his face. Why do I have to carry the heavy end? Usopp was feeling pretty grouchy and was yelling at Sanji. There he was, having a good time buying supplies and equipment and materials to experiment with when the blonde chef had found him. He'd been forced to abandon his venture to help carry the lazy-ass chef's massive elephant troop bluefin tuna. After all those push-ups with that stupid Marimo on your back, you shouldn't be complaining. Sanji smirked as he smoked. Anyway, I saw a weird guy riding a lion in town. A few meters away, Zoro was looking around wondering why the crowds had thinned so much this early in the day. A few meters from him, Nami was carrying her massive bag of clothes. Man, the pressure has dropped way too low. How did it build up this quickly? She sighed to herself. Maybe it was a devil fruit. She stopped momentarily. And that's too terrifying a thought to continue on. We better hurry back to the ship. Otherwise we might not be able to set sail today. Now where the hell are they? The four of them then met with little expressions of surprise. Oh, there you all are. Where's Luffy? He said he wanted to see the execution platform. Right. That's here, isn't it? Zoro asked. Nami noticed the two new blades he had found. Oh, there he is, Usopp said dully as he pointed. And he's surrounded by enemy pirates. Nami face-palmed. Why is he on the platform? That idiot. She then put on her best smile. Oh, Sanji-kun. Sanji gasped and fell to one knee before her. Yes, Nami sweat. Amusingly, Usopp didn't even budge since he had been carrying most of the weight anyway. His face did turn red in anger though. She dropped her bag into his arms. Get that to the ship safely for me. You and Usopp head back now. We need the ship ready to sail. Anything for you, my beautiful flower. The love-struck man replied and took off, leaving Usopp to carry the huge fish by himself. Damn it, Sanji. Get back here and carry your own damn fish. Usopp took off behind him with a more uneven gait. Nami sighed and took her staff out, before vanishing in a Soru. Near the platform, Buggy was grinding his teeth looking at the look of pain on his commander's face. Grrrr ... all pirates, shoot Mugiwara. They all, bar Alvida who was still looking at Luffy in admiration, whipped out their pistols and aimed at the bored boy on the execution platform. Buggy figured Luffy had to be either a Lojo or a Paramecia. and he could only hope he was guessing right. Fire. Buggy sprayed the air in front of him with angry spittle as he made to pull the trigger on his gun. Cyclone tempo. A woman's voice rang out, and all of a sudden, all but Buggy, Kakoashi, and Alvida were picked up by a massive wind and hurled away. The wind didn't affect Alvida in the slightest, merely whipping around her smooth body. Buggy managed to stab the ground to keep from being blown away while holding on to Kakoashi. The miniature cyclone ended, revealing 2 sticks in the cross formation flying in the air, which were caught by a leaping orange-haired girl who landed in front of them, smiling cheekily. "I'll thank you not to touch my captain." She stuck her tongue out at them cheerfully. Kakoashi had awoken as he was whipped about in his captain's grip, and he growled, Luffy's palm print still an angry red on his face, while unsheathing his sword. He yelled at the Orangeette, remembering her from the Buggy Crew's humiliation all those weeks back. "You damn traitorous bitch, Nami. I'll show you not to hurt my crew." He leapt into the air, ready to scissor slice her pretty head off. "Sanjiroku pound ho," a lazy voice called out. And a dull air blade, more of an actual cannon really when Zoro used the blunt version, smashed straight into Kakoashi and sent him flying. "You're still more of a clown than a swordsman," Zoro commented lazily as he materialized by Nami. "Get some skill before you show your face, moron." In one of the buildings, the Marines had gathered. Smoker had finally gotten back to the plaza, and Tashigi had been found by one of the grunts. They all were near a window overlooking the plaza. "Mugiwara is stronger than I thought," he said angrily. They watched as the tornado appeared, and he almost bit through his cigar. "So, it's true. I see why more than the captain got a bounty now. I should have taken him seriously from the start." Tashigi was rubbing her eyes, having lifted her glasses up. She blinked owlishly. Did that really just happen? A Marine grunt saluted behind them. "Sir, it does not appear to be caused by a devil fruit." Smoker growled. "Of course it wasn't. Did you not see the 2 sticks she used?" The grunt blinked. "If possible, try to get that weapon from her. The higher-ups might be interested in learning from it." The grunt felt a shiver go up his spine. "So we're still going after them, Captain Smoker. When will we attack?" Tashigi spoke up. "Initially we were going to let them take each other out and just clean up. But Luffy's crew seemed to be on a whole other level. Just the 3 of them are more than a match for that entire massive group. We're going to have to fight." "Sir, Roronoa Zoro has been spotted as well," another grunt with binoculars called. Tashigi gasped and snatched them away. She grit her teeth. "Him? They're all monsters." A much newer grunt was trembling in fear as he eyed the plaza. "Don't worry," Smoker grunted. "We've never let a single crew escape, and we're not about to start today. Get ready for battle." "Kaba-chan." Buggy found himself yelling again as he faced the 3 straw hats. Nami and Zoro were both in front of the platform while Luffy was grinning happily up top. "Oi, Luffy, are you done playing around yet?" Nami called. "We have to get out of here." Why?" Luffy called down in surprise. "A massive storm is approaching. If we don't leave soon we might be stranded here for a couple days," she called back, not taking her eyes off of the 2 remaining pirates. Indeed, the clouds were very dark now and positively roiling overhead. The way Alvida was staring at Luffy dreamily made her hackles rise. Unlike Luffy, who hadn't recognized her at all at first, Nami had recognized her clothing style and mace. Now knowing that devil fruits existed, it wasn't too much of a skip in her mind to connect the dots. She certainly wasn't about to have an evil bitch like Alvida stare at her Luffy like that. Luffy pouted. He had wanted to explore a bit more before setting out. Oh well. He stood and shot both fists into the air beside his head. He grinned madly. "I'm going to be the Pirate King," he roared out. Smiles broke out on their faces as the plaza froze and stared at him in shock. The utter audacity of shouting those words at the top of one's lungs on the very platform where the previous king had met his end brought awe into many hearts that day. It felt very much like watching a new chapter unfold, right from the place the old one had ended. And then lightning struck the platform. Luffy. Nami screamed in shock as the entire execution platform burst into flames. The clouds had slowly been roiling and darkening overhead, far quicker than they rightly should have, and now the heavens opened up in a torrential downpour. Nami stared at the burning platform in disbelief, tears indistinguishable from the now pounding raindrops starting to pour from her eyes as she watched the large structure collapse. Luffy's hat floated down and landed at her feet, and then the rubble exploded. A giant beam of plasma erupted upwards and punched a hole straight through the clouds. After it petered off, smoke was rising from the cylindrical hole and Luffy jumped out, looking a little mad. "Stupid lightning," he mumbled as he bent over and picked up his hat. He hadn't even been able to put it on his head yet when Nami flung herself into his arms. A random civilian turned to another in flabbergasted awe. "Hey, do you believe in God? How the hell did he survive that?" The man next to him was green-haired with tattoos and sharp teeth, and he was visibly trembling in excitement. The more uniformed civilian was summarily ignored. "Come on, let's set sail," Luffy roared, and the 3 of them took off running. leaving a catatonic Buggy staring at the remains of the rubble in shock. Alvida shook herself and yelled, "Hey, wait for me. I want to join you guys." She was also summarily ignored. "Intercept them," Smoker roared. "Don't let them get away. A quarter of you, go for Buggy and Alvida." "Sir, they're headed west where the 1st Division is, but the downpour has gotten all of the gunpowder wet. Most of them had to retreat back to base to get more." Smoker ground his teeth. "That leaves the port unprotected. Damn it." He looked skyward, "and they'll have a tailwind on top of it. It's as if some higher power is willing their escape." He roared to the sky, "White launcher." His lower body turned into smoke and he rocketed away, yelling out, "As the captain of this division, I'll stake my reputation as the White Hunter. I will not let that man leave this island." As they were running, a giant plume of smoke enveloped the plaza. Smoker appeared with his lower body turned into smoke, and he used it to propel himself at great speeds. His Kairoski jit was grasped in a tight fist, and he appeared in a blink in front of Luffy. Luffy's eyes widened and his hand flashed to his back, yanking out his pipe. The two weapons hit each other so hard that a shockwave emanated out and pushed back the rain for a second. "You again." Luffy whined, "Out of the way. We're heading to the Grand Line." The bubble their shockwave created disappeared and the rain pelted them again. Smoker growled, "I've never once let a single pirate slip through this island, and I'm not about to start now." Luffy growled and he knocked Smoker's arm and jit back with his greater strength. "Maybe if you weren't so worried about your perfect attendance record, Nami wouldn't have had to suffer for so many years under that stupid shark. Were you getting a share of that damn rat's bribes?" All thoughts of immediate escape had fled from Luffy's head. Now he wanted to pound Smoker's face in for a bit. Smoker's eyes narrowed angrily as Luffy's pipe smashed through his face, dispersing his head harmlessly into smoke. "TCH, you're a Loja, huh?" "That's right," Smoker's disembodied head said before he reformed. "And this time, you're not catching me off guard." White out. An enormous cloud of smoke started billowing from his arms and surrounding the 3 straw hats. Nami growled, "We don't have time for this." Cyclone tempo. She threw E2 staff pieces once more, and the massive wind she kicked up blew the smoke as well as Smoker backwards. "Ready, fire." The rest of the Marines that had surrounded them aimed specifically for her, since they saw that her weird weapon was capable of blowing their captain back. Zoro growled and flashed in front of Nami, who had been prepared to simply weave around the projectiles with Kami. All 3 of his swords were out and the plaza was filled with the sounds of his blades slicing every single bullet fired clean in half and canceling their momentum. The Marines backed up in terror at the demonic look in his eyes. "You did not just shoot at our navigator." It was definitely not a question. One Marine even fainted. "Roronoa Zoro," a female voice screamed. Zoro's eye twitched as the Marines released exultations of relief. He turned to her and grinned when he saw her sheathed sword. "You were making fun of me." She screamed at him, "I'm going to take Wado Ikemanji away from you." Zoro laughed darkly. "I'd like to see you try." He flashed the entire 20-meter distance between them in less time than it took her to blink, and his new sword Yubashiri crashed down towards her head. She let out a little squeak of shock and blocked it, though the blow forced her to one knee. With a grunt of exertion, she pushed back and Zoro backstepped a couple times. She growled, "After all that talk about how you weren't a greedy man, you're revealed as a pirate. You tricked me. You never said you were Roronoa Zoro." Zoro raised an eyebrow. "And when exactly did I do that?" He sounded amused. "I told you I heard the name often, didn't I?" He sheathed 2 of his blades and took Wado from his mouth. "A scoundrel like you doesn't deserve a Mato like Wado Ikemanji." She hissed and swung sideways at him. Zoro lifted his blade and deflected it easily. "Scoundrel." He snorted. "There you go with your assumptions again." His blade flashed and Tashigi gasped as the right sleeve of her jean jacket fell apart. She ground her teeth as she realized what that meant. That could have been her arm just as easily. He was playing with her. That was the size of the gap between them. Zoro stepped back and started sheathing his blade. Her eyes widened. "I thought the same as you once, but the past few months have changed that. Just because I'm a pirate now doesn't make me a bad guy." He grinned fiercely. "My dream is on the Grand Line. I don't give a damn what other people think of me." Tashiga's eyes widened even further when he gave her a short bow and walked away. Her surprise lasted a couple steps before she snarled and bellowed at his back. "Why won't you take me seriously? Is it because I'm a woman?" Zoro's shoulders stiffened and he turned back, glaring at her. "I may not be as strong as a man, but to go easy on me is an insult. I can't pick up this sword to play games. Like I care about that." He roared back, looking much like a fishman with his sharp shark teeth. She jerked back at the volume. "That damn face. You look just like her." She gasped as he clutched onto Wado. He couldn't possibly mean she looked like the previous owner, could he? "And you even say the same shit she used to. Stop being a damn copycat." "How rude." Tashigi screamed in his face. "They're dual forgotten. I live for my own goals. I didn't know your friend or what she was like, but if anything, she was copying me." Zoro growled and stalked forward like a man possessed. She used to do the same shit you just pulled. She beat me every time, and yet she bemoaned how I'd surpass her just because I was a man. Stop insulting my skill. Their foreheads were now smashed together, and lightning was sparking between them. Suddenly he backed off, almost making her trip. If you want to prove women can be just as good as men, then you better get to the top. She blinked in shock. I will be the world's greatest swordsman. He yelled at her. So you better pour your damn soul into that blade if you want to take this one. She couldn't stop staring at him, mouth slightly open. Not a single person had ever actually acknowledged her dream. No one had ever believed she would have a chance at it. Every single person she ever fought had mocked her right up until she won. Even her fellows always seemed like they were merely humoring her. She shook herself. You're just going to walk away. Zoro rolled his eyes. Do you want me to kill you? He let out a sigh. I'm not a murderer, damn it. Go away. Tashiga's reply was cut off by Nami. Damn it, Zoro. We have to go. Stop playing with your girlfriend and get over here. Both swordsmen stiffened and stared at her. Tashiga's jaw dropped as she eyed Nami standing above the smoking forms of her men, a small amount of lightning still crackling around them. What did you say, you damn witch? Zoro eyed his crewmate with one eye twitching. Before Nami could reply, a loud bang from above drew their attention to the fight between the two Loja. As Zoro was defending Nami, Luffy had surged forward and caught up to the reformed smoker. His pipe flashed once more, and the resulting shockwave from the two weapons connecting with one another cracked the stone underneath their feet. Smoker grit his teeth as it immediately became clear that Luffy's physical strength was on a whole other level compared to his own. He was quite sure that if his jit wasn't made of sea stone, it would have shattered after the first hit, much less the second. His arm jerked back and Luffy's body swung in a crescent arc, his left heel screaming through the air and connecting with Smoker's face. His foot blew the smoke apart, and Smoker's disembodied voice rang through the howling wind. White blow. His jit was thrust forward with smoke from his arms propelling it at much greater speeds than would otherwise have been possible. Kami-e. Luffy danced around the jit, which penetrated into the cobblestone and cratered it. Luffy tumbled through the air and landed on his feet a couple feet away. Rankyaku. Luffy's leg flashed upward and a crescent-shaped blade of wind flew towards Smoker. The kick cleaved Smoker in two and then split the building behind him cleanly in half. Damn it, you stupid Smoke. Stay in one piece. Smoker chuckled gruffly. Never fought a Loja, have you? I am a Loja. Smoker's eyes bugged out as Luffy blurted that piece of info out. I just don't rely on it like you, stupid. Smoker growled as Luffy laughed. Shishishi. I don't know if I pity or envy you, Smokey. Your fruit isn't destructive, so you can use it all you want. But that means that it's all you use. He grinned as Smoker started gritting his teeth. I'm strong even without my fruit. You may have beat every pirate you've met so far, but you're not winning here. Stop underestimating me. Smoker roared furiously as he yanked his jit out of the ground. I've trained my body to the breaking point. You won't be laughing so hard when you're in the slammer. He turned his lower half into smoke and propelled himself upwards, intending on creating a massive dome of smoke so that there would be no way for any pirates to escape him. But as he was rocketing up, Luffy simply flashed into existence above him with his leg raised high for an axe kick. You're too slow. Luffy roared gleefully and sent his leg crashing down. Smoker tried to get his jit into its path, but Luffy's heel caught him in the knuckles. This time, Smoker managed to turn to smoke quick enough, but that meant his jit was knocked clean out of his hand and far away from the battlefield. Chishishishi. Luffy laughed at the look of rage on Smoker's face. Stop laughing, Straw Hat. Smoker growled. Even if I don't have my jit, you won't escape. You still can't hit me. He roared. So I'll keep you here until the weather gets too bad for you to sail in. White out. Another massive plume of smoke shot from Smoker, intending on engulfing Luffy. This time, the smoke kept pouring out without end. Luffy was about to try to cut it with a Rankyaku, when one of Zoro's pound cannon attacks blew it back slightly. He looked down. Luffy, we have to go. Nami screamed at him. The weather's just going to get worse. Luffy growled at the words, and his right arm turned golden and began shining. In 10 and 10 no Teho. Another sun lit the dark sky up. A titanic beam of plasma raced at the smoke cloud and barreled right through it. The smoke completely vaporized as the beam passed through it. Smoker just barely managed to make a panic dodge as he saw the smoke not slowing the beam at all, and it saved his life. The slightest sliver of the beam grazed his arm, and he shrieked in agony as his jacket sleeve disintegrated. His skin turned lobster red and started bubbling. Now, Smoker had been hurt before. After all, he didn't always have his devil fruit, and kids could be pretty damn mean. But he had never experienced the sheer agony that accompanied such a savage burn. He clutched his arm and howled as he fell from the sky. His last conscious thoughts before crashing through a building were, he burned me. But how? Even regular fire can't hurt. Luffy, on the other hand, was staring at his smoking fist dumbly. That ... was bigger than usual. He blinked in shock. He then noticed Smoker falling and clutching his burned arm, and he almost felt a little bad. Still, he slapped a grin on his face as he raced to his crewmates. Sorry, Smokey, looks like my fruit wins. Tashigi and Zoro had separated, and she was looking at Luffy as if she had seen a ghost. You might want to go grab him. That burn looked bad, Luffy said casually. Tashigi seemed to struggle with herself for a moment and threw Zoro one last look before running past them. Luffy, Nami, and Zoro all grinned at each other and took off towards the coast. They had gotten about half a kilometer when the three froze. In front of them was a man in a black coat. Only his face could be seen. He had a massive grin on his face and tribal tattoos down the left side of his face. Quite a fight, the man said, his grin not wavering. Luffy stared at him expressionlessly. Thanks. A grin rose on his face as he stared at the man. Here to see me off? How could I not? He looked to the sky. The Pirate King. How fitting. The world is awaiting our answer. Shishishi. Luffy started running past him with a bright grin on his face, followed by Nami and Zoro, who stared at the man cautiously. He didn't turn around. Go ahead, they heard behind them. They almost didn't hear it as the wind began picking up. It was howling much louder now. Follow your chosen path to the end. Who was that, Luffy? Nami yelled to be heard over the howling. Shishishi. Luffy only laughed, not responding to his navigator's question, drawing quite a bit of confusion from her. They burst onto the pier and blinked as they saw a lion and a man with a weird hat laying on the cobblestone covered in lumps. The ship was already rolling on the heavy waves, barely held to the pier by a fraying rope. Luffy grabbed his two crewmates and leapt out, using Jeppo to get them back onto the ship, and even he had some minor difficulty doing so in the wind. Set sail. Hey Luffy. Nami grinned and pointed at the island, where marine ships dominated the wharf, with one in particular being of a much higher quality than the others. What say we leave the marines a going away present? Luffy grinned back and aimed his finger at the ship, as if his finger was a gun. His tongue was out of his mouth in concentration and one eye was closed. Bang. So maybe it was a gun. A bright, compressed bullet of plasma shot out of his finger as his arm jerked. It seared the rain as it screamed towards the bigger ship, and when it hit the mast, exploded with a roar. Scraps of wood soared through the air as the main mast rocked and fell sideways into the drink. A few more scorching bullets fired at the other ships had the Marines in very poor condition to be chasing them anywhere, much less to the Grand Line. Luffy and the rest of the crew laughed. To the Grand Line. There's a light there, Usopp pointed out as the ship came very close to capsizing. Excellent. Nami grinned, her hair matted down from the rain. Luffy was eyeing her the way he normally reserved for meat. Beyond that light is the entrance to the Grand Line. Sanji rolled an empty barrel onto the deck and grinned. Okay, shall we have our launching ceremony for entering that great ocean? Do we have to do it in the middle of a huge storm? Usopp was looking rather blue. Sanji ignored him and put his foot on top of the barrel to find all blue. He said. Luffy grinned and placed his foot down. To be the king. He roared gleefully. Zoro was next, to be the world's greatest swordsman. His confident smirk never one wavered. Nami put her foot right next to Luffy's, to map the entire world. Usopp's foot shook as he found a space. To be a brave warrior of the sea. We're going to the Grand Line. They roared as one and lifted their feet straight over their heads, before bringing it crashing down and shattering the barrel. Crap, Luffy yelled. The light is gone. Well, it's a lighthouse. Nami chuckled. The lights have to go off sometime. She went right back to frowning, though, as she grabbed Luffy, who was idiotically hanging upside down from Mary's sheep figurehead using nothing but his legs, and hauled him inside. Listen up, she said, as silly as it sounds. It appears as if all of the rumors I've heard about the Grand Line's entrance are true. Even this map I stole says the same thing. The entrance to the Grand Line is a mountain. We have to run into a mountain, Zoro asked, a dull look on his face. Usopp was busy running around in a panic. No, there's a canal, she sighed as she continued poring over the map. It's a massive canal riding up the red line, she declared. Luffy had a gleeful look on his face. We're going up a mountain. Whoa. It must be a mystery mountain. That stupid Nami. Usopp's face was puffing up. Canal or not, ships don't sail up. Nami glared at him and he quailed. He busied himself with trying to turn the ship with the rudder. He then started trying harder and harder, until he was howling and grunting while trying to move it, not noticing the growing number of tick marks on Nami's head. Zoro stared at the map. Didn't you get this thing from that stupid clown Buggy? You sure we can trust it? Nami nodded. The guiding light was definitely pointing straight for the canal. This is ... the reverse mountain. A little help over here, Usopp finally shouted, his head growing titanic for a moment. Nami growled. Sanji, will you just give him a hand, so he'll let me think in peace? Hi, Nami swan. Sanji pirouetted to Usopp and helped him with the rudder, his one visible eye a heart. But he couldn't budge it either. He blinked. Isn't this current a little strong? A light bulb lit up above Nami's head. That's it, she yelled. These monstrously powerful currents must be the key. If all four of the world's oceans point towards the red line and reverse mountain, then when they collide at the top they'll all spill out onto the Grand Line. She bit her lip, but Reverse Mountain is a winter island, so all the currents that collide into the red line will only be able to flow down to the depths. She sighed. That means we only have one shot. If we miss the canal, we'll splatter right into the red line and sink. I've still never heard of ships going up mountains before, Zoro said stubbornly. I've heard some things. Sanji grinned. Half of the people heading to the Grand Line don't make it. This must be why. Why don't we just head south? Zoro asked, pointing to the clearly open seas that they could just cross to hit the Grand Line. No way, Luffy denied, forming an X with his arms. That's right, Nami sighed in relief. There's a very good reason why we can't do that. Yeah, Luffy agreed. It would feel all wrong if we cheated. That's not it. Nami lightly punched him in the head. Hey, why is the storm gone all of a sudden? Usopp asked in shock. Nami froze. Usopp ... What did you just say? Nami turned creakily towards the window, like a robot. Hey, the storm is gone. Zoro had walked out and looked up at the sails. Where's the wind? They're not moving at all. Eddie, Nami started crying. We're in the calm belt. The calm belt? Luffy asked, before turning around. Hey look, the storm is still raging over there. He pointed behind the ship. Get back to that storm. Nami screamed, grab some oars and paddle. But the weather is great. Usopp protested. And then the ship shook. They all stumbled as the Going Merry rocked on waves that hadn't been there a second ago. An earthquake. On the sea, Nami sank to her knees and started crying. It's too late. She sobbed piteously. They're already here. The ship rocked again, much harder this time, and started rising into the air. Giant walls of water rose and churned around them as well before they ended up hundreds of meters in the air. Most of the occupants of the ship turned blue. They're huge. They were right on the nose of an unbelievably massive sea king. The one whose head they were on could have flossed its teeth with the Lord of the Coast Luffy had killed on the first day of his journey. It was a pale white with black stripes. There was a golden frog somewhere and even one that looked vaguely like a puffy, furry flamingo. Nami looked over to Luffy and gasped. Even Luffy is scared. She turned white. Indeed, Luffy was trembling. That made a massive shiver go down all of their spines. They had never seen Luffy be scared of anything other than his grandpa. And then he turned around and revealed a giant smile and a stupid amount of drool leaking from his mouth. He was literally dribbling on the floor. Why are you drooling? They all yelled furiously. Luffy swallowed and had meat in his eyes. I remember now. Grandpa said that calm belt sea kings taste the best. We're not catching one. Its could ain't even fit in the ship. Luffy had the most heartbroken look on his face any of them had ever seen. Sanji and Zoro had gathered all of the oars on the ship. When they go down, we paddle as fast as we can. Zoro said tightly. No, we're catching a sea king. Luffy declared angrily. And then the sea king sneezed and shot their boat back towards the storm. Usopp almost fell off, but Luffy hurried and caught him as the ship flew through the air and over the other sea kings. From one second to the next, it went from bright and sunny to monsoon. Oh good. It's only a storm we have to deal with. Usopp sighed in relief. Now do you get why we have to use the entrance? Nami moaned from her position on the floor. Yeah, I get it. Zoro wasn't quite curled up into a ball, but he was clutching Watto in a white fist. And Luffy, NOOO. Luffy cried, rushing for the rudder. Turn it around. We have to go back. Nami dove onto his back and tried to pin him, but he just dragged her along. Must. 8. Sea King. Nami bit him in the neck and he stiffened. If you don't stop it right now, we're not having alone time for a month. She hissed in his ear. Luffy groaned and fell with her on top of him, sobbing into the floorboards. I see it. The Mystery Mountain. Usopp yelled. All of a sudden, both Nami and Luffy were on their feet. Thoughts of the mini-argument they had entirely forgotten. It's huge. Luffy gasped. I can't even see the top. Nami yelled, to the rudder. We have to make sure we don't crash. The ship rocked as the currents underneath them intensified dozens of times. Mary was no longer under their full control and was racing towards the titanic rock wall in front of them. Nami, what do we do? Usopp yelled as Nami stared dead ahead, noting a small crack running up the wall. She grinned as she realized what was about to happen and yelled back confidently, straight ahead. Are you serious? Zoro had a pair of binoculars in his head and a dead look on his face. You can't be serious. He mumbled, it's really flowing up. The current was roaring up the mountain, completely defying gravity. 10 stone arches framed the entrance they were racing towards. Move starboard. We're off course a bit. Luffy yelled, move US starboard. He could barely be heard over the roaring of the ocean waters. Sanji and Usopp pushed and pulled with all of their might, but the lever they used to control the rudder snapped in half. Luffy, Zoro, and Nami all went wide-eyed in panic as Sanji and Usopp crashed into one of the doors. Shit, Luffy yelled and jumped off the side of the ship. Luffy, Nami gasped and raced to the rails. Luffy had fallen just enough to where he was just barely holding the ship with both hands. His back was pressed firmly on the ship, GEPPO. His roar overpowered the waves and a massive impact rocked the ship to the right. GEPPO, LUFFY. Nami screamed in panic. UOVERCORRECTED. We're too far to port now. Luffy jumped back on the ship in a panic and made to go to the other side but stopped as he saw Zoro jump off instead. Zoro hung himself off the side of Mary on the opposite side and drew Watto. Sanjiroku pound ho, he roared, purposefully making the wind blade as dull as possible. The waves practically exploded as the wind blade hit the water and pushed Mary slightly to port. That's perfect, Zoro, Nami yelled before another overcorrection could occur. Luffy hauled Zoro back onto the deck and slapped him in the shoulder with a grin. They sailed right in between the arches and had to steady themselves as the ship rocketed up the mountain. Sanji and Usopp had their arms over one another's shoulders and were dancing and hollering in glee. Nami let out a relieved sigh as they broke through the clouds and left the storm below them. Now we just need to ride it to the top. We made it. They yelled in glee as they raced to the bow to watch. We're even above the clouds now, Luffy exclaimed in awe. Indeed, they could no longer see the ocean behind them, and there was nothing blocking the sun above. Nami sighed. Oh, this would be such a nice place to tan if it wasn't cold. I wish we could come up here whenever we wanted. It's gorgeous. They watched as the summit came ever closer and eyed the beautiful sight of the water at the top occasionally flash freezing. They passed the summit and the ship flew up like a breaching whale, before pounding back down onto the waters going down into the Grand Line. This is it, guys, Luffy yelled gleefully. The greatest sea of them all. It's up ahead. They crashed into the sea of white in front of them, breaking right through the puffy clouds. All of them had massive grins on their faces and were letting their joy be heard. And then they heard the groaning. Nami Swan, I see a mountain up ahead, Sanji yelled in panic. No way. There's not supposed to be anything in front of us. After the Twin Capes it's just ocean. Then what the hell is that? Zoro pointed with a slightly blue tinge to his forehead. They blinked as the dark shadow came into full sight once there were no more clouds to go through. It's a whale. The whale was quite possibly on the same level as some of the smaller calm belt sea kings. It was so huge that Mary could have fit entirely on just the tip of one of its massive, sharp teeth. It had a round eye and blue skin. The tip of its snout was covered in a crisscrossing of heavy scars. I can't see its eyes, Nami yelled. It can't have seen us yet. There's a hole to our left. We can squeeze by it. Hard to port, Zoro yelled at Usopp. The rudder's lever is broken. He screeched in terror. Put your back into it, Zoro roared as he and Sanji tried to help move the tiny stump of broken wood. I have an idea, Luffy yelled and he dove onto Mary's bow. Jeppo, he roared and kicked. The ship slightly slowed, but the current pushing them forward was just too strong. This time Luffy was fighting it directly, rather than trying to adjust their direction. Luffy's single effort was minuscule. GPPO. He roared again, pushing even harder. He just kept yelling it, over and over, slowing the ship just slightly each time. His eyes widened as he ran out of time and was forced to haul himself back onto the ship. Mary had slowed just enough that a crash wouldn't be catastrophic, but there was definitely a casualty. Mary's figurehead snapped upon hitting the whale, even as the ship bounced back. Luffy eyed it as it spun through the air and landed back on the deck. His eyes darkened by the brim of his hat. We're saved, Zoro yelled and grabbed the paddles. Let's go before it's too late. The ship paddled to the side, and they froze as they looked at the whale's massive eye. It was simply sitting there calmly without moving. As they paddled, the whale started to wail. Its call was like the loudest foghorn they had ever heard. The sheer power of the sound waves rocked the ocean and the ship. Sanji cringed as he grabbed hold of his ears, as did the rest of them. My ears. The whale calmed and Nami let out a shaky sigh, before turning slightly blue as she looked at Luffy. Luffy ... What are you? Luffy had a furious look on his face. You. What the hell did you do to my special seat? He roared at the whale and let loose a Rankyaku. He didn't even bother yelling the name in his fury. The blunt kick smacked right into the whale's eye. Nami turned white and stared at him with a gaping mouth. You idiot. They screamed as a whole as the whale continued staring out at nothing. When they stopped, everything was quiet for a moment, and then the massive pupil looked down, and it snorted angrily. Luffy was growling furiously. How was that, you damn bastard? Bring it on. Shut it, you moron. Usopp and Zoro had their eyes popping out with their teeth sharpened as they both kicked him in the head. BWOOO. The whale roared as it opened its massive mouth, sucking in thousands of gallons of water. The ship rocked as they were once more caught in a current, this time straight into the whale's belly. NOOO. The Straw Hats wailed in panic as they were sucked in. Luffy. Nami screamed as she saw Luffy fall off the boat. He managed to catch himself onto a tooth with Jeppo and then started climbing the whale just as its maw closed. I'll save you guys, was the last thing they heard from him. Luffy flew up the side of the whale and started pounding it as its massive head started descending. Hey, give me back my friend's whale. No, don't dive, stupid, he roared, stomping hard enough that it tried to shake him off. It actually felt the impact. His head tilted to the side as he eyed a hatch. What in the world was a hatch doing on a whale? And then the whale finished its dive. What do you think? Nami asked hesitantly. What do I think? Zoro asked, his tone dangerously even. I think I'm going to cut Luffy when we see him. Usopp was too busy stuttering to himself to answer, so Sanji said, well, I was pretty sure we were just swallowed by that whale. They then eyed the island that they were casually nearing with deadpan looks on their faces. Is this a dream? Usopp asked. Yeah, probably a dream, Zoro confirmed. There was a house on the island, as well as a fold-up chair. Then ... what are those doing on the island? Nami asked blankly. A dream island, Zoro replied. Usopp sighed in relief. Yeah, what a nice dream island. Dream clouds, Sanji asked, looking at the sky. Dream clouds, Usopp confirmed. The sea in front of them exploded, revealing a giant squid. Dream squid. Beat, dream squid. They all yelled. Nami and Zoro drew their weapons while Usopp scrambled back in fear. But before they could act, 3 harpoons penetrated the squid and killed it instantly. Looks like there's someone there after all. Zoro grinned. Where's Luffy? Usopp moaned. I want to go home. What the hell is this? Luffy's head was tilted so far to the side his ear was almost on his shoulder. He turned around and then around again. Why is there a hallway inside a whale? He started running forward into the darkness. Slowly, the sounds of light grunts and the yanking of rope could be heard from inside the house. Then, a very stocky and tough-looking old man stepped into the light. The very top of his head was the shiny color of bald skin, and he had white hair descending down his shoulders. He also had 2 tufts growing on his chin going opposite directions, with a very fat lower lip, jaw compared to the upper side of his face. He was wearing a red shirt with a purple and yellow design on it, shorts, glasses, and a seaweed necklace with some pieces of jewelry on his arms. If it wasn't for the flower growing out of his head, yellow transitioning to purple near the stem, which was his head, he might have looked like a normal old man. A flower. They all tilted their heads in puzzlement. The great squid the old man had killed was still lying between the island and the ship. Sanji started to sweat as their eyes met. The old man's gaze seemed to be boring straight through him, into his soul. The old man started to pace to the right, not taking his eyes off of the straw hats. Every second that passed, the feeling of dread running down Sanji's spine intensified. And then the old man sat down and snapped open a newspaper, completely ruining the dramatic tension. Say something, you jerk, Sanji roared. The old man tilted his head their way. Usopp yelled at him, you wanna fight, you old bastard? We've got cannons. The old man's eyes snapped open furiously, making Usopp cringe away. After a few seconds of soul-piercing staring, his rough voice rang calmly in the air, you better not, or someone will die. Usopp turned blue, while the rest of them got ready. Oh, and just who would that be? Sanji asked lightly. Me, the old man said, almost sending Nami face first into the boards in exasperation. Listen you, Sanji roared again. He looked ready to jump out and strangle the old man. This asshole is fucking with us. Hey, calm down, dartboard. Zoro chuckled. Hey, old man, you got any idea where we are? Who are you? His eyes snapped open furiously again, piercing their souls. A few seconds passed. Isn't it polite to introduce yourselves first? Zoro blinked. Oh, right. My bad. My name is Crocus. The old man said. I'm the lighthouse keeper of the Twin Capes. I'm 71. My sign is Gemini. Can I cut him? Zoro held Watto in a trembling hand furiously as Crocus was saying that his blood type was Ab and going into increasingly more relevant information. Where you are. How dare you run your mouth while barging into my private resort? Does it look like we're in a rat's belly? Usopp cringed. So we really were eaten. He looked around. But this doesn't look like the inside of a whale's belly. I don't want to be digested. Nami cried out. Again, Crocus's eyes snapped open furiously. This time, the Straw Hats all yelled out. Will you cut that out? Haven't you ever heard of a running gag? Crocus groused in disappointment. That was a gag. Crocus nodded to the side. There's the exit, unless you rather go out the back end. Indeed, there was a giant metal door on the side of the sky. The pirates finally looked at it in puzzlement. The fuck? Zoro couldn't help but ask. Why is there a door in the sky? Nami growled angrily. She was really feeling made fun of right about now and was almost ready to start flinging tornadoes around. It's painted, Usopp gasped, and they all took a closer look. Every detail of the sky was completely frozen, down to the seagulls. It's all painted. On the inside of a whale's stomach. What the hell? Call it a doctor's playful mind. It's a hobby, Crocus said lackadaisically. What the hell are you even doing in here? Nami roared at him. Zoro face-palmed. Let's just get out of here. He mumbled through his fingers, and then the entire area started to shake and churn. What? Crocus sighed. Back at it already, Laboon? Look, Usopp yelled. The island is a ship, and it's made of metal. That must mean that wood will eventually dissolve in this stomach acid. What do you mean, old man? Who is Laboon? What's happening? Sanji yelled at him. Crocus looked at them calmly despite the churning of acid waves. Laboon is the name of this whale. He sighed and looked down. He's ramming his head into the red line, just as he's been doing for over 4 decades. Their eyes opened wide in shock. That's right, Nami gasped. Its head was full of scars and its cry sounded mournful. Is he trying to kill this whale from the inside? Usopp growled angrily. The whale isn't our responsibility, Zoro said. We just have to get Luffy and get out. What did that idiot old man just do? Nami squeaked in shock. He jumped in. He's going to get digested. Damn it, Luffy roared as he smashed face first into yet another metal wall. What the hell is this stupid whale doing? He had enough and punched one of the walls with his fingers extended, clawing right in and rooting himself to it, even with the tremendous rocking. The only thing taking damage now was the wall. Damn it, I have to find them. They have to be in here somewhere. He jumped and roared, Jeppo. Now he rocketed forward, not touching any of the walls at all. Far ahead of him, two strange-looking individuals were standing with their backs to the doors. Yosh, the slender male of the group, had a bit of a ditzy-sounding, effeminate voice. He had red-orange hair and green clothes, with a golden crown on his head. Two swirly-looking nines were drawn on his face, below his eyes. Our infiltration has been successful, Miss Wednesday. Behind this door is the stomach, and likely the old man. We must eliminate him. Everything is for this whale. Yeah, Mr. Nine. The female was a gorgeous, slim and curvy woman with blue hair drawn up into a ponytail that fell down to her bum and black eyes. Her shirt was a spaghetti strap with swirls all over it, obviously meant to draw attention to her more than generous chest. She also had a green coat with a furry collar over her shoulders. This whale is a precious sweet honey for our town. They both held rather large guns in one hand with their pinkies extended. Okay, Miss Wednesday. We'll open the door with a 3, 2, 1 baby. Don't let down your guard, Nine told her. Roger, Mr. Nine. I'm ready at any time, she replied firmly. Speaking of guards being up, out of the way. Huh, the two weird people said, and then started screaming in panic as Luffy came out of the darkness like a speeding bullet and hammered straight into them before they even had a chance to get out of the way. Inside the stomach, Crocus was climbing up an iron ladder near the huge exit door when the smaller door on a platform burst open and spat out Luffy and the two idiots playing at being secret agents. Luffy, Nami yelled happily. Oh, hey guys, everyone's all right. Luffy waved cheerfully, not really being heard over the hollering of the two he'd crashed into. Oh no, Miss Wednesday, we're going to land in the acid sea, Mr. Nine screamed in terror. Luffy got tired of it and kicked out to the side, sending himself speeding towards the ship. This is a crazy whale, he declared as the other two splashed into the acidic drink. Nami punched him. It's your fault we're in here, you idiot. She sighed, and then grabbed him by the cardigan and kissed him in relief. Sanji immediately started sulking and drawing imaginary circles on the ship's floor in dust. Zoro sighed. Should we grab those two weirdos over there? He pointed at the two idiots who were trying and failing to swim because they refused to let go of their huge, heavy guns. Sanji laid eyes on the female and his visible eye turned into a heart. Yes, he leapt in the acid and saved the girl, while the man had to grab his pants and was violently kicked up and down as Sanji swam back to the Mary. They heard the overblown foghorn that was the sound of Laboon roaring furiously reverberate through the stomach. Then, all of a sudden, it stopped. The entire area calmed down, and the waves stopped roiling. Within a matter of a few moments, the entire acid ocean went back to being pristinely smooth. Hey, the whale calmed down, Nami said happily. Maybe we can get out of here now. She was leaning against Luffy, who was leaning against the railing with his arms around her waist. Yeah, but first, Zoro stared down the two agents. We saved you for the time being. But now, who are you? Miss Wednesday was cringing away from Sanji, who is officially in love-struck mode. Mr. Nine, these are pirates. I know, Miss Wednesday. But if we talk to them, perhaps they'll understand. Nine was quite shaky. You thugs are still here. Crocus sounded quite angry as he appeared again. While I draw breath, you shall never harm Laboon. Who's that old man? And who's Laboon? Luffy asked, out of the loop. His crew couldn't answer him, because the blue-haired girl let out an evil-sounding giggle. Even if you say so, we can't leave. She stood up with her gun clicking on the boards. Taking down this whale is our mission. Both of them still had their trigger hand pinkies extended out, as if they were about to drink from a cup of tea. We won't let you interfere with our whaling mission this time. We'll open an air vent in his stomach. They stood next to each other and aimed at the stomach. For some reason, they aimed at where the old man would actually be able to block, rather than the rest of the giant stomach. Luffy got behind them with a grin and poked each weapon so that they were pointing at each other. Neither noticed while the rest of his crew held back snickers. Let's go, baby. Boom. Two fried idiots, coming right up. Laboon is an island whale, Crocus said as they all sat on his island ship, waiting for Laboon to rise out of the ocean. It's the largest whale in the world, and it normally only lives in West Blue. These guys here, he indicated the tied-up agents, come from a nearby town. They've been trying for nearly a year to kill Laboon for his meat. Laboon would probably feed their greedy bellies for 2 or 3 years. He glared at the singed-looking agents, who were trying to make themselves look very small, but they won't succeed. As long as I draw breath, they won't hurt this whale. But why does Laboon keep pounding his head on the red line? What is he trying to do? Nami asked. Crocus sighed unhappily. Laboon came through Reverse Mountain with a certain friendly pirate crew. He was really young back then. You could have fit him on a dinghy. He smiled as he reminisced, remembering how the pirates would often ride Laboon while waving mugs of alcohol around. They had been traveling together for a couple months by then. Laboon had gotten separated from the rest of his pod and had come to see those pirates as his family. But the Grand Line was even scarier than it is now. Their ship had been damaged by the Reverse Mountain, and so they stayed here with me for almost a year. We became great friends during that time. When the pirates left to continue on their trip, they left Laboon here with me, promising to come back for him after they made it through the Grand Line. Laboon understood and waited patiently for 3 years for them to come back as promised. And then 4, and then 5. He shook his head. That was 50 years ago. He still thinks his friends are coming back. He finished quietly, drawing a gasp from Nami and a few others. Miss Wednesday in particular looked surprisingly shocked and saddened at the tale. By now, they had made it past the huge doors and were at the final set leading to the outside world. This waterway is cool. Why did you build it inside a whale? Laboon is too huge. I'm a doctor, but even I wouldn't be able to treat him from outside. Crocus replied. Doctor, Luffy grinned, want to join us on our TR? Fat chance, idiot. Who would look after Laboon? Crocus snorted. Besides, I'm too old for this shit. That's a young man's adventure. A real sky. Luffy ignored the harsh words to yell gleefully at the bow of the ship. What do we do with these idiots? Zoro asked, pointing to said idiots. Luffy waved a hand back and forth. Leave them tied up for now. Don't want them trying to hurt the whale again. Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine blanched. Luffy noticed something that had fallen near his feet. It was some kind of glass bauble on a purple leather band. He picked it up and examined it curiously. Crocus glared at them, getting expressions of fear from the two who weren't focused on Luffy. You should just toss them overboard. Then he sighed again and turned. No matter. Idiots have been trying for years to kill Laboon. I'll never let them. Luffy grabbed the two after putting the bauble in his pocket and hauled them over his shoulder as they all disembarked from Mary. There were a few repairs that needed to be done on the ship before they could set sail, so there was no sense staying aboard. So, he's been waiting for 50 years, huh? They've sure kept him waiting a long time, Luffy said as he relaxed on a rock. Nami was curled up next to him and looking curiously at the item Luffy had handed her, since it looked kinda like one of those compass thingies Makino had tried to teach him to use. Tried. This is the Grand Line. Sanji snorted, taking a deep drag from his cigarette. Those guys said they'd be back in a couple years. It's been 50. That's all the answer you need. He exhaled. They're dead. He'll be waiting here till the end of time. Usopp banged his mug on the table. It was only the fact that it was mostly drained that kept him from spilling his drink. You don't know that. They could come back. Don't be so damn cynical. It's the heartbreaking story of a whale who lost his friends. Crocus sighed sadly, rubbing at his eyes. I'm afraid that reality is crueler than that. A long time ago, news reached me from a reliable source that the pirates had failed. They escaped the Grand Line. What? Nami screeched furiously. And they just abandoned poor Laboon here. How cruel could they be? Luffy's way of thinking had influenced her far more than she had thought. She was seething. How dare they leave their nakama behind? She then stopped, her anger dulling for a moment. Wait a minute. They would have had to cross the calm belt to escape without coming back here. That's right. That's the only reason their fate is uncertain. Crocus confirmed despondently. But even if they're alive, they'll never come back here. The seasons ... the climates, the ocean currents, even the air currents. Everything about this place is a nightmare. This is an ocean made to break everyone trying to come across it. The weak of heart, men who would rather risk the calm belt than stay a second longer, are devoured by this sea. So, they did abandon Laboon. Usopp roared furiously. And even after 50 years, he still believes in those jerks. It's way too cruel. Why not tell him? Nami was clenching her fists hard. He can understand, can't he? Why are you keeping it from him? Crocus gave her a look. Why do you think he roars and hits his head on the red line? He asked sadly. I did tell him. Everything. But he won't listen. He's convinced this rock face is the only thing keeping him from his friends. He refuses to face the truth. He looked down. After all these decades ... if he accepts it, he'll lose his reason for having waited for so long. He has no way home. And even if he did, he has no home any longer. He'll never be able to find his pod. Crocus had a stiff upper lip and a calm look to him. But it was clear that he was only just keeping himself from crying as he stared up at Laboon, who was simply sitting quietly there with his head pointed straight up. Look at those scars on his head. If he keeps ramming his head on the red line, he'll surely die. We've been together for 50 years. I can't abandon him, even if they lied to me too. Crash. Luffy had gotten up from his place next to Nami, but his foot had hit the ground so hard that they felt a mini tremor. His face was shadowed by his hat as he took another step before he leapt up into the air. The ground he was on shattered and cratered, sending shocks of fear racing up the spines of the two agents. What is he? Crocus yelled, eyes going wide in shock. Luffy flew towards Laboon. who hadn't noticed a thing and did a front flip, rankyaku. His heel dropped, and a massive wind blade raced through the air and sliced a gouge in Laboon's hide. What the fuck are you doing? Every single other person there roared in fury and terror. Laboon's eyes started to tear up slowly, before he got a slightly mad look in them. BWOOO. Laboon roared in agony and started to thrash, sending massive waves in every direction. Laboon stiffened and glared at Luffy, before diving and sending his tail over to slam into the air-hopping boy. Luffy met the tail with a punch, and the resulting shockwave almost bowled over the two agents. What is he? The two terrified people screamed. Laboon breached and threw himself at Luffy, who met him with a kick. But even he couldn't overpower a whale like that when it was at ramming speed. Laboon crashed headfirst into the red line with Luffy under his head and shattered the rock. Luffy. His crew yelled in fear. Suddenly, Laboon was thrown off, revealing a dirty, but otherwise perfectly fine Luffy. He was grinning widely. Rankyaku. He roared again, sending a blunt wind cannon this time at Laboon, who rocked back, before charging forward and squishing Luffy against the red line again. Laboon drew back and started swimming forward, roaring in fury all the while. But what Luffy did made him stop in confusion. He threw his hand up and yelled, "It's a draw." Biwuo. Laboon just looked confused. "I'm strong, aren't I? You are too, aren't you, boy?" Biwuo. Laboon roared back. "You really want to win, don't you?" Luffy grinned. "So our fight's not finished yet. We have to fight again." He walked forward. "Your old friends are dead, but now you've got a rival." Laboon's eye started to tremble. "We'll definitely have to battle again to see who the strongest is." Tears started to leak from the giant whale's eyes. "I'm going around the Grand Line now. When we come back, I better not see that you've continued hurting yourself." "Got that." Laboon threw his head towards the clouds and let out the happiest cry Crocus had heard from him in decades. Luffy's modern art had made a comeback, with his misshapen Jolly Roger painted on Laboon's head. There. He yelled happily. He was completely slathered in paint, and was holding a gigantic brush. "That mark is our contract, so you better not scuff it up. Don't go ramming your head and erasing it." "Got it." Biwuo. Laboon chirped. Could chirp really be used when Laboon was so damn huge? In agreement, Nami was smiling happily at how much better the whale looked now. It wasn't quite the way she would have done it, but perhaps nothing else would have gotten through to the massive creature. She gave Luffy a quick kiss before she exclaimed, "Time to plan the voyage." She got a map out and placed her compass on the table. Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine were sitting there, still tied up, and mumbling to each other while alternating with staring at Luffy in fear. Sanji was busy in the kitchen preparing his elephant bluefin while Usopp was making some repairs to the ship. Zoro was sleeping, quite deeply too, if his snores were any indication. Nami's scream jarred everyone in hearing. Sanji came out of the ship carrying a huge plate in each hand, one on his head, and even one with a leg. How he managed to get around with his one-legged pirouetting was beyond understanding. Nami "Whatever is the matter, my goddess? If it's lunch you want, it's ready." As the Straw Hats gathered around, Nami was panicking. "The compass is broken." She pointed to it, and it was spinning more than Sanji. "It won't stop spinning." Miss Wednesday finally got past her fear to start laughing quite loudly. They turned to her with questioning glares, though Nami idly mused that she had quite a good queen bitch laugh. "You silly pirates. Did you come here intending to throw your lives away? Are you really a navigator?" she asked Nami condescendingly. Nami's eyes narrowed angrily. While she is being quite abrasive for a prisoner, Crocus glared at her, making the girl clam up again. "She has a point. Did you not do any research? That useless thing would be better served at the ocean floor here on the Grand Line." "It's not broken, but that doesn't mean it's useful," Nami gasped. "Is it the magnetic field?" She cottoned on almost immediately. "Exactly," Miss Wednesday replied, though much more timidly this time at the reminder. "Every island on the Grand Line is rich in magnetic minerals. Every single island has its own magnetic field, so it's impossible for a regular compass to properly read the planet's field. And to make matters worse, none of the currents follow any regular patterns. Neither do any of the winds. As a navigator, I'm sure you realize how dangerous that is. If you were to set sail without knowing this, you'd perish for sure. Without any direction, your journey would be completely hopeless." "I didn't know." Nami rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. "So we're stuck here. How can we navigate if our tools don't work?" "You need a log pose," Miss Wednesday said. "What's that?" "It's a special compass," Crocus said. He would have continued, but Luffy, mouthful of the ignored bluefin, interrupted him. "So, it's a weird compass?" he asked through his chewing. Crocus nodded, telling him that it did look kind of weird. Luffy swallowed the meat in his mouth. "You mean one of these things?" He held up the log pose he'd gotten back from Nami in question. "Yes, that's it," Crocus confirmed. "Wait, that's mine," Mr. Nine screamed in panic. As Miss Wednesday stiffened, Nami stuck her tongue out at them. "Pirate," she chirped cheerfully as she grabbed it from Luffy, pecking him on the lips. The two agents deflated. "So, this is a log pose, huh?" It has no markings. Crocus had his arms crossed. It doesn't need any. Every island on the Grand Line has its own unique magnetic field. Therefore, you must record each magnetic field on your journey, which will lead you to your next island. Each one connects to the next in the chain. The log pose is the only thing you can depend on in the Grand Line in terms of navigation. This mountain is the starting point, and you pick one of 7 different paths here. But no matter which path you choose, all paths converge on one final island in the end. Raftul, in all of history, only one man has led a crew on that perilous journey and made it to the end. Gold Roger, that must be where One Piece is. Usopp crowed in excitement. That's certainly a theory. Crocus said, no other legend is as tempting as that one. But only one man has ever made it. No one else has reached that island. Luffy grinned, make that too, old man. The two stared each other down, and a wide grin appeared on Crocus's face as well. The 2 agents looked flabbergasted. But after watching him punch out the whale, they couldn't just flat out doubt him. Anyway, I'm full. Let's set sail. Sanji and Usopp finally turned to the plates and their eyes bugged out. You ate even the bones. Sanji growled furiously. Luffy, you bastard. This tuna was supposed to be for Nami Swan to enjoy the most. He kicked his captain square in the face, shooting him past Nami. We'd better be careful with this. Our entire journey rests on this staying safe, she was saying. Right as Luffy flew past her so fast that the log pose shattered, she stared at it blankly, a dead smile on her face. My log pose. Mr. Nine screamed furiously. Damn it, Sanji. Luffy roared. He vanished from this air and kicked Sanji in the jaw right back, flinging him into the air. Nami's arm dropped and she reached under her skirt and assembled her staff. Cyclone tempo. Who are these people? Miss Wednesday was right back to being utterly terrified as Nami flung a freaking tornado at Sanji, sending him crashing into the red line. As the grit cleared, he was ass over tea kettle in a crack on the red line and his one visible hard eye was spinning. The terrified Nami buried her anger and turned to Crocus. What do we do? These idiots, bro. Relax. Crocus chuckled. You can have mine as thanks for helping Laboon. It's not like I ever go anywhere anyway. Suddenly, they heard a strange clacking sound from above. Mr. Nine's jaw dropped, and he broke into a flop sweat. Miss Wednesday also stiffened up and let out a little squeal of fear. Oh no. He yelled, it's the unluckies. All of the people there, Laboon included, looked up and saw what appeared to be a spotted otter riding a vulture wearing aviator goggles. Oh, it's an otter riding a vulture, Nami said blankly. Huh, it is an otter riding a vulture. Luffy chuckled to himself. Why is an otter riding a vulture? Zoro asked, and then his voice somehow went even more deadpan. Is that a bomb? The otter had a sort of shell in its hand which it was whacking on something hard the vulture was wearing. That was what was causing the clacking sound. And then the fuse on something lit up and was thrown directly at the 2 weirdos with the crew. Zoro sighed. Is everything trying to kill us today? He asked no one in particular as he unsheathed one of his swords, ignoring the 2 idiots screaming their heads off. He swiped twice with it and sheathed it. The first blade was sharp, and it cut straight through the explosive and ruined the ignition mechanism. The gunpowder in it dropped uselessly to the ocean. The second blade was blunt, and it smashed straight into the vulture and knocked the 2 animals right out of the sky. The otter screamed in terror as the smoking vulture descended with swirls in its eyes, before being silenced by the red line. The 2 agents gaped at Zoro, before turning to each other and whispering urgently, is everyone in this pirate crew terrifying? She hissed, what do we do, Miss Wednesday? Do we even try? He didn't have to elaborate. He knew she would understand. But Miss Wednesday suddenly felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She just barely managed to stop herself from grinning to herself. She turned to Luffy. Excuse me, Mr. Captain. Luffy looked at her in boredom. Just call me Luffy. What's your name anyway? She blinked, surprised that he didn't know that by now. I'm Miss Wednesday. This is Mr. Nine. Luffy stared at her blankly. Your real name, dummy? She balked. We can't say. I'm sorry. Our work requires us to be secretive. Our company's motto is mystery. That's all we can say. Luffy continued staring at her, arms crossed, before finally waving a hand back and forth. Fine. What is it? Could we please hitch a ride on your ship back home? She asked, bowing her head. Both our boat and our log pose are now gone, so we can't get back home. It's not far from here. It's one of the first islands on the Grand Line, called Whiskey Peak. We just want to go home. We promise to repay you. I wouldn't trust them. That came from Crocus, obviously. They've been up to no good since they got here. Plus, they tried to kill Laboon, Nami said, and the 2 balked. Nami walked to them. Why should we help you? It's fine. Nami turned to Luffy in surprise. He was grinning lightly at Miss Wednesday. We'll take you to Sake Summit then. It's as good a route as any, isn't it? The girl's face lit up in joy. Nami sidled up to him. Care to explain? And it's Whiskey Peak, she whispered in his ear. Shishishi. He chuckled. Just a feeling. This could be fun. She smiled back and disengaged. All right then. Time to set the log pose. You sure you want to take these 2? Once you choose a route, you can't change it. Crocus tried advising Luffy again. It's fine, Luffy grinned. If we don't like it, then we can just sail around again. Crocus couldn't help but break out into a grin of his own. Alright then. Make sure to set the pose using the map. It's all set already. Nami smiled happily. It's pointing to Whiskey Peak. Well, alright then. Luffy grinned and hopped off his rock. Let's set sail. Thank you for everything, Flower Guy. Thank you for the log pose. Nami waved as they all piled onto the repaired Mary, Luffy at the bow on his special seat. The ship's rope reeled back in, and they took off at a good clip. Laboon's cries behind them could still be heard, even when they could no longer see the whale. As the ship disappeared into the horizon, Crocus turned serious. Could that bunch of pirates be the ones we've been waiting for? He has a weird aura to him. Roger. Is everyone on this crew completely ridiculous? Miss Wednesday couldn't help but feel like a broken record. Roughly 3 days had passed since they departed from Reverse Mountain, while the crew had merely relaxed for the rest of the day from Reverse Mountain. From the moment dawn broke and she'd been rudely awoken by the captain's yells, they had been doing some form of training or another. Even she and Mr. Nine had been dragged into the madness. Her head bobbed down and then back up. I mean, seriously. She pouted. She certainly took good care of herself, but she didn't think she could do any of what she had seen. She bobbed down and then up again. This is just crazy. Wait, no, that wasn't her head. It was her entire body. She was resting from her training by sitting on top of Usopp while he did his push-ups. The past couple days she'd seen increasingly absurd training. Usopp the Longnose was constantly doing exercises with one of them sitting on his back. When he wasn't doing that, it was an evil combination of dodge and aim practice with the captain. Luffy would throw small pellets. She'd been grazed by one and it had hurt, directly at the dark-skinned boy, while Usopp would fire back with his slingshot. Every time Usopp got hit, Luffy would force him to do 50 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 10 laps around the ship. By the end of the day, the poor guy looked like the Walking Dead. It was clear nothing but his willpower kept him standing. Astonishing Miss Wednesday. Next up was the navigator, Nami. At first, she had figured, from her magic, that the tiny slip of a woman, same as her really. They were both sexy and feminine, would be a long-range fighter and not capable of much in terms of physical exertion. And then the Micken-haired woman had casually dropped 100 squats with an 800-pound barbell on her shoulders in front of her. She later learned that strong legs were extremely necessary for the 3-leg-based techniques of the style they were learning from Luffy. She would regret mentioning her amazed interest because Luffy immediately had a 100-pound barbell on her shoulders and started counting out her own reps. Her legs and thighs were screaming, for the record. Those screams were silenced in utter horror as she witnessed the overly flirtatious, and at times, seemingly ditzy man Sanji do 5 times the reps Nami did in a set with a 2-ton weight on his shoulders, and he finished in only double the time. And then, without a word of protest, he engaged Luffy in a blisteringly fast air duel using only kicks. As if the exercise, which had her feeling faint at the first rep, was merely a casual occurrence he paid no mind to. When she mentioned her utter amazement to Nami, her only response was annoyance at Sanji already having surpassed her, pointing out that he fought exclusively with his legs and had done so for years hadn't done much to improve Nami's mood. The final 2 members, Luffy and Zoro, had her throwing up her arms and proclaiming defeat. Both could double Sanji's weight without issue, and she'd even heard Zoro complaining that they needed to get heavier ones. And worse, Luffy agreed. This is what it takes to be strong. Nami tossed her way carelessly as she walked by. Come on, Usopp, 100 more. And pick up the pace. Screw you, Nami. Usopp's arms were trembling as he completed another push-up. I'd like to see you doing 500 push-ups with this much weight on your back. Excuse me, Wednesday yelled out in affront, before smacking the back of his head. Are you calling me fat? Nami let out a little giggle. Don't you know never to mention a lady's weight, Usopp? She then yelled out, hey, it's my turn. Finish up already, you two. Luffy and Zoro blurred into view once more. The swordsman was huffing and puffing as if he'd been doing a triathlon and pouring sweat in rivulets. But the man in the straw hat barely was winded. He was holding back 2 of Zoro's swords with just his pipe in a one-handed grip, though the pipe was trembling. His left leg swung out and ended the fight. GRK. Zoro had to force himself not to bite through Wado Ikemonji as the kick connected solidly with his ribs. Even his speedy Tekai wasn't much help on that front. He sunk to a knee and buried one of his swords in the floorboards to lean on. One of these days, Luffy. He panted threateningly. Shishishi, good job, Zoro. That was a pretty good Tekai at the end. I just don't get it. Wednesday finally had enough and waved her arms around. I thought East Blue was supposed to be full of weaklings. Boy, several of the crew yelled back. She cringed as she realized she had insulted every one of the people so graciously taking her home, but decided to power through it. Well, it's true. She huffed. Only a couple of your C's bounties were even over 10 million. All the other blues at least had averages in the tens. On second thought, maybe doubling down wasn't the smartest idea. She winced as she looked around at the crew. Well, Nami held back a grin. Krieg did kind of suck. The blue-haired girl hesitantly smiled back. Still, you are talking pretty big, aren't you? Why not put your money where your mouth is? She held up her staff and pointed it at her threateningly. The girl blanched and turned pasty white. Ooh, can I not and say I did? She poked her fingers together. I can't fling tornadoes around. Nami rolled her eyes. I'm not going to do that on the ship, dummy. Yeah, I like this idea. Luffy popped into the conversation with that shit-eating grin on his face. Okay, Nami versus Blue Girl is a go. He hauled a protesting brunette up and pushed her to the sparring area, with Nami following with a giant grin matching his. I didn't agree to this. She kept on protesting uselessly. No slackers on my ship, Luffy commanded, turning serious for a moment. She stiffened. Then he grinned evilly. In fact, he turned and yelled at her partner. Hey, stupid 9 guy. The guy with burnt orange hair cringed from the other end of the ship. Get ready. He vanished, and Wednesday winced as she heard the girlish scream belonging to her partner followed by a crash and pleas for mercy. Well, at least it's not the captain I'm facing, she questioned herself after swallowing heavily. Nami's slight eyebrow twitch told her she hadn't been silent enough. She hooked her pinky into a small ring on her clothes and drew a string along with a small little thing that looked slightly like a peacock's feather in miniature. She started spinning it on her finger and took a low stance, already sweating nervously. Okay, let's go, she shouted, putting on a face full of bravado. Nami grinned. Well, at least you'll be some fun, then. She charged forward and jabbed her staff at Vivi's head, who dodged it gracefully. She swung it around aiming at her feet and the girl pirouetted away, before swinging forward and slashing the string at Nami's face. The Mikan-loving girl ducked, and then growled when she saw a few tiny strands of her hair fall off. Those things are sharp, she commented evenly. Miss Wednesday smiled back. My special Q-Jackie slashers. Hope you like them. She drew another set and set it spinning like a buzzsaw. Nami grinned in response and picked up the pace, launching a flurry of attacks with her staff as well as a couple kicks where she could help it. The brunette managed to dodge them all fluidly. Even when Nami thought she had a direct, guaranteed hit, her opponent somehow managed to find herself safe through utterly ridiculous flexibility or nimbleness. Luffy had stopped terrorizing Mr. 9, since really, the guy was just flimsy. One hit had knocked him out, and was sitting on the railing. She's surprisingly good. She's got good senses, he mumbled as Nami went for a body shot and the brunette contorted her spine as she just bent backward and let it pass harmlessly above her. Her follow-up showed more flexibility as she kicked high enough that she would have nailed Zoro, the tallest of them, right in the head. So of course, it sailed right over Nami's head. Luffy furrowed his brows. At the relatively low speed Nami is keeping this at, Wednesday could have hit her at least 3 times by now. Why isn't she making contact? Nami easily backpedaled and was in a loose stance, brows furrowed. She was wondering the same thing. You're not taking this seriously. While the girl flinched, though she recovered admirably. Sure I am. But you're not. You haven't done the vanishing thing yet. Nami snorted. This is a spar, not an ass-kicking. And it takes 2 to tango, sister. I left you plenty of openings you're more than quick enough to exploit and you didn't take any of them. These are sharp, you know. She shot back. Indeed, there were tiny little gouges in the wood from where they had impacted. Is your foot sharp too? Luffy asked dryly as he materialized in between them. Ape. The girl jumped back. She started to sweat as he eyed her. She was saved from further grilling when the weather changed. What the? Nami gasped as the day went from warm and sunny spring to nightmare winter at the drop of a hat. It was as if they had crossed an invisible line. The girls started to shiver due to their thin clothes as an avalanche of snow appeared to start to fall on them. They hadn't been in the new weather for more than 10 seconds and already there was starting to be enough accumulation on the deck for a snowball. Holy crap, I've never seen weather change like that. Her teeth chattered. Wednesday was hugging herself and rubbing her arms, her breath misting in front of her. That's the grand line for you. The closest waters to Reverse Mountain especially can get crazy. Both of them ran inside to change and get into warmer clothing. By the time they finished that, Luffy and Usopp were well on their way to building snowmen. Sanji, Nami called out with a small smirk. Yes, Nami Swan. Sanji popped up pirouetting in front of them. What may I do for you, my lovelies? Perhaps a nice, hot chocolate? Please shovel the deck. Nami patted him on the cheek. We don't need all of this melting and getting everything wet. Hi, guy. The blonde went about his business, staring after him. Nami huffed irritably. There wasn't even time to cover up my precious Mikan. They better not get ruined. Crocus was right. This stupid weather defies all logic. Is that thunder? Great, now we have lightning too. Hey, shouldn't you be keeping an eye on the log pose? Wednesday asked her. I haven't really seen you steering much. What do you mean? I've been checking our course regularly. The wheel is locked, Nami told her. She was surprised when the other girl winced. You might want to check again. You're really underestimating the grand line. Nami held back an eye roll through sheer force of will. On the other hand, Miss Wednesday had impressed her somewhat during their little spar and she was a grand line native. Nami didn't get to be the best damn navigator there ever was by not learning lessons from those who came before, so she raised her arm to look at the log pose. See, we should be what the fuck. Luffy and Usopp stopped their fight. Luffy had built a decent snowman while Usopp had managed a beautiful, artistic snow queen. Luffy had, of course, destroyed the head immediately and Usopp retaliated, as they heard her screech, "What's wrong, Nami? Luffy, get on the wheel. Now, we need to turn around 180 degrees. She held her head. This is crazy. I just checked like 5 minutes ago and we were right on target. The seas were smooth. How the hell did we literally turn around? The sea is having its way with us." Mr. Nine sneered at her. "The log pose is the only thing you can trust on these seas," Wednesday told her, in a more conciliatory manner. "Nothing else makes sense. Not the currents, not the weather, not the clouds, waves, or even the sky. Everything is treacherous." Mr. Nine then pissed her off. If the dark look on her face was any indication, "Are you sure you're really a navigator?" She vanished and grabbed him by the face. "Then get off your ass and help you goddamn freeloader." She tossed him bodily right through the door. She glared at Wednesday, though the girl was already moving. Good. She immediately started shouting orders. "Take the wind from the starboard yard brace. Turn us 180 to port. Usopp, watch astern. Sanji, take the whipstaff. Hold on." The wind changed. Usopp yelled out, "What? No way." Nami's eye started to twitch. Nine and Wednesday were smiling and facing the wind. Ah, the first winds of spring. But why? This doesn't make any sense. Nami ground her teeth impotently. "The waves are getting bigger," came from Usopp. Luffy yelled out gleefully, "There's dolphins there. Let's go see them. Iceberg at 10 o'clock. Usopp yelled again, "Shit, we're aiming right for it." Nami's scream at Luffy to avoid it got interrupted by Sanji's yell, "There's fog up ahead." "What kind of ocean is this?" Nami yelped, holding her head in between her hands. And all the while, Zoro simply slept leaned up on a railing, a pile of snow covering his head and chest. Roughly 5 hours of the hectic and crazy changes in weather happened. All the while, Nami had been barking out orders and using her own Luffy-trained skills when needed. While she would have preferred to devote all her attention to the weather and delegating responsibility, at times she needed to be too quick for instruction. At other times, the person assigned to a particular task had to abandon it to repair something. Usopp had to put his fledgling carpentry skills to the test multiple times just to keep the bilge from leaking over and over. Poor Miss Wednesday had almost been brained by a hail ball the size of a baseball. Sanji had to stop helping multiple times as well to go make food. The work was utterly exhausting, and everyone needed to eat constantly to keep their strength up. Nine had collapsed roughly 3 hours in and had been utterly useless for the next hour. Wednesday, though, had impressed all of them. Not once had she complained, and she had taken to her assigned tasks with determination. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. It went from a snowy monsoon, for lack of a better description, to a perfectly clear, sunny day. Everyone froze, looking around at each other in bewilderment. Then they looked at the skies and the seas, and it finally registered. Everyone collapsed to the floor in rapture, elated that the nightmare weather was finally over. Everyone, that is. But Luffy, who was just chilling on the railing and snickering at everyone laying about, looking like death warmed over. If I say that was fun, would Nami kill me? And then a yawn broke out. Zoro was getting up and stretching. Amazing-sounding cracks rang through the air as the green-haired man woke up and popped his joints. Man, what a peaceful nap. He looked around and started to blink. He eyed them all laying down and then scratched the side of his head. Hey, I know it's a beautiful day, but shouldn't you all be working? He cracked his neck. Hope we're still on course. He eyed the two strangers. I forgot we were bringing them with us. What are your names again? Miss Wednesday. And Mr. Nine. Right, those suspicious-sounding names. He grinned evilly down at them. They were stuck in my head. I feel like I've heard them before. The two agents started to gulp, but he was interrupted as Nami smashed him on top of his head. Oi. He growled and rubbed the top of his skull. What the hell was that for? How could you sleep through all of it and then wake up when everything was already over? She hissed like a she-devil. Not even Luffy's screaming in your ear worked. She gave him 3 more lumps, leaving him dazed and holding his head in pain. She leapt up and stood on top of the railing. All right, listen up. We have to stay alert. Who knows what will happen next? Everyone needs to be ready for more batshit weather at all times. She held her fist up. I understand now. We all know how dangerous this ocean is now. And I know now how the Grand Line got its reputation. All of the navigational skills I've honed for the last decade plus seem useless here. Usopp groaned. Not exactly inspiring confidence here. Are you sure we'll be okay? Of course, Nami growled. Other crews have braved these waters before. Hawkeye Mihawk sailed it in a goddamn coffin. The Pirate King even reached the end of the line. I will learn how to read this damn sea like a book, just like I did back home. I will get us through this journey safely, and we will not fail. The two stragglers were looking at her in awe, while everyone else was merely smirking. She pumped her fist once into the air for all of our dreams. Yeah, the replying shouts of only 4 people almost blew Nine's eardrums out. Wednesday was looking at them all in admiration before ducking her head to hide a smile. She really liked these people. They had surprisingly grown on her despite the training, and she had only known them for about 4 days at this point. Nami suddenly grinned. And looks like the first leg of our journey is over. She pointed ahead of the ship and they all turned their heads. The fog before them suddenly cleared out, revealing an island with 4 massive mountains and several smaller ones that really did look like cacti. Whoa, Luffy grinned brightly, it's Sake Summit. We arrived safely. Mr. Nine yelled in elation. Miss Wednesday wasn't really sure what to do. She did honestly like them, but she needed to go. So, for now, she just went with the flow and jumped onto the railing along with her partner. We'll be taking our leave now. No doubt she'd be seeing them again soon. Miss Wednesday slapped a smug grin onto her face. Thanks for the ride, darlings. We'll meet again, fate willing. Her cocky smirk was hiding a real smile. She didn't doubt that they would be perfectly fine. Bye, baby. Both of them backflipped off the ship and into the drink below. Everyone watched with growing sweat drops on their heads. Luffy scratched his chin. Whatever. Hope it's a fun one. Wait a minute. Usopp suddenly shivered. What if it's a really scary island full of monsters? Sanji smirked as he took a drag from his cigarette. Ho, that certainly is a possibility. This is the Grand Line after all. Usopp's teeth started to chatter and he suddenly held up a hand to his chest. Oh no, my icongothysislanditis is acting up. Everyone else just rolled their eyes. Either way, we have to stay here until the log pose records this island's signature and picks up the next one on our path. She led them in ignoring Usopp's theatrics. According to Crocus, the time that it takes for the pose to record the magnetic field varies from island to island, so we may be here for a while. Could be hours, could be weeks. Just keep that in mind. As they sailed inward, the crew members with sharper ears started to pick up on a whole lot of voices. They eyed each other for a moment and the message was clear. Be ready to fight. Only when the fog finally cleared completely, it was to the sight of seemingly an entire town cheering for them. Welcome to the town of celebration, Whiskey Peak. The crowd roared, doing everything from cheering to literally throwing confetti at them. Welcome to our town, pirates. Hooray for the heroes of the sea. Usopp immediately was taken into their pace and started blowing kisses. Wow, so pirates are heroes here. Awesome. What a welcome. Sanji spotted a couple of pretty girls and his one visible eye turned into a heart. He started noodling about. Whoa, so many cute girls. Nami and Zoro deadpanned while Luffy was snickering to himself. This smells fishier than Arlong Park, the Orangeette said, having to forcibly hold back an eye roll. Luffy started to laugh outright, and then allowed himself to get drawn in. He certainly wasn't going to turn down a free party. This should be fun. Zoro smirked and fingered one of his swords, one way or another. Hem. A tall man with blonde, ludicrously curled hair holding a saxophone of all things in his hand greeted them when they finally docked. He had broad, thick shoulders, a large chest, and hilariously skinny legs. My. His odd throat clearing almost made Luffy collapse in laughter. My name is Igarappoi, and I'm the mayor of Whiskey Peak. Welcome, brave pirates. The crowd let out another deafening cheer. Welcome to Whiskey Peak. We're a bustling town of music and ale brewing. We're very proud of our ale and have an ocean of it. Would you care to join us in a celebration and regale us with the tales of your adventures? You bet we would. Luffy, Usopp, and Sanji cheered. Nami sidled up to the mayor. Say, how long does it take for the log pose to set on this island? Log pose. The mayor had to fight the urge to flinch from her sharp stare. My. Not very long at all, madam. Please, set aside such trivial matters and enjoy yourself. He tried to put an arm around her, but a burning glare from her made him step back. Come on, everyone. It's party time. Later that night, the party was in full swing, and Usopp was in his 6th retelling of the same story. Yet the liar was surely a master of his craft. None of the girls surrounding him had figured out that it was the same story told 6 different ways, and then they made me their captain. He finished with a cool look on his face, arms crossed in front of his chest. Whoa, one of the girls pecked him on the cheek. Captain Usopp is so cool. He grinned smugly. Yeah, our escape from the Grand Line had me quaking. In delight, he crowed, and the girls all acted like Sanji usually did. Crack. Zoro put down his mug of ale down on the table as his 10th opponent threw in the towel, practically passing out on the spot. Holy cow. He took down 10 guys. That's nothing. Another yelled in shock. She's on her 13th. Nami guzzled down another mug with a beaming grin. Ain't no one beating me tonight. She crowed as her next drinking opponent, a nun of all things, sat down in front of her and started guzzling down her own drink. That's nothing. Another yelled as the chef collapsed into a heap, his chef's hat rolling off his head. The captain ate enough food for 20 people. Luffy looked really fat and blown up and was sitting on a bed made of the 3 barrels of milk he had already consumed. Another. He roared gleefully as he tossed the plate carelessly over his head and it landed in the third of 3 neat stacks of plates. And this one's flirting with 20 girls at once. Sanji was covered in kiss marks and had over a dozen girls draped over him or each other. Iwahaha. Igarappoi laughed. Marvelous. I'm so glad you're having fun. Continue enjoying yourselves. Miss Wednesday sat on one of the buildings above the party, staring at the moon. She looked down when she heard the door opening as some of the sounds from within started dying down. Eyeing the town mayor as he exited the building, Mr. 8, she called out. He turned. If it isn't Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday. How did your mission go? He asked as they jumped down to his level. Badly. Miss Wednesday's eyes flashed as they stared at each other. Unknown to her partner, there was much more in that look than he could possibly realize. The pirates in there are insanely strong. You better have put more than just booze in those drinks. I wouldn't want to be anywhere near them if they get pissed off. Oh, they are, huh? Igarappoi raised an eyebrow. My. How strong exactly, Miss Wednesday? They act more like clowns than pirates. He replied dubiously. I don't know, Miss Wednesday replied, but the swordsman took down the unluckies like yesterday's refuse. The unluckies aren't truly fighters though. He shot back. They can handle themselves, obviously. But I would hardly worry if I had to fight them. From 100 meters away, she deadpanned with a single swipe of his blade. Now that got his eyes to widen. You can't be serious. He gasped, aghast. Oh my. Perhaps we should double down on the party. Start slipping drugs into their drinks. No need. A new voice rang. It was the nun Nami had been drinking under the table. She ripped off the ensemble, revealing an incredibly muscular body, dark skin, and pink hair styled into 2 little puffs. Geez, I was just drinking carbonated barley tea and even I feel buzzed. She cracked her neck explosively before asking, was this whole charade even necessary? We're already short on food and drink with you two. She glared at the Mr. 9 pair, who glared back, failing your whaling mission. Surely we could have just taken these idiots at the port. Oh ho 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 ho. In response, Wednesday's queen bitch laugh made a return. Aren't we getting too big for our britches, Miss Monday? I'd like to have seen you take down that whale with that crazy doctor protecting him. Lightning shot from both of the women's eyes and impacted in between them. And I'll say this again. I have doubts that even all of us together could take down one member of their crew. If you didn't go with the party and drug them, we'd all have been wiped out. Bah, Miss Monday spat on the ground. None of those clowns look like they're any good. What kind of idiot carries around 3 swords? And that captain, fat tub of lard he is now. If he can even sit up, I'll eat my wimple. Their argument would have continued when a nameless runner practically fell in front of them. Big trouble, Mayor. He gasped. Steady yourself, lad. Igarappoi commanded. Did you get the information I requested? Why, yes. He let out another explosive gasp. I don't think we should try anything with this group. Look at this shit. He slapped 3 wanted posters onto the ground. Even Miss Wednesday's jaw dropped. 50. She gasped, her eyes shooting wide open in pure shock. 100 million between just 3 of them. Miss Monday had her jaw sagging. Holy, I'm embarrassed. Sorry for badmouthing you, Miss Wednesday. I knew it had to be high, but I had no idea it would be that high. They're from East Blue. That's absurd, she replied in stupor. This just goes to show you. Miss Bunbei Igarappoi started to cough. My. Miss Monday, that you can never judge a book by its cover. His eyes hardened. Tie them up and take everything that isn't nailed down on their ship. We'll be able to make a very good report to the boss. If it's all the same to you, would you mind letting them rest a little while longer? A voice none of them but Miss Wednesday immediately recognized rang out. Everyone mechanically turned to look up at the tallest building. The dark brow and the long nose are still pretty tired from the party and the voyage. Zoro was up there, giving them a devil's grin, one leg slung over the building's edge and a katana drawn, resting on his shoulder. What the? But you were all passed out a minute ago. The nameless grunt roared in terror. A swordsman never drinks himself into a stupor. Zoro shrugged back. And a bounty hunter's den would be a pretty bad place to let your guard down. You all trick pirates into drinking themselves stupid and then just turn them over to the Marines. Oh please, only Sanji and Usopp were stupid enough to fall for such an obvious trap. Town welcomes pirates as heroes with party. Police, I came up with better when I was 9. Nami had her own disparaging words for the town and she laid on the roof like a cat, sprawled out lazily. You have to work on your execution too. Nothing was even drugged. I'm almost insulted. At that, Miss Wednesday had to fight very hard to hold back a giggle, forgetting for a moment that she wasn't on their ship any longer. Nami then noticed the posters on the ground, admiring our bounties. Are we dearies? Don't be jealous. It's not the size of your bounty that matters. It's what you do with it. She started to giggle after making a show of wagging her eyebrows. Luffy snickered from his place as her pillow, looking completely normal. What the? You were a ball 10 minutes ago. Miss Monday gaped in utter shock. Dozens of their fellows started pouring from the buildings in a panic over the missing straw hats. Luffy waved a hand airily. Yeah, the food wasn't bad. Sanji makes better, of course, but he was having his own fun. I already digested it. Weren't secret marine techniques amazing? You're teaching me that, by the way. Nami told him offhandedly. Sure, Luffy smirked to himself. Right after you master all the Rokushiki. She glared at him. Yep, that includes Tekai. And the secret technique. Pee-wee's, Luffy. She made puppy dog eyes at him. He snickered. That's the requirement, Nami. That's the kind of utter control you need to have over your body just to start learning how to do it. Their conversation was interrupted as practically everyone down on the ground started drawing and cocking weapons, aiming right for them. Oh, I didn't know there was a second party. Luffy had a look of such overplayed enthusiasm on his face that Nami burst out laughing. About 100 of you, from the looks of it, Zoro commented with a growing grin. Care to make it a contest, Luffy? First to 51 wins. Should be a nice test for my new blades. He paused. Well, against someone I can actually cut. His deadpan admission was like drawing blood from a stone. Why not? Luffy cracked his neck. Make it first to 34. Nami sat up. Might as well work some of that booze off. I doubt these guys have much to steal anyway. That settles it then. Zoro grinned devilishly again. Looks like we'll be your opponents tonight. Baroque works. Pandemonium. Every single one of the bounty hunters reared back as if Zoro had personally slugged them in the mouth. Several of them sputtered. Impossible. How do you know the name of our secret society? Zoro stood and his form was darkened by the illumination of the full moon behind him, casting terror into most of their hearts. Why? You idiots tried to recruit me long ago, back when I was in your line of work. Of course, with the stupid need for secrecy, dumb code names, and how not one of you knows what the boss even looks like or where he is or even what your final goal is. I had to turn you down. Told the guy who tried that I'd join if they made me the boss. From his shadowed form, only the white of his grinning teeth could be seen clearly. What was that moron's name again? The former Mr. 4. Higurappoi grit his teeth. Impressive, but not at all to your favor, swordsman. Everyone who knows of our organization must perish. They all raised their weapons again. Just a few more tombstones to decorate our great mountains. They all fired as one. Great plumes of smoke and unburned gunpowder obscuring their vision. Well, all but Miss Wednesday, of course. Even had she wanted to shoot them, she didn't carry a gun. Instead, she had to bite back another grin as Nami's voice rang up from inside their group. Good shots, guys. And then Luffy's voice. Yeah, we nailed them. Miss Wednesday could hear the smug in his amused tone. As other voices, ones from Baroque Works, started congratulating the others, she almost busted a gut. And then the smoke cleared and revealed nothing but a building filled with some brand new holes for decoration. No sign of the pirates or even any blood anywhere. What the? Where did they go? And then, as one, they mechanically turned inward and stared at the three who did not belong. Luffy, Nami, and Zoro were all standing calm as you please within their ranks, hands used like visors as they stared up at the building they had been standing on. Everyone else's eyes started popping out in shock. Before one of them started to roar, "Stop making fun of us, you bastards." And with that, the dam broke and they all started pointing their guns inward. Several of them went down as the straw hats vanished once more and they shot one another. Zoro's voice rang out. Shit, do any of us get those? 3. Nami yelled gleefully as she appeared in the between a set of 3 guys who had the smart idea of putting their back to each other. Only they left a large enough gap for her to drop right in. She kicked one of them in the back of the knee, forcing him down and then brained him with one section of her collapsible climb attack. She immediately followed up with a back kick to the one behind her which sent him flying into a wall and, dodging a punch nimbly from the third, vanished in a Zoro and finished the third with a midair roundhouse kick. Nope, they're out. Darn, Zoro grumbled as he cut through a man's rifle with his new Yubashiri. He then vanished and reappeared behind a group of 6. Damn, this is a nice blade, he said appreciatively as the 7 men he'd just faced stood stock still, nice and light. He finished and the men all fell to the ground, blood flowing from their wounds as their bodies finally realized they had been cut and opened up. 6. He ran up a ladder after hearing some exclamations from behind him. As soon as his head cleared the roof, his grin widened as he saw a man standing there with a cannon on his shoulder. Surprise! The man yelled, before the sharp retort rang through the air and the cannonball flew right for his face. Yubashiri flashed and the medium-sized ball split into 2. The booms from behind him and groaning of wood told him that at least one building got pretty damaged. Man, you guys are too slow. Luffy pouted from atop his stack of 15 hunters, drawing glares from his 2 crewmates. That's 15 by the way. Better catch up, Nami. Fine. She glared again. You asked for it. Cool ball. Heat ball. Miss Wednesday had already been creeping away as best she could, and now made double time. Electro ball. Thunderbolt tempo. Several bounty hunters decided discretion may have been the better part of valor as Nami started using that attack a couple times over and started frying them. Zoro growled, "Not on my watch." He drew Sandai Kaitsu. Your turn. He heard some idiot screaming behind him, and turned around just in time to dice up a barrel that had been hurtling for the back of his skull. What a damn waste. He groaned unhappily as liquid stared spilling from the sliced wood. All that good brew. In response to his words, Miss Monday, the bodybuilder nun lady, snarled at him. Another roar had him turning and countering a guy with a stone mallet half the size of his body. What the? He stared at his sword for a moment as Kaitsu sliced straight through the stone mallet without much trouble, and the moron swinging it hurtled off the building. Damn, I wasn't even trying to cut that thing. You are a bloodthirsty little blade, aren't you, Kaitsu? A legendary sword should only cut when its master commands it. He cracked his neck. What was that? 14? Damn, I'm behind Luffy. Over by Nami. She had to stop and glare at a little shit who had the gall to try to backstab her. The brat immediately fell back onto his rear and started trembling in fear. Wait, please forgive him. A much slimmer nun than the one she'd faced in the drinking game grabbed the little boy in her arms. Her face remained deadpan as she pretended to turn away, and the nun immediately brought a cross to bear and pulled on the chain. A noxious blue smoke started shooting at Nami, and both of them drew weapons. Nami vanished and reappeared behind them. Just kidding. That's 17, I think. She brained the both of them with her now combined staff. Meanwhile, Luffy had vanished completely, and Zoro was racing up a ladder with a mass of hunters following him. He got to the top, grinned madly, and then pushed the ladder over. Nami burst out laughing as she watched. None of them are down, Zoro. They don't count, she yelled over teasingly. He jumped onto the falling ladder and rode it down, landing in the middle of another 4 and slicing them all up with a new technique using Nitoryu named Takanami. He then quirked his ears and casually used his new, apparently stupidly sharp, blade to cut a hole in the floor and casually walked away. Look out for the hole. Moments later, a bunch of hunters landed, and then fell down as the ground broke away into a perfectly circular pit. Damn you all. Miss Monday roared as she put on a pair of brass knuckles. Take this. Zoro eyed her curiously. Superhuman. Brass knuckles. A slight smirk quirked on his lips. The knuckles smashed square into his face and blew out a shockwave that completely pulverized the wall behind him. My. Igarappoi coughed. We're supposed to leave them alive, Miss Monday. The Marines don't pay us the full price if they can't execute them. Miss Monday pulled back, wondering for a moment how Zoro remained standing even now that she had pulped his brain. And then Zoro's hand grabbed her face in an absolutely crushing grip. She immediately started howling in agony. I'm sorry, was I supposed to feel that at all? He questioned her, again grinning like a demon. In response, her enormous hands grasped his arms and started trying to pry him off of her. You think you're strong, huh? Shall we see which of us is stronger? He tightened his grip, and she went slack, foaming at the mouth as he dropped her. She collapsed bonelessly to the dirt. Miss Monday lost. Baroque Works yelled in panic. Damn. Igarappoi growled. 30 million may have been too low. You think? Mr. Nine turned and roared at him. The only way we stand a chance is if we give it everything we got. We need to work together. Oi, did you forget little old me? Nami called as sat above them. Don't take us lightly. We're numbered agents. Igarappoi yelled. Igarappa. He blew on his saxophone and bullets started spurting from it. Nami dodged out of the way as Mr. Nine displayed far greater speed and strength than they had seen from him before, easily leaping and somersaulting up the building to follow her. Taru, Miss Wednesday called out after a loud whistle, getting a loud quack. She turned and saw her giant duck wagging its tail. Get over here, you idiot. She grinned as she hopped onto the duck. Let's show them the power that puts panthers to shame. She knew they wouldn't win this, but she had to put in the effort. The duck sat down. Get up, damn it. She roared as she punched it in the back of the head, glaring at the duck with shark teeth. Zoro sweat dropped as he stared at her. You want a few minutes? Shut up. She roared back at him. Are you surprised? Mr. Nine yelled as he chased after Nami. Did you really think we were stupid enough to show off our skills in front of enemies? Acrobatic metal bats. The armored bats gleamed in the moonlight as he whipped one forward. Nami quirked a grin and spun her staff, deflecting the bat to the side and throwing Mr. Nine off balance. Her right leg flashed as she kicked up, a dull thud ringing through the air as Mr. Nine hacked from the impact, literally lifting an inch or two off the ground. He fell to his knees while clutching his gut, and Nami's staff smashed into his face. His body spun as it fell to the floor while spittle flew from his mouth. The fact that you think we need dead to hide anything irritates me. She deadpanned. Honey, if you had more than a peanut rattling around in that skull, you would have already run for the hills. On another roof, Miss Wednesday was standing on top of her giant duck and staring at Zoro. I'll defeat you here, Mr. Bushido. She opened up her coat a little more, revealing that her skin-tight shirt had a design of 3 concentric circles, one on each breast and one on her midriff. Look closely. Captivating vertigo dance. She started shaking her hips and moving her body. At first Zoro just stared blankly, wondering if this was her attempt at seduction. And then he started feeling a little weird. And then his eyes widened as he crashed to one knee, feeling as if the world had flipped and feeling his gorge rise. Nami's eyes bugged out as she saw it happen. Holy shit, did that actually work? Zoro, you moron. Excellent work, Miss Wednesday. Take this. The mayor hooked his 2 thumbs into his necktie strings and pulled. Out of each curl in his hair, a gun barrel of a decent caliber popped out. Igarappapa. Dozens of large round shot balls fired. Zoro growled out and forced his body to function. Like hell, I'll let that work, he roared, whipping Yubashiri out and cutting every single metal ball in half or redirecting them. One landed near the kinda surprised that worked Miss Wednesday and exploded, throwing her into the wall. She groaned in pain and slumped over as Nami appeared behind Igarappoi and Asoro and smashed him in the back of the head. The large man flew off the roof and crashed through a building. She let out a sigh and reappeared next to Zoro. The hell was that, Zoro? She demanded. Shut up, he groaned, sheathing his swords and staggering to his feet. After one final shake of his head, he felt fine. What was that attack? I felt as if I had been repeatedly dropped on my head while being force-fed shitty booze. She snorted in response. Whatever. Where the hell did Luffy go? Oh, you guys are finally finished. The captain's voice rang loud and clear. They turned, and then their eyes bugged out as they saw him sitting on a pile of knocked-out bodies roughly 20 feet high. What took you guys so long? I won, by the way. Damn it. They both snarled, having forgotten about the contest. Nami shook her fist. We took out the big guys, though. You got the mooks. No one said they would count for more than one. Luffy started to guffaw at their incensed looks as he went from sitting to right next to them in the blink of an eye. Whatever, Nami growled. She grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him to her. Oh well, time to relax. Her fierce look was replaced with a little grin. Oi, the third wheel growled. Get a room. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.